Before sunrise, the shabby Qingyun Dao sect gathers in rare excitement because a new 8th disciple is finally about to arrive. For a sect this week, recruiting even one person is a huge deal, because cultivators usually run straight to stronger sects with better backing and safety. The silence breaks when eldest senior brother Su Changyu reminds everyone that Master warned them not to look too eager or desperate. Su Changyu tells them to stay calm and act like experts, because if the new junior brother can be kept for 1 full year, the sect can finally apply for 3rd grade status. Everyone answers in unison, but the room goes awkwardly quiet again once the hard part sinks in. Su Luochen finally asks the real problem. Staying calm is one thing, but how are they supposed to lie without exposing their weak cultivation? His question makes the rest of the disciples uneasy too, because they are too straightforward to deceive someone smoothly. Su Changyu reframes the plan and says they are not exactly cheating the newcomer, just presenting themselves as far more impressive than they really are. Since the new disciple knows nothing about cultivation, Su Changyu says they only need to exaggerate their specialties and teach him things he cannot verify yet. He admits the act may collapse eventually, but if they can hide the truth for a year, the sect's future will finally improve. Su Luochen talks himself into it, saying they can let the junior brother leave after a year if he feels cheated, and if he stays, they will not shortchange him later. The youngest junior sister tries to ease their conscience by saying maybe the newcomer is a prodigy who can actually learn everything they teach. That fantasy only makes everyone smile, because in Qinzhou any real talent would have been claimed or poached by a bigger sect long ago. Su Changyu gives one last strict warning. When the new junior brother arrives tomorrow at noon, they must stay aloof, criticize rather than praise, and never chase after him first. After everyone agrees, the 7 disciples quietly disperse to prepare for their awkward performance. Elsewhere in the Qingyun Mountains, Taoist Taihua leads a young man in white along a muddy trail toward the sect. The young man is Yiping, and as he walks he thinks bitterly about how an accident dragged him from Earth into this strange ancient-looking world 3 years ago. Believing education was still the safest path, Yiping spent those years studying hard to become a scholar in the Jin nation. He even enjoyed it, because scholars received free education, and his talent for polished lines had already started earning him some local fame. Then everything collapsed on the way to the imperial exam, when Yiping saw someone flying through the sky on an immortal sword and realized this was a cultivation world. After 3 years of study, that revelation hit him hard, because grinding toward official exams suddenly felt pointless next to immortality. So Yiping dropped his scholar dream on the spot and decided to chase the immortal Dao instead. At first he thought the path would be impossible to enter, but this world was packed with sects holding one grand immortal ascension meet after another. After more than 50 attempts, the truth was brutal. Yiping had no spiritual roots at all, the worst kind of cultivation aptitude. Strangely, Yiping does not break under that verdict, because he takes it as the perfect underdog opening for a future legend. He keeps pushing forward, convinced that if any sect gives him a real chance, he can still achieve something great. That persistence finally pays off when Taoist Taihua notices him in the crowd and agrees to accept him into Qingyun Dao sect. The catch is blunt. Yiping must serve through an internship with no salary at all. Yiping accepts without hesitation, because money means nothing to him compared with finally getting to cultivate. Now, walking through the cloud-wrapped mountains, Yiping feels nervous, awed, and thrilled by the thought that he is finally stepping into an immortal sect. He imagines his future self flying on a sword in fluttering white robes, roaming the world like a true immortal. Meanwhile, Taoist Taihua is secretly delighted, because finding any disciple is hard enough lately, and Yiping even agreed to work for free. Taihua knows the competition between sects has grown fierce, with bigger sects taking every talented recruit and even the weak ones demanding higher pay each year. That is why a free recruit like Yiping feels like a windfall for a tiny lower-tier sect that can barely attract anyone. Even so, Taihua worries that his own disciples might fail to look like proper experts and scare the newcomer away. He does not really feel guilty about recruiting Yiping, because no stronger sect would have accepted a man with no spiritual roots anyway. The only thing Taihua truly feels bad about is the unpaid arrangement, and he quietly promises himself to make it up once the sect prospers. With both of them carrying very different expectations, Taoist Taihua and Yiping finally reach the entrance of Qingyun Dao sect. At the shabby entrance of Qingyun Dao sect, Su Changyu gets up early because greeting the sect leader matters less than fooling the new junior brother on first sight. To keep the act convincing, Su Changyu has already told the other disciples to stay out of the way so the sect feels mysterious. He even changes into his best brocade Taoist robe from the Qingzhou sword trials and pairs it with his green sword to build the full sword immortal image. Looking in a bronze mirror, Su Changyu ruefully admits he looks like a top expert even though he knows he is only pretending. By noon, he figures Taoist Taihua must be back, so he heads outside and takes up a dramatic pose on a small hill to wait for the bait to arrive. When 2 figures finally appear on the mountain path, Su Changyu feels a flash of nerves but quickly buries it under his carefully practiced aura. Climbing the steep ridges leaves Yiping soaked in sweat and gasping, which only makes Taoist Taihua's effortless immortal bearing look more impressive. Then Yiping spots the man on the hillside and instantly freezes, because Su Changyu looks exactly like the sword immortal he had imagined. That one sight flips Yiping's judgment, and he starts believing this shabby sect may actually be a hidden sect full of terrifying experts. Unable to hold back, Yiping blurts out that even 3 million sword immortals in the sky would have to bow before Su Changyu. The praise catches Su Changyu off guard, and inside he is thrilled that the new junior brother is this easy to impress. Su Changyu smoothly turns to Taoist Tai Hua and greets him with polished calm, sealing the image of a true expert in front of Yiping. Taoist Tai Hua notices at once that Yiping is completely sold, so he keeps his face calm and continues the act. When Taoist Tai Hua asks why he is here, Su Changyu boldly claims he is both welcoming his master and gaining enlightenment in the Sword Tao. Even Taoist Tai Hua thinks his eldest disciple is overdoing the act, but since Yiping looks stunned, he decides the exaggeration is working. Taoist Tai Hua formally introduces Su Changyu as Yiping's eldest senior brother and tells Yiping to greet him. Yiping steps forward and bows with full respect, already treating Su Changyu like a genuine senior expert. Su Changyu accepts the greeting and grandly says that since their master chose Yiping, he will gift him a chance at creation and tell him to seek enlightenment. All Su Changyu actually does is flick out a gentle breeze, but to Yiping it feels like an immortal method and to Taoist Tai Hua it is painfully funny. Yiping thanks him sincerely, and in that moment he becomes certain his eldest senior brother is definitely a hidden expert. Taoist Tai Hua cuts the meeting short and leads Yiping into the sect so he will not disturb Su Changyu's fake enlightenment session. As soon as they are gone, Su Changyu finally relaxes and happily repeats the sword immortal praise to himself. Inside the sect, the broken gate and lonely incense should make Qinyun Dao sect look embarrassingly poor, but Yiping only grows more delighted. Because he is a transmigrator who has read too many stories, Yiping reads the poverty as proof that this is exactly the kind of low-key hidden sect Real Masters would build. Once deeper inside, Yiping notices something even more convincing. For a fallen-looking sect, everything is unexpectedly clean and orderly. That detail seals it for Yiping, who silently congratulates himself for seeing through the sect's hidden expert disguise. In the main hall, Taoist Tai Hua turns serious and warns Yiping that immortal cultivation is a long, lonely path that demands patience and real resolve. He is really trying to harden Yiping in advance, worried the boy might run away if months pass without any obvious progress. Yiping answers solemnly that he understands cultivation will be lonely and difficult, and he promises not to be distracted or give up halfway. Pleased with Yiping's attitude, Taoist Tai Hua raises one last practical issue and bluntly reminds him that unnamed disciples do not get paid. Yiping immediately says money does not matter, and that instead of asking what the sect can give him, he should think about what he can give the sect. Those words hit Taoist Tai Hua right in the heart, and he instantly feels like he has picked up a treasure. So Taoist Tai Hua formally accepts Yiping into Qinyun Dao sect, though only as an unnamed disciple until he earns an official ceremony later. Yiping immediately bows in excitement and thanks his new master, promising he will live up to those expectations. Taoist Tai Hua tells him to settle in first, learn the sect over the next few days, and wait for Su Changyu to begin teaching him cultivation. He finishes with one more warning not to rush, and Yiping answers with solemn confidence, already full of hope for the road ahead. Near midnight, Taoist Tai Hua gathers all 7 disciples in the dining hall and opens a tense secret meeting about the sect's future. Tai Hua warns that sect competition in Qinzhou is getting brutal, and rumors say stronger powers may soon wipe out weak sects. He says Qinyun must rise to a 3rd-grade sect within 2 years, and their new junior brother is the key because they finally have the 8th disciple they need. Tai Hua orders everyone to hide the sect's real poverty and weakness from Yiping, afraid another recruit will leave and smear Qinyun's name. The disciples quietly agree, but one of them points out the obvious problem. Once Yiping starts cultivating, he will eventually discover the truth. Tai Hua reveals his plan. They cannot hide the truth forever, but they can stall Yiping long enough to keep him in the sect for a full year. Because Su Changyu has already filled Yiping with awe, Tai Hua believes Yiping will stay for now if they keep delaying real cultivation. He assigns Su Changyu to teach ridiculous swordsmanship first, both to fool Yiping and to burn time. If Yiping gets tired of sword practice, Su Luochen will take over with pill refining, and the rest will each teach for 2 months until a year passes. The disciples are won over by Tai Hua's confidence, but Chen Lingru nervously asks what she should say when Yiping starts asking real cultivation questions. Tai Hua tells Chen Lingru to teach only basic methods, but exaggerate them so Yiping believes Qinyun's qi refinement is stronger than other cultivators at the same level. He also warns them to stress that the technique mainly nourishes the body and builds a foundation, so Yiping does not get overconfident and challenge anyone. Before dismissing them, Tai Hua orders everyone to stay mysterious around Yiping and avoid approaching him unless he seeks them out first. The late-night conference ends, and the disciples quietly leave with the sect's future now riding on their deception. Elsewhere that night, Yiping lies awake under the starry sky, excited that he has finally entered a world of immortal cultivation. After 3 years in this world, Yiping still does not dream of ruling anything grand. He just hopes cultivation can give him a longer, peaceful life. Even so, he knows the road of cultivation is dangerous, so he steels himself to be careful, patient, and impossible to shake off course. His only nagging worry is talent, because even after learning he has no spiritual root, he still hopes he is not hopelessly bad. He finally falls asleep late, still full of curiosity about what kind of cultivator he might become. At daybreak, Yiping wakes early without hesitation, suddenly far more diligent than he ever was as a student. A knock interrupts the quiet, and before Yiping can even open the door, Su Changyu's voice orders him to meet at the back cliff for sword Dao instruction. Yiping answers respectfully, then rushes to wash up and straighten his robe so he can make a good first impression on his senior brother. On the way to the back cliff, Yiping's excitement turns into nerves as he worries Su Changyu might look down on him for poor aptitude. He calms himself with a hopeful thought: hidden masters often prefer teaching the untalented, because turning a nobody into someone is the real feat. By the time Yiping reaches the back cliff, Su Changyu is already posed on a boulder like an untouchable sword immortal. Behind that flawless pose, Su Changyu is not contemplating the sword Dao at all, only how to trick Yiping without sounding completely absurd. He decides the lie has to feel half true, exaggerated enough to impress Yiping but grounded enough not to fall apart instantly. Yiping greets him with full respect, and Su Changyu coolly asks whether he has eaten yet without even turning around. When Yiping says no, Su Changyu turns it into a lesson and says cultivators should put cultivation before eating and keep their bodies light. Yiping immediately accepts the logic, convinced that food impurities would only interfere with cultivation. To raise the stakes, Su Changyu says he does not teach his sword Dao casually, and Yiping must answer one question first to prove he has the right talent. Instead of feeling offended, Yiping gets even more excited because this is exactly how hidden experts in the stories test worthy disciples. Yiping solemnly says the sword Dao may look simple but contains the great Dao, and if he lacks talent, he would not dare trouble his senior brother. That answer actually impresses Su Changyu, who privately thinks this junior brother is sharper than expected but keeps his face perfectly aloof. Still playing the part, Su Changyu slowly asks his real test question: what is the sword Dao? Yiping freezes, because the question sounds simple but clearly hides a deeper meaning he cannot afford to answer carelessly. He keeps thinking for hours, while Su Changyu is forced to hold that grand pose on the boulder until his hidden discomfort starts to show. Inside, Su Changyu is desperate for any answer at all, but he cannot break character now that he has committed to looking like an immortal master. After 3 hours, Yiping finally ventures a careful first answer and asks whether the heart itself is the sword Dao. Su Changyu is startled because the answer is actually good, but he smoothly turns, changes posture, and rejects it with a cold wrong. Yiping keeps probing with bigger ideas like heaven and earth, the sun and moon, and everything in the world, but Su Changyu rejects everyone. Then Su Changyu sighs and bluntly says Yiping's sword Dao talent is lacking, hitting Yiping with a quiet but painful blow. Even after that, Yiping does not get discouraged, because Su Changyu immediately says he will give him a different question instead. Su Changyu asks how strong the sword Dao becomes at its absolute extreme, pushing the test from meaning to power. Yiping hesitates again, because he has never actually seen sword techniques, but all the stories he has read finally give him a direction. At last, Yiping says the pinnacle of sword Dao should be a single strike that cuts through everything in the universe. This time Su Changyu is genuinely shaken, because Yiping's answer lands far harder than he expected even though the senior brother's face barely moves. At the back cliff, Su Changyu is shaken by Yiping's grand line about cutting through the universe with one move, but behind his calm face he only thinks one thing: this new junior brother is absurdly good at sounding impressive. Su Changyu quickly decides this is a threat to his own image, because in Qinyun's sect he refuses to let anyone steal the role of the untouchable eldest senior brother. So instead of praising Yiping, Su Changyu coldly warns him that cultivation must be steady and that he is being too ambitious. The rebuke hits immediately, and Yiping lowers his head in a flustered apology, worried he really did speak out of turn as a brand new disciple. Su Changyu softens just enough to keep control, telling Yiping ambition is fine but those striking insights should only be shared with him, not outsiders, or they could cause trouble. Once he has the upper hand again, Su Changyu finally announces that he will now teach Yiping the real sword Dao, and Yiping's disappointment vanishes into excitement. Then Su Changyu performs a long, dramatic setup with his green sword and makes Yiping wait in total suspense. After an entire incense stick burns down, Su Changyu suddenly slashes the ground and leaves behind one long, straight sword mark in a scatter of stone chips. With total confidence, Su Changyu claims that this mark contains his strongest peerless sword intent and orders Yiping to study it for 7 days, not just for moves but for momentum and intent as well. Before Yiping can even respond, Su Changyu turns and leaves the cliff, ending the lesson so abruptly that Yiping is left stunned beside the mark. The moment he is out of sight, Su Changyu can barely hide his delight, because he knows the grand phrase came from Yiping and the so-called sword lesson was just a bluff to keep the boy occupied. In his own mind, Su Changyu admits the truth. The line on the ground was random, there is no real sword intent there, and asking for sword intent comprehension is almost impossible even in major sword sects. He convinces himself this lie is still the safest option, because with his own weak sword skills, teaching Yiping for real would probably only mislead him. Then Su Luochen walks over, and Su Changyu instantly wipes away his smile and returns to his cool eldest brother mask. Su Changyu asks a strange question about the true peak of sword Dao, and Su Luochen is visibly lost because he does not even practice swordsmanship. Su Changyu seizes the moment and declares that the extreme of true sword Dao is cutting through the sun, moon, and stars with a single blade of grass. The words hit Su Luochen so hard that he imagines Su Changyu slicing the stars apart, and for a moment he almost believes the act completely. Seeing that reaction, Su Changyu silently celebrates another perfect performance, and leaves without another word. After he is gone, Su Luochen finally snaps out of it and mutters that Su Changyu's sword Dao is still fake to him, but admits the line itself was undeniably overwhelming. Back at the rear cliff, Yiping studies the sword mark with complete faith. He is worried he may learn nothing, but he still forces himself to keep staring and trying. He decides the only way to know his talent is to try, so he keeps watching the mark for 2 straight hours without giving up. For most of that time, nothing happens at all, and the silence starts making him restless. Then a gentle breeze brushes past him, and in that small instant his whole state of mind clears. When Yiping looks again, the sword mark no longer seems ordinary. It feels sharp, stubborn, and hidden with the chilling sword intent left by a true master. A sword-wielding Taoist suddenly appears in Yiping's mind and starts demonstrating sword moves as if teaching him in person. The sequence grows clearer and clearer, revealing 12 fierce moves that feel like 4 connected sets of swordsmanship. The sword forms repeat faster and faster until Yiping feels like he is personally practicing them, and the number of moves keeps expanding beyond the first 12. After 3 hours at the mark, Yiping realizes he has truly grasped a sword technique, and his awe for Su Changyu rises even higher. He quickly forces himself to calm down, warning himself that this is only the beginning and that he must study even harder from now on. Any suspicion he had about Su Changyu disappears completely, and Yiping throws himself back into studying the mark with even deeper trust. Elsewhere in the sect's open training ground, Su Changyu practices with his long sword, but despite the polished form, his routine still shows obvious flaws and lacks real force. When he finally stops after a full session, sweat beads on his forehead, yet he still refuses to collapse so he can keep looking like an expert. Chen Lingru watches with innocent curiosity, and asks why a sword set he has trained for 10 years still is not finished. Su Changyu immediately goes into full lecture mode, claiming the technique is the famous 4 Thunder Sword technique, a top sword art built from spring, summer, autumn, and winter thunder forms. Chen Lingru only asks what stage he has actually reached, and Su Changyu proudly answers that he has perfected just the spring thunder swordsmanship. Her blunt reaction lands harder than any enemy attack, because she is unimpressed that 10 years only reached the first section. Trying to recover, Su Changyu boasts that ordinary sword cultivators might need centuries for this art, and insists his own progress is already top tier in Qingzhou. He even explains the swordsmanship realms from beginner to peak and predicts that in time he will push this technique to greatness. Then Chen Lingru asks about Yiping, wanting to know how long it should take their new junior brother to comprehend the sword mark Su Changyu left behind. Because he cannot admit the mark is fake, Su Changyu says it contains 4 sword techniques, and that grasping even the moves within a year would already be impressive. Chen Lingru starts pushing with impossible what-ifs, first asking what it would mean if Yiping understood the techniques in a single day. Su Changyu answers firmly that only a peerless genius could do something like that. She keeps going and asks what if Yiping also comprehends the sword intent, forcing Su Changyu to raise the standard even higher. He says that if someone could read both the technique and the sword intent from one mark, that person would already be the top sword Dao genius in Qingzhou. Chen Lingru keeps stacking bigger what-ifs, jumping from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of sword intents, and Su Changyu answers each one with increasingly outrageous rankings from Qingzhou to the whole Jin nation. At last Su Changyu turns the whole exchange into a grand lecture, saying sword techniques are secondary and true sword Dao rests on sword intent, especially the first legendary realm called Infinite Sword Intent. To show how remote that realm is, Su Changyu points to Daoist Siji as proof and says even Qingzhou's 500-year sword Dao legend has not truly reached the first realm. Chen Lingru still circles back to Yiping, because more than anything she is curious about the junior brother who just joined their sect. Su Changyu lifts his gaze with practiced superiority and delivers his final judgment. As far as sword Dao goes, Yiping is probably just a good-for-nothing. At that same moment on the back cliff, Yiping's study finally pays off and he begins truly comprehending the 4 Thunder Sword technique from Su Changyu's sword mark. At the rear cliff, Yiping stares into the sword mark and pieces together a complete thunder-based sword art hidden inside it. He realizes the technique has 4 distinct forms: spring, summer, autumn, and winter thunder, each with its own rhythm and killing style. What begins as just 12 moves keeps expanding until Yiping has already understood 144 moves in less than half a day. To Yiping, that tiny slash containing such terrifying sword moves is proof that Su Changyu really is a hidden sword immortal. He worries anyway, because he has no idea whether comprehending one sword technique in a day is impressive or embarrassingly slow here. Still clueless about the real standards, Yiping rests briefly and goes right back to studying the mark instead of stopping. He keeps pushing through the entire day until midnight, finally leaving only because mental exhaustion catches up with him. That night, Yiping has a nightmare that the sect throws him out for having poor talent. He jolts awake in a cold panic, relieved it was only a dream but left badly shaken by how real it felt. The fear hits hard because after a miserable transmigration and years of hardship, joining this sect feels like his first real hope. He talks himself through the panic and decides a secretly powerful sect would value persistence more than flashy talent, so he just has to work harder. After a quick wash, he skips breakfast again and hurries straight back to the rear cliff to keep comprehending the sword mark. By noon he is still absorbed in the mark, too focused to notice how badly he has neglected food and rest. Su Changyu finally comes over carrying a simple meal, feeling guilty that his bluff has turned Yiping into a starving workhorse. He calls Yiping out of his trance and firmly tells him that diligence is fine, but he still has to eat. The meal is only rice and vegetables, and Yiping pauses over the humble food for a second before saying anything. Afraid the sect's poverty is showing, Su Changyu hurriedly explains that Qingyun cultivators choose vegetarian food because meat and grains burden the body. But Yiping is not suspicious at all. He is genuinely moved that his senior brother personally brought him food. That simple gratitude only makes Su Changyu feel worse, because he knows the sect is still making this new junior brother endure too much. Once Yiping starts eating, the delayed hunger slams into him and he quickly wipes out the rice and both vegetable dishes. He even scrapes together the last mouthfuls with oil and soup, finally looking alive again after eating his fill. When Yiping politely thanks him, Su Changyu can only cover his discomfort by changing the subject to the sword mark. Su Changyu casually asks whether Yiping got anything from the mark, expecting little more than silence or confusion. Yiping admits he did get something from the mark, but in his usual humble way he says he was too incompetent to grasp the essence and only learned a little of the sword moves. That answer rattles Su Changyu, because he knows the mark was just something he slashed out at random. He presses further and asks how many moves Yiping supposedly comprehended, still trying to sound perfectly calm. Yiping seriously says he has understood 400 sword moves so far, and that number makes Su Changyu burst out laughing on the spot. To Su Changyu, 400 moves in a day is absurd, because even the 4 Thunder Sword technique only has 1,460 moves in total, and he himself barely scratched the beginner stage after 10 years. The way Yiping says it so humbly even makes Su Changyu suspect his new junior brother is trying to outboast him without realizing it. Meanwhile, Yiping misreads Su Changyu's stare completely, and starts to think 400 moves must actually be a pitiful result here. Embarrassed, Yiping concludes his eldest senior brother must have mastered tens of thousands of techniques already, so his own progress is probably laughable. When Yiping finally asks if he is very incompetent, Su Changyu takes that as a direct challenge to his pride. Determined to call the bluff, Su Changyu tosses Yiping a sword and tells him to demonstrate the moves he claims to have learned. Sword in hand, Yiping suddenly feels nervous, because showing off before a peerless expert sounds like a great way to embarrass himself. But he knows he cannot keep comprehending forever without testing himself, so he steadies his breathing and agrees. Su Changyu quietly backs up 20 steps first, less out of confidence than out of fear that the sword might fly the wrong way. Yiping respectfully asks for guidance, draws the blade, and his whole aura sharpens the moment the sword clears the sheath. Even before the full display begins, Su Changyu is caught off guard by that sudden change and realizes Yiping at least looks frighteningly real. Then Yiping launches into the technique, and Su Changyu instantly recognizes the opening as the real 4 Thunder Sword technique. Yiping tears through the sequence at terrifying speed, already reaching the 36th move before Su Changyu can properly react. For Su Changyu, that is already crushing, because 10 years of practice only brought him to the 18th move. When Yiping reaches the 108th move, thunder suddenly booms across the cliff and Su Changyu is left speechless. That thunder proves Yiping has already entered greater mastery, the realm Su Changyu has wanted for years and never reached. 5 breaths later, thunder sounds again as Yiping pushes into the summer form at the same terrifying level. Another few breaths pass, and the autumn form follows with its own thunder, leaving Su Changyu even more numb. As Yiping enters the final winter sequence, the sword mark sparks another flash of insight and 32 new moves appear in his mind mid-performance. Now holding 432 moves in total, Yiping closes his eyes and lets the sword carry him through the last 32 strokes. The final thunder detonates, and a giant boulder 10 meters away is split cleanly into 4 pieces. Su Changyu can only stand there in stunned silence, because his little junior brother has really comprehended the 4 Thunder Sword technique in a single day. At the rear cliff, Su Changyu stares at Yiping in total disbelief, because the sword moves he just saw have shattered everything he thought he knew about talent. He even pinches himself hard, and the pain tells him this absurd scene is real. Qingyun Dao sect has somehow recruited a sword genius. As a sword cultivator, Su Changyu knows how monstrous this is, because he trained 10 years just to reach the beginner level, while Yiping understood the 4 Thunder Sword technique to greater mastery in one night. The more he compares them, the more bitter Su Changyu gets, wondering why the handsome senior brother is mediocre while the slightly prettier junior brother is a monster in the sword Dao. Yiping, meanwhile, is quietly pleased that he understood 32 more sword moves, and he is even more convinced this technique is powerful after splitting a boulder without any dermic power. Still unsure of himself, Yiping turns to Su Changyu and asks what his senior brother thinks of his talent. Su Changyu is so stunned that Yiping has to call him again before he finally snaps back and forces himself to look calm. When Yiping directly asks if he has talent, Su Changyu panics inside, because praising him too honestly might make this once-in-a-lifetime prodigy leave the sect. So Su Changyu bites the bullet and says Yiping's talent is only ordinary, even though the lie makes him ashamed on the spot. Yiping takes ordinary as a polite way of saying his aptitude is poor, but instead of getting upset, he steels himself and promises to work hard so he can stay in the sect. That answer makes Su Changyu feel even guiltier, and he quickly tells Yiping to keep studying the sword mark while he goes to handle something important. Yiping is relieved to hear that, because after failing more than 50 sect entrance attempts, he knows this is the one chance he cannot afford to lose. About half an incense stick later, Su Changyu rushes into Qingyun's main hall shouting for the sect leader, too shaken to care about appearances. Taoist Taihua first scolds him for acting so flustered in front of his junior, trying to make his eldest disciple remember the image of a proper senior expert. But when Su Changyu says something major happened, Taihua's first fear is that Yiping has discovered the sect's secret. Once he learns their cover is safe, Taihua relaxes, and Su Changyu finally blurts out that their little junior brother has a very unusual kind of talent. Taihua misunderstands and assumes Yiping's aptitude must be terrible, saying that if he really were talented, Qingyun would never have been able to keep him in the first place. Su Changyu hurriedly corrects him and insists the problem is the opposite. Yiping's talent is incredibly good. Taihua still does not buy it, and warns him that liars have to swallow 1,000 needles, because he cannot believe the rejected disciple they picked up is suddenly a prodigy. To prove he is not lying, Su Changyu brings up the 4 thunder sword technique and explains that yesterday he only drew Yiping a random sword mark on the ground to study. Taihua starts guessing how far Yiping got and first dares to say beginner realm, already thinking that would be impressive from such a fake lesson. When Su Changyu tells him to guess bigger, Taihua pushes it all the way to perfection and still gets told to be bolder. That is where Taihua stops, because the only answer left is too outrageous to say aloud. Su Changyu finally says it plainly. Yiping reached greater mastery in the 4 thunder sword technique overnight, and even grasped some sword momentum. For a moment, Taoist Taihua is completely stunned, trying to imagine what kind of person could do something like that in a single day. Then the shock flips into joy, and Taihua bursts out laughing that Qingyun Dao sect has finally produced a genius. Su Changyu cannot celebrate so easily, because now that he knows the truth, he feels their poor sect might be holding Yiping back. Taihua counters with hard logic. Yiping was rejected 50 times already, Qingyun still accepted him, and sending him away now would not magically guarantee him a better future. He presses further, warning that even if another sect accepted Yiping, a genius with unknown origins could become a target of jealousy, scheming, or worse. By the time Taihua finishes talking about fate, sect politics, and survival, Su Changyu starts to see that his kindness was a little too naive. Taihua says they can keep a clear conscience if they truly teach Yiping, give him every resource they have, and stop pretending only after Qingyun becomes a third-grade sect. That finally settles it for Su Changyu, and he nods, accepting the sect leader's plan. Taihua immediately decides to go down the mountain with Su Changyu for 2 days and buy Yiping more sword manuals, even if the sect has to scrape itself dry. Before dismissing him, Taihua warns Su Changyu to keep this secret and keep acting like a true expert so Yiping does not discover the truth too soon. Su Changyu leaves the hall, carrying the secret with him. The moment he is alone, Taoist Taihua can barely suppress his delight, covering his mouth as he laughs at Qingyun's unbelievable stroke of luck. In Taihua's eyes, there is no reason to feel guilty at all, because hundreds of sects ignored Yiping first, and Qingyun simply happened to be the one that recognized value where others failed. Soon the hall keeps letting out muffled bursts of his laughter, and the strange sound leaves the other disciples outside thoroughly confused. At dawn, a panicked shout jolts the whole Qingyun Dao sect awake with news that something major has happened. Half asleep and already traumatized by debt collectors, Taoist Taihua jumps out of bed and starts packing to run before he even knows the problem. Wang Zhuyu rushes in with a sheet of rice paper and hurriedly stops him, saying this time it is not a debtor. Relieved for 1 second, Taoist Taihua scolds Wang Zhuyu for losing his head over a trivial matter and tells him to learn from Su Changyu's steadiness. But Wang Zhuyu says the notice from the Qinzhou Sect Management Bureau is almost as bad as a creditor coming to the door. Taoist Taihua grabs the notice, schemes it in a rush, and his face darkens line by line. When he reaches the end, Taoist Taihua explodes in fury and calls the order outrageous again and again. The notice says small sects must pay 10 inferior-grade spirit stones within 2 months to prove they are legitimate, or their sect licenses will be revoked and they will be forcibly shut down. For a sect as poor as Qingyun, that demand is absurd, and Taoist Taihua rages that the powerful are openly bullying the weak. He even blurts out that he wants to march to the capital and sue, though he clearly knows that path will probably go nowhere. After stewing in the bad news, Taoist Taihua gives up on pretending this is manageable and orders the whole sect to gather in the main hall for a meeting. Wang Zhuyu tries to encourage him, and Taoist Taihua snaps right back, too stressed to accept empty faith. As Wang Zhuyu leaves, Taoist Taihua stops him with one more order. Yiping must not hear about this crisis. An hour later, 4 disciples arrive in the main hall, and Taoist Taihua takes his seat looking exhausted, with red eyes like he might have cried. The disciples greet him formally as sect leader, and Taoist Tai Hua skips straight to the point. Qingyun Dao sect is facing its greatest crisis yet. He shows them the official notice, and the hall goes quiet as everyone realizes the sect is being squeezed for 10 spirit stones it does not have. Su Luochen reacts exactly like his master and blurts out that the bureau must be insane and should be sued in the capital. Su Changyu stays the calmest and asks the only useful question in the room: how many spirit stones does the sect still have? Taoist Tai Hua answers with a slow, heavy 70, and for one hopeful moment everyone thinks the sect might actually survive this. The disciples visibly relax, assuming he means 70 spirit stones, enough to swallow the fee and get through the purge. But Taoist Tai Hua bitterly shakes his head, and the room falls tense again because 70 clearly does not mean spirit stones. Su Changyu lowers the guess to 70 taels of gold and says that if that is all they have, they can still fight to earn the missing amount in 2 months. Taoist Tai Hua's face grows even graver, and now even Su Changyu starts to realize the truth is somehow worse. Su Changyu asks in disbelief if the sect only has 70 taels of silver left. Taoist Tai Hua shakes his head again, and this time the whole hall drops into stunned silence because the answer is even lower than that. The devastating truth lands: the sect only has 70 copper coins on hand. Everyone sinks into despair, because 70 copper coins is not even poverty anymore, it is hopelessness. Su Luochen cannot believe the sect's savings are really this empty and blurts out that something about the numbers feels wrong. Taoist Tai Hua flares up at once and snaps back, asking if Su Luochen thinks he embezzled the sect's money. Su Luochen backs off immediately, but Su Changyu presses on and says he believes his master is not corrupt, only that this story is clearly not complete. Under Su Changyu's pressure, Taoist Tai Hua finally admits the sect did have savings once. He explains that he invested the sect's money in a so-called immortal cultivation fund, thinking it would earn steady monthly interest. The disciples light up for a second and urge him to withdraw the money now, even if they lose the profit. Then Taoist Tai Hua admits the fund manager disappeared after taking the money, and the hall is crushed all over again. When they demand to know how much he threw into that scam, Taoist Tai Hua quietly says it was about 200 taels of gold. That number stuns everyone twice over, because it is too huge for Qingyun to possess in the first place. Wang Zhuyu voices the obvious question, and no one else in the room can believe the sect ever had 200 taels of gold to begin with. Taoist Tai Hua lowers his voice and reveals the final blow. He borrowed 120 taels of gold from outside to make that investment. Now the sect's problem is no longer just the 10 spirit stones fee, but a mountain of debt on top of it, and everyone is left completely numb. After the long silence, Taoist Tai Hua forces himself to promise he will find some solution, even if it means taking a desperate gamble. He asks the others to think of ideas, and if nothing works, he is prepared to gamble with his life in the dangerous Jinglin mountain range. That desperate plan only makes the room feel heavier, because none of them wants their master pushed into a death gamble and none of them has a better answer. In the end, Taoist Tai Hua dismisses the others to think on their own and orders Su Changyu to stay behind for private instructions. After the others leave the hall, Taoist Tai Hua quietly tells Su Changyu he will go down the mountain to borrow spirit stones, while Su Changyu must keep guiding Yiping exactly as planned. Su Changyu worries that 200 taels of gold is far too much, but Tai Hua refuses to back down and says the real priority is keeping this rare genius in the sect. Su Changyu accepts the burden, decides to keep up the act for Yiping's sake, and heads from the hall toward the rear cliff. At the rear cliff, Yiping is still studying the long sword mark with frightening focus, and his 4th Thunder Sword progress has already reached 720 moves. When Su Changyu arrives, Yiping immediately stands and bows, still treating him with full formal respect. Su Changyu awkwardly tells him to stop being so formal because fellow disciples are like brothers, but Yiping insists that proper manners still matter. Su Changyu asks how far Yiping has progressed, and Yiping, almost embarrassed, says he has only reached the 720th move since yesterday. That humble answer hits Su Changyu like a blade, but he forces himself to stay in character and coolly says Yiping still lacks intensity. Yiping accepts the criticism and immediately asks what this sword art is called and how far someone must comprehend it to truly qualify. Su Changyu explains that Yiping is studying the 4 thunder sword techniques, made of spring, summer, autumn, and winter thunder forms, with 1,460 moves in total. He goes on to lay out the 4 realms of mastering a sword technique: beginner, perfection, greater mastery, and peak. Then Su Changyu raises the bar and says peak is only the start, because a real sword cultivator still has to condense sword momentum, and then reach sword intent. Yiping finally sees the path more clearly, but his next question puts Su Changyu on the spot when he asks what realm his senior brother has reached. Backed into a corner, Su Changyu straightens up and claims he has only reached the 1st level of the legendary Supreme Sword Dao, the realm of infinite sword intent. Yiping has never heard of that realm, but the name alone sounds overwhelming, and Su Changyu doubles down by saying it means countless sword intents and a place above the 10 nations. Instead of doubting him, Yiping gets fired up and vows that within his lifetime he will also reach infinite sword intent and catch up to his senior brother. Su Changyu feels sour but slightly comforted by being the one who inspired him, then tells Yiping to keep studying while he stays nearby for the next few days. Yiping sincerely thanks him and promises he will never forget this guidance, making his admiration feel even heavier for the man who is secretly bluffing. 15 days pass, and by the evening of March 18th, Yiping has completely understood all 1460 moves of the 4 Thunder Sword techniques and reached the peak realm of the set. Now Yiping turns to sword momentum, where one strike carries the force and structure of the whole technique instead of stiffly repeating every move. Yiping is confident he can reach that realm soon, but he stays humble because he believes all of this started with the sword mark Su Changyu left for him. Remembering how dozens of immortal sects once rejected him, Yiping feels even more loyal to Qingyun Dao sect for giving him a place at all. He calls out to Su Changyu, who has been sitting on the cliff day after day, quietly sinking into self-doubt every evening. When Su Changyu answers, Yiping calmly reports that he has finished comprehending all 1460 moves. That news makes Su Changyu feel even worse, but he forces his face back into calm authority and tells Yiping to rest before he overworks himself. Yiping accepts the advice, decides to take a rare 2-hour break, and finally sits down to enjoy the quiet evening instead of training. Looking over the red-lit Qingyun Peak, Yiping casually recites a poem, and the cultured side he rarely shows slips out on its own. The poem catches Su Changyu's attention, and even without much learning himself, he realizes Yiping was a real scholar before he ever came to cultivate. Su Changyu asks if he used to be a scholar, and Yiping modestly says he is only half one because he never earned an official exam title. Once he hears that, Su Changyu immediately asks a more useful question for his own vanity. Can Yiping paint? Yiping says he knows a little, and Su Changyu promptly tells him to paint something for him. Yiping agrees at once and hurries off to get his brush, ink, and paper, while a brief memory reminds him he once learned painting for love and got nothing from it but skill. He comes back with brush, rice paper, and an inkstone, ready to finally use the supplies he brought up the mountain. Yiping studies the evening scenery, then looks to Su Changyu and begins painting him into the red gold mountain view. Su Changyu does not think much of it and simply holds a cool, dashing pose against the sunset while Yiping keeps painting until the session settles into a quiet rhythm. As night settled over Qingyun Dao sect, Yiping finally finished the painting he had been working on and proudly told Su Changyu it was done. Su Changyu leaned in to look and had to admit the painting was genuinely good, especially the way it captured his cool sword immortal pose against the evening sky. Pleased by the praise, Yiping stamped the scroll with his seal, Buddhist Qinglian, and formally handed the painting over to his senior brother. Before they could say more, Daoist Taihua called Su Changyu away in a hurry, so Su Changyu told Yiping to keep studying the sword mark and left at once. When Su Changyu reached him, he guessed his master had found a way to borrow money, but Daoist Taihua proudly said he had thought of a better plan. His bright idea was to pawn everything valuable in the sect, scrape together some starting money, and gamble on finding the rest within 2 months. Su Changyu was speechless, because Qingyun Dao sect hardly had anything left worth pawning in the first place. Daoist Taihua added that if pawning failed, he could still beg help from a wealthy distant cousin who could casually cover 200 taels of gold. That only made Su Changyu more confused, and he immediately asked why they were wasting time pawning things instead of going straight to that cousin. Embarrassed, Daoist Taihua admitted the cousin had an odd problem with men, and the topic got awkward fast. Refusing to explain further, Daoist Taihua brushed it off as a last resort and dragged Su Changyu down the mountain to start pawning assets anyway. Back at the rear cliff, Yiping knew nothing about that money panic and calmly returned to the sword mark, feeling that finishing the complete sword technique had pushed him closer to true sword momentum. This time the sword mark felt different, and in Yiping's mind the 4 thunder forms kept repeating as his understanding surged. A real sword momentum began to spread from Yiping, lifting weeds and leaves into the air while dull thunder rolled across the cliff. He stayed in that state until morning, refining the insight through the entire night. At sunrise, Yiping opened his eyes and released a frightening burst of sword momentum from his body. With a casual motion, he formed a wisp of sword energy that swept up loose grass and carved a fresh mark into stone, proving he had truly condensed the beginnings of sword momentum overnight. Far away in the Qingzhou region, the story shifted to the mighty Taihua sword sect, where elite disciples were studying a famous sword mark on Sword Epiphany Cliff. That cliff bore a true sword intent mark left by Daoist Siji, a terrifying legacy far beyond the crude training mark Su Changyu had carved at Xinyan. Then thunder suddenly rang out at Sword Epiphany Cliff, and the surrounding disciples turned at once as Su Heng broke through in comprehension beneath the mark. The one who advanced was Su Heng, a young intersect genius in white robes, seated cross-legged with a buzzing sword and sword shadows rising behind him. The nearby disciples burst into envious praise as they realized Su Heng has pushed the Spring Thunder swordsmanship to greater mastery through the sword mark. They treated that speed as proof he could place among the top contenders in the coming Qinzhou sword down meet. Nearby, 7 or 8 Taihua elders watched too, and Elder Ming Jian could barely hide how delighted he was that his disciple had stood out first. Other elders congratulated Ming Jian, and he acted modest while looking thoroughly pleased with himself. But Elder Qinyu coldly cut in, warning that Qingzhou still had many sects, and it was too early to talk as if Su Heng had the title already won. Instead of getting angry, Ming Jian mocked him back with heavy sarcasm, talking as if some hidden genius from a tiny sect might casually reach peak just by glancing at a sword mark. Everyone understood the jab, because a talent absurd enough to do that should not exist anywhere in Qizhou. Qinyu was visibly angered, but with juniors present, he had to swallow it instead of causing a scene. Another elder stepped in to smooth things over and reminded them that whatever happened, the sect leader had unusually insisted their disciples must finish in the top 10 this year. That caught everyone's attention, because even they did not know why this year's Qingzhou sword down meet mattered so much. The answer was huge. The top 10 would each receive an entry token to the Taishian Sword Pagoda. The elders were stunned, because the Taishian Sword Pagoda was an ancient sword treasure said to hold a sword immortal's inheritance and 91 levels of trial and reward. They finally understood why the sect leader had gone so far as to invite Taoist Siji to leave a sword mark for their disciples. The speaker explained that Qingzhou had been allotted 10 of the 365 tokens, and those 10 would go straight to the meet's top 10 finishers. He warned them to train their disciples hard, because letting a token fall into the hands of some small sect would be deeply humiliating for Taihua Sword Sect. Under the blazing sun outside Baigua City, Taoist Taihua and Su Changyu wait in a long line to enter while Taihua fixes his gaze on a city notice. The notice turns out to be for the Qingzhou Sword Dao Meet, a famous tournament that starts in 3 months and demands 10 inferior-grade spirit stones just to register. Su Changyu is stunned because he once barely made the top 500 there, so he knows that even a low placing still carries real prestige. When Taihua keeps staring at the notice, Su Changyu warns him not to even think about joining, then abruptly realizes the sect leader really might be considering it. Taihua shuts that down at once and tells him to focus on business first, leaving the idea hanging between them. After 2 long hours, the pair finally enter the city and head straight for the Sincere Gold pawnshop with Taihua's stuffed cloth bag. The pawnshop looks refined and expensive, and its courteous owner, Shi Liangjin, greets them like important clients the moment they step inside. Taihua says they are here to sell, not pawn, because he already knows a pawnshop is the fastest way to turn sect junk into cash even at a loss. When Taihua drops the bag and asks for a fair price, Shi Liangjin assumes he has found a rich immortal customer and eagerly orders tea. Taihua refuses the tea and insists they appraise the sack first while he watches, which only makes Shi Liangjin more convinced it hides something valuable. Shi Liangjin brings over the old appraiser, and the merchants open the sack expecting hidden treasures from these dignified cultivators. The moment the sack opens, the merchant's excitement collapses because it is full of battered scraps that look like trash, while Taihua stays perfectly serious. Even after being asked if he brought the wrong bag, Taihua calmly confirms that yes, this pile of junk is exactly what he wants to sell. With his pride bruised but his shop's reputation on the line, Shi Liangjin forces himself to price the scraps one by one instead of throwing them out. His patience finally snaps when he pulls out a foot cloth, and even Taihua has to admit that one got packed by mistake. After finishing the miserable count, Shi Liangjin offers only 1 tael of gold and 35 taels of silver for the whole sack. Taihua immediately tries to push it up to 2 taels of gold as a gesture of friendship, but the pawnbroker is too stunned to even know how to answer. Shi Liangjin refuses to add even a coin and all but tells them to take their scrap elsewhere if they are unhappy. Taihua still pushes for 1 tael of gold and 50 silver, insisting he is not taking advantage, which only deepens the pawnbroker's misery. Trying to end the haggling, Shi Liangjin points at the scroll in Su Changyu's hand and says even its Xiyang rice paper is worth more than a scrap on the floor. When Shi Liangjin says the scroll uses expensive Xianyang rice paper, Taihua and Su Changyu are both stunned that the paper alone could already be worth 8 taels of gold. That hope sinks again when Shi Liangjin adds that once paper has been painted on, its value depends almost entirely on the painter's name. Su Changyu asks the obvious question about the painting's value, already fearing that Yi Ping is too unknown for it to matter. Shi Liangjin asks to inspect it anyway, and Su Changyu hands the scroll over without much confidence. As the scroll opens across the table, Shi Liangjin suddenly cries out in shock because he thinks he is looking at a painting by householder Qing Lian. Taihua has no idea who that is, while Su Changyu recognizes the name and watches the pawnbroker with fresh curiosity. Instead of answering, Shi Liangjin urgently summons the old appraiser again, now treating the painting like a possible windfall. The old appraiser returns coldly from the junk appraisal, but the instant he sees the painting, his face changes too. After a careful look, Shi Liangjin and the old appraiser agree the techniques and seal match householder Qing Lian, and the ink even seems fresh enough to have been painted recently. Their excitement spills over as Shi Liangjin and the old appraiser explain that householder Qing Lian is a legendary literary talent of Jin Nation whose work is adored by scholars and even prized by the emperor. Once they recover, Su Changyu cuts straight to the price, and Shi Liangjin and the old appraiser suddenly become far more respectful than before. Shi Liangjin calls Qing Lian's paintings priceless but slyly asks them to name a price first, hoping these two amateurs might lowball their own treasure. Taihua answers by holding up 5 fingers and asking for what he means as 50 taels of gold, thinking he is already daring to ask a huge amount. Shi Liangjin misreads that as 5,000 taels of gold, and instead of rejecting it, he seriously weighs whether the painting is authentic enough to risk that much. He proposes a test instead, If experts confirm it is real, he will pay 5,000 taels of gold, and even a high-quality fake would still earn 500. That number blows both of them away, because Yiping being a sword genius was shocking enough, but a single painting of his being worth this much feels even crazier. After a long stunned pause, Taihua takes a breath and escalates his demand again, this time declaring that he meant 50,000 taels of gold. Su Changyu is left speechless by his sect leader's greed, but Shi Liangjin still answers seriously instead of exploding. Shi Liangjin explains that 50,000 is impossible for this piece alone unless it also carries one of Qing Lian's poems and meets a rarer subject standard, so the two cultivators can only fall silent at the end of the negotiation. Back in Sincere Gold Firm, Shi Liangjin confirms the painting would still be worth at least 5,000 taels of gold if it is authentic, but the portrait inside drags the price down. When Shi Liangjin casually says the figure in the painting looks a lot like Su Changyu instantly denies it and regrets acting impressive in front of Yiping. Daoist Taihua realizes that Su Changyu's vanity may have cost him another 5,000 taels of gold, and the look he gives him is murderous. Shi Liangjin brings in 3 painting appraisers, and the room settles into a long, nervous wait while they inspect every detail of the scroll. After hours of scrutiny, the appraisers finally declare the painting authentic, and both Daoist Taihua and Su Changyu are shaken by the thought that one scroll is worth centuries of sect income. 2 appraisers keep sighing that the painting would be worth double without the person in it, making Su Changyu wilt and Taihua's eyes go even redder. A 3rd appraiser pushes back and says the swordsman in the painting may actually deepen its mood, as if householder Qing Lian brushed a trace of sword Dao into the scene. Once the experts are paid and sent away, Shi Liangjin turns back with a grin and says he will fetch the money for the deal. Now that he knows the painting is real, Daoist Taihua shamelessly changes his mind and refuses to sell at the earlier price. Shi Liangjin quickly explains that paintings like this only reach insane prices when the right buyer appears, so Taihua should not assume every shop will pay more. Taihua refuses to back down and demands a final number, making it clear he is willing to walk to another pawnshop if needed. With a bitter smile, Shi Liangjin finally offers 6,000 taels of gold and says that is the highest he can go. Daoist Taihua keeps pretending to think, but Su Changyu panics that the deal might collapse and blurts out that they will sell right now. Even at the final second, Taihua squeezes out one more demand and insists on 6,666 taels for an auspicious number. Shi Liangjin pays immediately, and the deal is sealed as Taihua takes the thick stack of banknotes and has Su Changyu hand over the painting. After the sale, Shi Liangjin carefully stores the scroll away, already thrilled by the fortune he expects to make reselling it. Outside the shop, Daoist Taihua and Su Changyu walk off in a daze, staring at the banknotes because the Qingyan Dao sect has never held this much money. When Su Changyu finally asks what they should do next, Daoist Taihua snaps back to himself and says they will pay their debts first, then go to Secret Yuan Pavilion. Taihua explains that Yiping earned this money, so the sect will use it to buy him manuals and supplements, and raise him as Qingyun's future hope. Before anything else, Daoist Taihua painfully pays 100 taels of gold at the sect administrative bureau to settle the urgent burden hanging over Qingyun. After that, the pair arrives at Secret Yuan Pavilion, whose flashy exterior makes it obvious this is a place small sects usually cannot afford. Inside, a pretty waitress in green greets them warmly, and Taihua keeps a calm face while Su Changyu quietly tries not to look out of place. When the waitress asks what they want, Daoist Taihua says he is here for a first-grade sword Dao manual, which instantly makes the staff treat them like major customers. That impressive moment dies fast when Taihua clarifies he only wants the rudimentary version, and the upgraded tea is quietly cancelled. The waitress leads them to the manual section and presents 3 first-grade rudimentary sword books, each priced at 500 spirit stones. Hearing that even the rudimentary books cost 500 spirit stones shocks Taihua, because that is already more than he wanted to spend on one manual. The waitress explains that these manuals are expensive because they include enhanced teaching methods that help disciples comprehend the techniques much faster. After a long pause, Taihua asks which of the 3 is best, deciding that if he must spend, he wants the strongest option for Yiping. The waitress recommends Chuanha swordsmanship and says a truly gifted disciple might even comprehend the higher Spirit Sea sword technique from it. That possibility is enough for Taihua, and he immediately chooses Chuanha swordsmanship. With the manual settled, Taihua asks for superior grade Qi refinement pills and Qi nourishment pills too, determined to give Yiping the best help he can afford. He orders 50 superior grade Qi refinement pills and 200 Qi nourishment pills, because Yiping's sword Dao talent is exceptional but his cultivation foundation still needs real support. The manual and pills come to 550 spirit stones, and Taihua pays the painful price anyway. Before leaving, Taihua also buys 2 superior cold iron swords, and he still haggles the price down to 466 taels of gold. By the time they step out of Secret Yuan Pavilion, Taihua has spent almost everything and is left with only 600 taels of gold. And just as they leave, Daoist Taihua suddenly remembers something important, stopping short with a fresh jolt of realization. Just after leaving Secret Yuan Pavilion, Daoist Taihua suddenly remembers the other disciples still need manuals for their year-end exams. Su Changyu confirms the second, third, and fourth junior brothers all plan to take alchemy, array, and talisman exams, so more study material really is needed. Su Changyu assumes they should go back into Secret Yuan Pavilion, but Taihua refuses to burn money that way. Instead, Taihua leads Su Changyu to the Cultivator's Bazaar, where the roadside stalls are packed with strange bargain manuals. At a shabby book stall, Taihua asks the price and nearly bristles when the seller demands 10 taels of gold per half kilogram. The vendor hypes the books as ancient treasures full of miracles, but Taihua knows they are mostly fake theories dressed up with grand titles. Taihua slashes the price to 10 taels per 5 kilograms and starts to leave, forcing the seller into a panicked bargain. Once the seller gives in, Taihua bluntly buys every manual on the stall in one sweep. The haul turns into a huge box of hundreds of shabby manuals, the kind small sects use to make an empty library look respectable. Taihua still buys the important things from proper shops, picking up real beginner texts, custom disciple clothes, spiritual rice, and beast meat for the sect. By the end of the spree, Taihua has spent almost everything on his disciples and is left with only a little money and a lot of heartache. On the road back, Taihua hands Su Changyu the Chuanhe swordsmanship manual and tells him to learn it first, then teach Yiping himself. Su Changyu is thrown because the manual seemed meant for Yiping, and Taihua explains that teaching him personally matters more than handing over the book. Taihua lays out the strategy clearly. Yiping's talent will surpass everyone, so Su Changyu has to become the senior brother who personally guides him and earns that trust. Su Changyu finally understands and praises Taihua's foresight, and Taihua grumbles that he bought the enriched manual only because Su Changyu would learn too slowly otherwise. When Su Changyu asks what Yiping should do before that lesson is ready, Taihua points to the huge pile of cheap manuals and says to let him read those first. Then Taihua lowers his voice and adds one more job for Su Changyu: get Yiping to paint again. Su Changyu hesitates because pushing too hard for more paintings might make Yiping suspicious. Taihua answers bluntly that the sect needs money, and Yiping's talent is too precious to let him cultivate in poverty without pills and support. That reasoning works, and Su Changyu reluctantly agrees to find a careful way to get Yiping painting again. Taihua pushes even further and says he wants Yiping trained well enough over the next 2 months to possibly enter the Qinzhou sword down meet. Su Changyu is stunned because Yiping has not even started real cultivation yet, and sending him to a Qinzhou elite event sounds like asking for humiliation. Taihua does not explain the full reason yet, only says to keep training Yiping and keep the money and painting matter secret from the others. By the time they return to Qingyun Dao sect, midnight has fallen and Yiping is still alone at the rear cliff, absorbed in the sword mark. Alone at the cliff, Yiping sorts out the 4 thunder sword techniques in his mind, feeling spring as continuous, summer as ferocious, autumn as silent, and winter as killing intent. After another stretch of focus, Yiping opens his eyes, takes up a tree branch, and in one quiet strike condenses the silent momentum of autumn thunder. Su Changyu arrives just in time to see it, and behind his calm face he is painfully aware that Yiping reached autumn thunder momentum in only one day. Even while feeling sour and outclassed, Su Changyu walks over and calls for his little junior brother, as if nothing is wrong. Yiping is genuinely surprised to see Su Changyu here so late at night. Su Changyu says he came to deliver something and places a jade bottle of Qi nourishment pills in front of Yiping. When Su Changyu explains the pills can keep him going for 5 days without food or sleep, Yiping is openly impressed and grateful. Su Changyu follows that gift with a real sword from the sect leader and tells Yiping to practice with this from now on. After a brief silence, Su Changyu carefully asks whether Yiping has started finding sword practice boring. Yiping answers honestly that it is not boring at all because he keeps improving every day, which only twists the knife deeper for Su Changyu. So Su Changyu changes tactics and says that if Yiping ever does get bored, he can give him another secret manual to study. The moment he hears that, Yiping hurriedly claims that sword practice might actually be a little boring after all. Su Changyu stops teasing him and finally hands over one of the secret manuals from the bazaar. Under the moonlight, Yiping opens the thick book, reads the cover, and freezes at the title Ancient God-Fiend Body Tempering Technique. At Qingyun Sect's rear cliff, Yiping is stunned when Su Changyu hands him a secret manual called Ancient God-Fiend Body Tempering Technique. Because the name alone sounds like a top-tier art, Yiping instantly takes this as proof that Qingyun is a hidden powerhouse, and his excitement becomes impossible to hide. Su Changyu mistakes that reaction for suspicion, so he hurriedly improvises an explanation that Yiping's poor aptitude makes body tempering a practical path. In truth, Su Changyu is bluffing, because he thinks the manual is mostly absurd boasting and only useful for keeping Yiping busy. Yiping, however, takes Su Changyu's words completely seriously and imagines a dual cultivation path where hidden body strength becomes his surprise trump card. Before leaving, Su Changyu warns him not to force the body tempering manual, and says he should first finish condensing the complete 4 Thunder Sword momentum. Once Su Changyu is gone, Yiping carefully tucks away the manual and throws himself back into studying the sword mark with even more drive. His mind keeps drifting to the grand name Ancient God-Fiend Body Tempering Technique, and compared to that, the 4 Thunder Sword techniques suddenly feel plain to him. Still, Yiping restrains himself and decides he has to master the sword first, or he might fail at both paths. 2 days later, Su Changyu is still stuck with the expensive Chuanhe sword manual and has not understood its real sword moves at all. That failure hits harder because Taoist Tai Hua spent 450 spirit stones on the manual and expected Su Changyu to learn it within days and pass it on. The more he compares himself to Yiping, the worse he feels, until he starts wondering if he simply has no talent for swordsmanship. Panicking, Su Changyu finally comes up with a shameless backup plan. If he cannot learn the sword art, he can still memorize the explanations and bluff his way through teaching it. Relieved by that excuse, he reads the manual carefully one more time and heads out to find Yiping in the middle of the night. But as he walks toward the rear cliff, a sudden peal of thunder rings out from the darkness. Su Changyu immediately realizes that sound means Yiping has already completed more sword momentum, including Autumn Thunder and Winter Thunder, in less than half a day. That realization crushes what little confidence he had left, and instead of going to Yiping, Su Changyu quietly turns away. His mood sinks so low that one bleak thought rises in his head as he slips off alone. I'm sorry to have been born. Back at the rear cliff, Yiping finishes executing the full 4 thunder sword momentum and exhales a mouthful of turbid breath in relief. After half a day of effort, he has mastered all 4 thunder sword momentums, and can now combine them into one complete form or split them apart for different effects. Even with that breakthrough, Yiping deliberately reins himself in, because he thinks sword intent is deeper and more dangerous to get wrong than sword momentum. He convinces himself that Su Changyu gave him the body tempering manual right now to stop him from rushing into a flawed sword intent epiphany. Feeling grateful for what he sees as his senior brother's foresight, Yiping finally takes out the ancient god fiend body tempering technique to study it seriously. The first page introduces Taoist Mo Xian and declares that true body refinement can seize stars, hold sun and moon, and kill everything with one fist. Those outrageous claims don't scare Yiping off at all, and instead they convince him even more that this is a peerless great Tao technique. Then he pauses, because the manual openly warns that only someone with enough willpower, determination, and wisdom can survive this path. After a long stretch of silent thought, Yiping steels himself and decides he is ready to endure whatever this cultivation demands. The next page praises him for turning it, and says the real test is still ahead, which only makes Yiping admire the manual even more. On the third page, he finds a simple God Fiend sky observation diagram that teaches him to open his body to heaven and earth for tempering. Convinced this is the true entry point, Yiping immediately follows the diagram, opens his arms, closes his eyes, and begins trying to sense heaven and earth. Far away in Yan'an County, the story cuts to a private residence where a woman in purple is still riding by oil lamp deep into the night. After 6 straight hours, Fairy Mo finally throws down her brush in satisfaction and celebrates with a big gulp of wine. A middle-aged man outside urges her to hand it over before the night gets any later, and Fairy Mo casually tosses the completed manuscript out through the window. The man schemes the pages and excitedly praises her new book, saying her writing keeps getting better and this one should sell extremely well. Fairy Mo cuts through the flattery and bluntly demands the rest of the money he still owes her from the previous book. He hands over banknotes worth 1,000 taels of gold and complains that her earlier ancient god fiend refinement technique sold terribly because it was too exaggerated for most cultivators to believe. Fairy Mo brushes off the lecture and asks the only thing she really cares about, whether he found the information she wanted. He tells her the 10 Nations Academy will officially recruit students next year, then leaves with the manuscript to handle business. Left alone again, Fairy Mo sits back down at her desk and immediately starts writing yet another secret manual. At dawn on Qingyan Sek's rear cliff, Yiping holds the sky-observing stance for hours, but the god fiend diagram still gives him nothing. The manual's warning stings him hard. The gifted can grasp it at a glance, and the untalented may never succeed at all. Instead of quitting, Yiping pushes even harder and spends nearly the whole day cultivating, relying on his pill so he can skip meals and rest less. By midday he still has no breakthrough, but that only hardens his resolve. Yiping tells himself that if his talent is ordinary, then sheer willpower will have to carry him the rest of the way. He endures into the late quiet night, and even after all that time the ancient god fiend body tempering technique still gives him nothing. When his arms finally give out, Yiping drops to the ground and starts picking apart where he went wrong. He almost goes to ask Su Changyu for help, but his pride and fear of looking untalented stop him cold. So he studies the manual alone and convinces himself that something this simple must hide a deeper truth. After another long hour, one word finally clicks for him. Observation does not mean just staring upward with his eyes. He realizes the technique wants him to see the true heavens with his heart, not the small patch of sky above the mountain. That insight hits him like a jolt, and he berates himself for nearly missing the real meaning of the diagram. Yiping steadies his breathing, closes his eyes, and starts feeling for heaven and earth inwardly instead of looking outward. This time the answer comes at once, and a vast universe unfolds inside his mind. As his epiphany opens, the stars above the world suddenly brighten and tremble. Far away in Great Xia's heavenly secret hall, an old astrologer sees the celestial chart flare and jolts up in disbelief. Staring at the blazing chart, the old astrologer can only think of one terrifying answer: an immortal saint may have appeared. The same disturbance shakes the other heavenly secret halls too, proving this is no small local anomaly. Most cultivators notice nothing at all, And back at Qingyun Sect, the night still looks peaceful on the surface. Su Changyu is out alone watching the sky as usual, but even he only thinks the stars look a little brighter tonight. Nearby, Chen Lingru quietly asks Su Luochen why their eldest senior brother has been staring at the stars every night lately. They guess Su Changyu is stressed because Yiping is too hard to teach, which says more about their misunderstanding than the truth. Su Luochen even decides he may need to step in soon before Su Changyu gets pushed to do something reckless. Meanwhile, on the rear cliff, Yiping finally stops looking with his eyes and lets a god-fiend shadow rise inside his mind. Inside that boundless inner universe, Yiping sees the true great Tao god-fiend towering over all things with terrifying majesty. The sight floods his mind with the real inheritance, and an ancient voice teaches him the core of body tempering. An hour later he opens his eyes, having fully understood the ancient god-fiend body tempering technique at last. The method is brutal but clear. He must shape heaven into a hammer, earth into a furnace, and temper his body again and again with that force. He also learns the path ahead is divided into 5 realms, and he is only at the very first little god-fiend stage. The technique has 2 absolute requirements: a god-fiend diagram in the heart, and enough spiritual energy to call down the heavenly hammer and earth furnace. That is where his excitement crashes into a problem, because he barely has any spiritual energy to use. Yiping knows his cultivation aptitude is terrible, and the many failed sect tests still weigh on him. He thinks about asking Su Changyu again, then rejects the idea for the same reason as before. He cannot bear to look useless in front of him. A possible shortcut flashes through his mind when he remembers the chi refinement pills Su Changyu gave him. He pours out a tiny pale pill and seriously considers swallowing it on the spot. But caution wins, because he has not even entered chi refinement yet, and has no idea if taking that pill now would blow him apart. So he puts the pill away and accepts that body tempering will have to wait until he can cultivate safely. Rather than dwell on what he cannot do yet, Yiping turns back to the sword mark and resumes trying to grasp the 4th Thundersword intent. By the next day, Su Changyu arrives at the rear cliff after 3 sleepless nights of failing to understand the Chuanhe swordsmanship himself. The more he struggles with that sword art, the more annoyed Su Changyu gets that he somehow ended up having to teach it at all. What really traps him is Taoist Tai Hua's expectation that Yiping might enter the Qinzhou sword Dao meet, because Su Changyu thinks that plan is wildly unrealistic. In Su Changyu's eyes, Yiping may have sword talent, but without dermic power he would get crushed by most real competitors. To kill that whole idea before it grows, Su Changyu decides to keep feeding Yiping nonsense instead of properly teaching Chuanhe swordsmanship. He even spent last night writing a new sword manual himself, mixing in a little truth and a lot of made-up nonsense. Su Changyu is so sure Yiping cannot possibly understand that fake manual that he mentally swears he would eat everyone's swords if it somehow works. At the rear cliff, Yiping is still studying the long sword mark when he suddenly feels someone approach and turns to see Su Changyu. Yiping greets him politely, and Su Changyu keeps his cool outer mask even though he is secretly miserable about his junior brother's absurd talent. Su Changyu says he came to teach a second sword technique, and Yiping is startled because he still thinks he has not truly mastered the first one. When Yiping calls his own aptitude poor, Su Changyu is hit even harder inside, but he still tells him that mastering one sword art will make the next easier. Su Changyu steps back, draws his sword, and tells Yiping to watch carefully as he demonstrates the new technique. Su Changyu pauses with his eyes closed so long that Yiping thinks his senior brother is entering a deep union of sword and heaven, when he is really trying to remember the moves. Once Su Changyu finally starts, Yiping first feels the force of the river and the sword, then notices the form itself is oddly uneven. Yiping convinces himself those flaws are deliberate hints, and his respect for Su Changyu only deepens because he believes his stern senior brother is teaching him with hidden care. Su Changyu forces the whole demonstration through, panting hard by the end, then covers it with one especially flashy finishing flourish. Watching that last move, Yiping quietly gives the technique a grand line of poetry about great waters rising to heaven and never returning. Su Changyu is relieved Yiping did not spot the fake parts, and he is even pleased that the poem makes his made-up technique sound impressive. When Su Changyu asks what he thinks, Yiping sincerely praises the sword art as majestic and ocean-deep, which flatters Su Changyu even more. Su Changyu formally names it the Heavenly River Sword Technique, says the rudimentary version has only 9 moves, and tells Yiping to deduce the rest on his own. Yiping solemnly promises to train hard, while Su Changyu secretly savors the thought that this fabricated sword art should finally stump him. Still cautious, Su Changyu warns Yiping not to force it if the technique does not suit him and says he can always return to the 4th Thundersword techniques. Before leaving, Su Changyu adds that Su Luochen will come in a few days to teach alchemy, and Yiping is surprised he will be learning something new so soon. Su Changyu says Su Luochen is much gentler than he is, tells Yiping to practice at ease, and walks away from the rear cliff. But only a short time later, Su Changyu's fear catches up with him, and he turns back because he suddenly worries Yiping might really get obsessed with the fake technique. When Su Changyu returns, he finds Yiping not practicing at all but standing still with his eyes closed, silently thinking through the sword art. Su Changyu asks Yiping to demonstrate the Heavenly River Sword technique once, saying he wants to see whether it really suits him. Yiping agrees, but asks for a little time first because some new thoughts just came to him, and he wants to sort them out before performing. As Yiping closes his eyes again, the 9 moves replay in his mind until he suddenly realizes the heavenly river is not a mortal river at all, but the Milky Way across the sky. Meanwhile, Su Changyu grows more and more impatient waiting there, regretting that he came back at all and grumbling inwardly about how long this is taking. Then Yiping finally moves, and the first swing sounds not like a blade at all, but like a wave breaking open. Yiping flows straight into the next moves, and each one rises heavier than the last until the whole sword sequence feels like endless sea tides piling on top of each other. The sequence keeps climbing past 20, 50, and 100 moves, and Su Changyu is left staring because he only taught 9. As Yiping's momentum builds, fierce wind tears through the rear cliff, whipping leaves and branches into a storm around him. By the 365th move, the pressure bursts outward and the ground ahead of Yiping explodes with sand and shattered rock. Su Changyu can only stand there stunned, realizing Yiping has somehow turned his improvised nonsense into a terrifying real sword art that could probably kill him. After stopping, Yiping nervously apologizes and says his poor aptitude probably kept him from showing the true essence of the heavenly river sword technique. Swallowing the blow, Su Changyu blandly says Yiping is only mediocre but did fine for managing to deduce 365 moves so quickly. Su Changyu immediately leaves again, too shaken to say anything else, while Yiping mistakenly thinks his senior brother is disappointed in his talent. Filled with determination, Yiping vows to work hard until he can reach even 1% of Su Changyu's level in this lifetime. That line nearly makes Su Changyu stumble, and as he walks away in silent agony he swears he will invent a sword technique next time that Yiping absolutely cannot learn. By late night, the mood shifts across the sect as Su Luochen comes out of his hut with an alchemy book, desperately cramming prescriptions for another exam he is afraid to fail. He catches himself mixing up ingredients again, scolds his own terrible memory, and worries that failing this alchemy examination would make it his 8th failure. Looking toward the distant cliff, Su Luochen spots Su Changyu standing alone under the stars and assumes his eldest senior brother has become this gloomy because Yiping's aptitude is too poor. Su Luochen shakes his head, judges Su Changyu as an impatient future teacher, and decides that when he teaches Yiping tomorrow, he will show his eldest senior brother how real patience looks. Back in Qingzhou, the 4th Thunder Swordsmanship sect wraps up a major sword appraisal with its top 10 inner disciples standing on stage like victors. An elder loudly praises the results, announcing that 7 reached greater mastery in Spring Thunder Swordsmanship, 2 reached its peak, and 1 even condensed sword momentum. The mood flips when the elder says the Qingzhou sword Dao meat is too important for complacency, so Daoist Ciji himself will train the top 10 for the next 2 months. That single announcement hits hard, because even gifted inner disciples normally would never receive personal instruction from the creator of the 4 Thunder Sword techniques. The elder then reveals the real pressure. This time the sect does not just want first place, it wants to sweep all top 10 spots at the sword Dao meet. He adds that hidden sects are sending disciples too, and the entire crowd instantly realizes this competition is far more dangerous than usual. To Qingzhou's disciples, hidden sects mean old lineages and buried inheritances far beyond what local sects can normally challenge. The disciples are left bitter with regret, wishing they had fought harder for a top 10 seat before learning Daoist Ciji would personally coach the winners. Before dismissing them, the elder warns everyone not to get arrogant, and reminds them that the sword path is long and demands steady effort. After the public event ends, the story shifts to the sect's main hall, where dozens of elders wait in a cold, unusually tense silence. Then Daoist Ciji finally appears, and every elder rises at once to greet the sect leader with full respect. Once seated at the head, Daoist Ciji says he called them here because something truly major has happened. The elders immediately start guessing, with some even wondering if this is about the coveted entry token to the Taishian Sword Tower. Daoist Ciji shuts that down at once and says the real issue is bigger, asking them if they know about the 10 Nations Academy. That name shocks the room, because the 10 Nations Academy is where only the true elites of entire nations can hope to enter. One elder dares to ask if the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet could somehow lead to a place in that academy, even though the idea sounds almost impossible. Daoist Ciji explains that the Sword Dao meet itself is not the point, but Jin Nation has secretly sent hundreds of sword masters to investigate 2 matters in Qingzhou. The first matter is the missing 7 treasures vase, a case serious enough to bring royal investigators into the region. The second matter is even more important. Jin Nation is preparing its own academy to train young elites for the coming reopening of the 10 Nations Academy. He says the royal plan is to choose promising juniors now, train 10 true elites for about a year, and then send them to the 10 Nations Academy. The elders quickly grasp the implication and ask if Royal Sword Dao experts will be watching the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet to scout talent in person. Daoist Ciji confirms it and adds another bombshell. He already knows who the hidden inspector is. That sends the hall into real excitement, because Jin Nation's inspectors are famous for hiding in plain sight for years and are almost impossible to identify early. Instead of answering immediately, Daoist Ciji raises his hand and brings out a painting scroll. When he unrolls it, the hall sees an evening mountain scene with the side profile of a young man whose bearing feels uncannily like a sword immortal. The elders start praising the artwork piece by piece, first admiring the painting skill and then realizing the figure inside it seems to carry actual sword intent. Daoist CG finally states the point outright. The man in the painting is the sword Dao powerhouse sent by the king of Jin Nation. Even then, several elders hesitate, because the painted man looks too young for the kind of terrifying royal inspector Daoist CG is describing. Daoist CG bluntly calls them shallow and asks if they even know who painted the scroll. An elder recognizes the painter as householder Qing Lian, a celebrated talent favored by the king of Jin Nation who mysteriously vanished half a year ago. Daoist CG builds his case from that clue, saying Qing Lian must have met a peerless swordsman now serving Jin Nation as an inspection commander after once belonging to the 10 Nations Academy. He goes further, and says the king may have ordered Qing Lian to paint that man, who normally refuses to show his full face and only allowed a side profile. One elder still presses him for real proof, unwilling to trust a chain of deductions alone. Daoist CG answers without another word, tapping the scroll and releasing a terrifying burst of sword momentum from the painting itself. In the 4th Thunder Swordsmanship Sect main hall, Daoist CG lets the painting's hidden sword momentum flood the room, and the elders feel a crushing pressure that instantly silences them. Daoist CG withdraws his power and calmly asks if anyone still doubts him, but the hall stays dead quiet. The elders scramble to explain what they just felt, torn between praising householder Qing Lian's skill and fearing the terrifying swordsman inside the painting. But Daoist CG is disappointed, because even after seeing the sword momentum, the elders still have not spotted the real key. The hall studies the scroll again in tense silence until one elder suddenly blurts out that he understands. Pressed by the others, Elder One points to the painting and reveals the crucial clue: there is no spiritual energy in it at all. That single detail changes everything, because if no spiritual energy was used, then the sword momentum was not painted in by technique, but naturally left behind by the swordsman himself. Now fully convinced, the elders accept Daoist CG's judgment that the man in the painting must be a peerless sword Dao expert, and likely the inspection commander. Daoist CG adds another reason for his deduction. This expert clearly loves wandering the mortal world, casually sells priceless treasures for spending money, and was reportedly seen in Baigua City looking just like the figure in the scroll. The elders immediately buy into that image too, comparing him to other detached masters who treat treasures like junk and care nothing for fame or wealth. When someone asks if they should flatter the man on purpose, Daoist CG shuts that idea down at once. He warns that a true expert would hate hidden agendas, so the sect must keep quiet, avoid forced praise, and only let disciples sincerely ask him about the sword Dao if fate brings them together. The elders nod along reverently, imagining the stranger as a lonely, aloof sword master who lives only for the path of the sword. Even Daoist CG is moved, quietly hoping he can meet that sword Dao expert in person one day. Back at Qingyun Dao sect, Su Changyu quietly finishes a round of sword practice and turns to ask Chen Lingru if the moves looked good. Chen Lingru gives him a bright yes, and Su Changyu turns away with a rare satisfied smile. Around the same time, Su Luochen heads for the rear cliff in a good mood, carrying books and thinking that teaching Yiping alchemy matters more than brooding over another failed exam. As he walks, Su Luochen privately grumbles that Su Changyu is acting unprofessionally by going strange just because Yiping seems untalented in the sword Dao. At the rear cliff, Yiping has spent 2 full days studying the Heavenly River swordsmanship and pushing his deductions all the way to 1,800 moves. He knows the missing piece now is sword intent, but he deliberately stops there, worried that forcing a breakthrough too fast could backfire. Yiping also sets aside the ancient God-fiend body tempering technique for now, because without spiritual energy he cannot really begin. That leaves him staring at the problem of cultivation resources, debating whether to take a chi refinement pill or ask Su Changyu for help, but feeling too embarrassed to go. Before he can decide, Su Luochen arrives and calls out to him, breaking Yiping's train of thought. Yiping rises and greets him respectfully, and Su Luochen explains that Su Changyu is busy, so he has been sent to teach alchemy instead. Even after hearing that, Yiping cannot hide his worry and asks if Su Changyu gave up because his sword Dao aptitude is too poor. Su Luochen tries to reassure him, saying Su Changyu is only inexperienced as a teacher, and suggests that if the sword is not Yiping's strength, alchemy might be. The words sting anyway, and Yiping grows even more determined to prove himself in the sword Dao, while also studying alchemy hard enough not to disappoint his senior brother too. Su Luochen keeps reassuring him that this is not just comfort talk, then warmly tells Yiping to call him senior brother Luochen instead of second senior brother. With that settled, Su Luochen tells him to calm down and focus, because he is about to explain alchemy seriously. Yiping immediately sets aside his private worries and listens with full attention, treating the lesson with complete seriousness. Su Luochen begins with the broader truth that the 3,000 Daos have no true hierarchy, and any path can reach greatness if pursued to the end. He then turns to alchemy, explaining that alchemists are valued more as they age because experience and skill raise their success rate. Yiping answers that older alchemists should be steadier and more successful because they have more practice, and that sharp reply instantly catches Su Luochen's attention. For the first time, Su Luochen genuinely sees potential in him and praises Yiping's talent instead of treating him like a hopeless student. Yiping still cannot quite believe it and nervously asks whether this is just more comfort talk. Su Luochen firmly says he is not just comforting Yiping, reminds him that one setback in the sword Dao does not decide everything, and then turns fully serious to begin teaching alchemy for real. At Qingyun Sect's rear cliff, Su Luochen finally puts his month of rehearsing into action and faces Yiping with a grave master-like air. He opens with a lofty question, asking Yiping what a truly powerful alchemist should be like. The question hits Yiping hard because it feels just like Su Changyu's teaching style, and he starts wondering if this senior brother is another hidden expert. Yiping answers earnestly that the greatest alchemist should be so valuable that even top cultivators would bow for a single life-changing pill. Su Luochen immediately rejects that answer and coldly tells him he is still thinking too shallowly. When Yiping respectfully asks for guidance, Su Luochen tells him to think bigger and asks what the strongest pill in the world should really do. Yiping thinks hard and says the ultimate pill should fix poor talent, boost luck, and let someone rise all the way to immortality. Su Luochen still says no, then lifts the idea of alchemy to an absurdly grand level and declares that true masters refine heaven and earth, with every pill becoming its own world. That one line completely stuns Yiping, who suddenly feels that alchemy can stand beside the sword Dao after all. Yiping's suspicion disappears, and he starts treating Su Luochen as another peerless master hidden inside this shabby sect. Su Luochen sees the shock land perfectly, and secretly enjoys that his month of nonsense is working. Out loud, Su Luochen gently asks if Yiping understands now, keeping his expert pose completely intact. Yiping hurriedly says he understands, and Su Luochen keeps the lesson practical by saying supreme alchemy is far off, so he will test Yiping through basic foundations first. Then Su Luochen solemnly unveils his so-called unique art and declares that he will teach Yiping how to refine pills with no poison and no side effects. Yiping immediately locks in on every word, while Su Luochen keeps preaching a theory the real alchemy world would laugh out of the room. As the lesson continues on the rear cliff, Su Luochen says the law of pill toxicity cannot be changed and asks what the real core of a non-poisonous pill should be. Yiping thinks through the problem carefully and admits he cannot find an answer, because removing all toxicity sounds impossible in theory. Su Luochen calmly gives a bizarre answer, saying that if you abandon medicinal herbs, you can refine pills without any poison at all. That finally makes Yiping hesitate, because even to a beginner, refining pills without medicinal herbs sounds absurd. Su Luochen catches the doubt at once and asks directly whether Yiping thinks he is being fooled. Yiping quickly denies it, saying he only finds the theory hard to grasp, not that he doubts his senior brother's sincerity. Su Luochen leans into the role even harder and says a unique inheritance cannot possibly look ordinary from the start. He follows that with a sword example, saying mortals would also refuse to believe in a sword immortal who can shatter stars with one strike. That comparison flips Yiping's thinking, and he admits he was being too narrow-minded to judge a higher realm by his own limits. With Yiping fully listening again, Su Luochen finally lays out his fake system. The root of all herbs is spiritual energy itself. He says herbs become toxic only after pure spiritual energy grows in the world and gets tainted by the 5 elements. From there, Su Luochen gives the key conclusion: skip herbs entirely, gather raw spiritual energy from heaven and earth, and condense pills directly with Tao. This time Yiping is truly convinced, because the whole theory suddenly sounds elegant and terrifyingly reasonable to him. Once the doubt is gone, Yiping formally says he understands, completely accepting Su Luochen's version of non-poisonous alchemy. Satisfied, Su Luochen hands him a basic alchemy booklet and tells him to copy the method down, study it well, and come back after he refines a pill. Yiping clutches the manual with real excitement, already imagining how terrifying it would be to cultivate with pills that leave no side effects behind. Before leaving, Su Luochen asks if Yiping still has any questions, and Yiping immediately brings up the qi refinement pill on his mind. Yiping asks whether a person who does not cultivate can safely consume a qi refinement pill. Su Luochen answers from common sense that it will not really help a non-cultivator, though it can barely help grow spirit meridians. That answer settles something for Yiping, and he thanks Su Luochen again with a clearer expression. Su Luochen then reminds him that if he has more basic questions later, he can go to the sect's Sutra Pavilion and read for himself. Yiping is suddenly reminded that the sect even has a library, and he realizes he has been so absorbed in the sword mark that he neglected it. With the lesson over, Su Luochen leaves in a great mood, privately praising his own teaching and even daydreaming about competing with Su Changyu for the future sect leader seat. Left alone on the cliff, Yiping opens the non-poisonous alchemy manual and starts studying it in earnest. Late at night, Su Changyu stands alone on the cliff and watches the stars in the silence of Qingyun Dao sect. A sudden movement in the dark snaps him to attention, and he rushes to the sect entrance with his hand already on his sword. The stranger turns out to be Taoist Taihua, who awkwardly claims he is only out for a stroll. Su Changyu immediately sees through the excuse and presses his master to say what he is really planning. Forced to answer, Taoist Taihua admits he wants Qingyun to rise to a third-grade sect before Yiping eventually leaves them. He explains that if Yiping reaches the top 100 at the Qinzhou Sword Dao meet, Qingyun can apply for promotion even if their genius disciple moves on later. Su Changyu falls quiet because he knows his master is right. Once Yiping sees the outside world, The truth about this sect cannot stay hidden forever. But Taihua is not sneaking off to register Yiping. He is heading to the dangerous Cloud Mist mountain range to gather spirit essence. Su Changyu is stunned and bluntly tells him that, at his current cultivation, going there is basically asking to die. Taihua insists he will only stay on the mountain range's edge, but even he sounds less certain once the danger is spoken out loud. When Su Changyu asks why the sect needs this risk at all, Taihua finally says the truth. Yiping needs a proper flying sword for the sword Dao meet. Su Changyu refuses to let his master gamble his life and suggests asking Yiping for another painting instead. Taihua rejects that idea and says taking one painting was already enough, because Yiping will one day learn the truth and should not feel used for money. He insists that a teacher should help Yiping properly now, so even if the boy leaves later, he will not leave with resentment toward Qingyun. That hits Su Changyu hard, because he knows Taihua always hoards the worst for himself, and gives the best things to his disciples. After a long sigh, Su Changyu decides he cannot let Taihua face that mountain alone and says he is going to. Taihua immediately tries to refuse, saying Su Changyu would only become extra burden and should stay behind to teach Yiping swordsmanship. Su Changyu does not argue much. One hard look is enough to make it clear he has already made up his mind. In the end, Taihua gives in and only warns him to stay close and not act rashly once they reach the mountain range. The two leave Qingyun together in the dark, still worrying about Yiping as they disappear down the mountain path and trust Su Luochen to watch over him. They decide Su Luochen can hold things together, since he has been teaching Yiping alchemy, and is steady enough to handle the sect for now. At dawn the next morning, Yiping wakes early, washes up, and steps out into Qingyun's misty mountain calm. The bells and drifting clouds put Yiping in a good mood, and he quietly recites poetry while taking in the scenery. He heads for the Sutra Pavilion because after last night's study, he has realized alchemy can wait until he actually has spiritual energy. Su Luochen's manual made one thing clear to him: without spiritual energy, he cannot refine true spirit pills yet. So for now, Yiping decides the smarter path is to build up his basic knowledge of the cultivation world first. As he walks through Qingyun's plain halls, he becomes even more convinced that the sect's simplicity hides a deeper style. Even the single incense stick outside the main hall looks profound to him, as if Qingyun values sincerity over empty display. With that thought, he finally enters the Sutra Pavilion to study in earnest. The moment he sees the shelves, Yiping freezes, because the little pavilion is casually stacked with absurdly grand secret manuals. What shocks him even more is that treasures like these are just sitting out in the open with no visible formations or protection at all. The sight sends him into a private thrill, and in his heart Qingyun instantly becomes an unquestionable hidden world sect. Still, he forces himself to calm down, and reminds himself that a supreme manual is useless if he cannot learn it safely. Worried about practicing recklessly or offending his seniors, he deliberately leaves the flashy manuals alone and reaches for basic world books instead. He spends the whole day in the pavilion reading, patiently working through book after book until daylight fades. After 14 hours and 45 books, Yiping finally has a broad picture of Qinzhou, Jin Nation, the 10 nations, and how their immortal sects fit into the world. One fact surprises him most: the imperial court is not weaker than the sects at all, and in many matters it actually holds the upper hand. As he thinks it through, Yiping realizes the logic is simple: a nation commands endless people, resources, ambition, and cultivators willing to trade service for power. That realization makes him briefly miserable, because if he had known this earlier, he might have gone for the imperial examinations instead of failing the immortal ascension meet over and over. But the regret flips almost at once, because if he had known better, he would never have stumbled into Qingyun and found this hidden sect. His spirits rise again, and after stretching from the long day of reading, his eyes drift back to the manual titled 3600 Immortal Aperture Mystical Technique. Right then, a clear female voice interrupts him and asks why he is here, catching Yiping at the shelves. While Yiping studies in the Sutra Pavilion, Shinlingru suddenly calls out to her new little junior brother, and happily comes over to talk. Shinlingru asks why he is not at the rear cliff practicing sword Dao, and Yiping explains that Su Luochen told him to read basic books first so he would not embarrass himself over common knowledge. She casually grumbles that Su Luochen is just saving himself trouble, while Yiping quietly shifts back because her easy closeness makes him flustered. When Shinlingru notices him retreating, Yiping hastily lies that his legs are numb so he will not seem improper around her. Still completely sincere, Shinlingru pats his shoulder and promises that in a few days she will teach him the supreme great Tao herself. Yiping cannot quite believe she sounds like a hidden master, but her kindness and straightforward warmth still leave him with a very good impression. He points to the 3600 Immortal Aperture Technique and carefully asks if he is really allowed to learn it. Shinlingru treats the manual like nothing special and says he can practice it freely because it is just a very basic secret manual. That answer shocks Yiping even more, because if this terrifying-sounding technique is basic in Qingyun sect, then the sect's real inheritance must be even deeper than he imagined. Before leaving, Shinlingru cheerfully tells him to call her senior sister Lingru, making their relationship feel a little closer. Once she is gone, Yiping immediately takes down the 3600 Immortal Aperture Technique and starts reading it in earnest. Half an hour later, he finishes the manual and learns its core secret. The human body contains 3,600 hidden apertures that can accelerate cultivation and even awaken powerful talents. For Yiping, whose biggest weakness is his poor aptitude, this technique feels like a lifeline that might finally let him catch up. He rereads the cultivation method carefully, then hurries straight to the rear cliff because he wants both stronger talent and a foundation for the ancient god-fiend body tempering technique. At the rear cliff, Yiping sits down cross-legged, empties his mind, and begins searching inside himself for the immortal apertures described in the book. After an hour of stillness, a breeze passes and 36 star-like points suddenly light up in his mind, linked together into a clear pattern. Yiping instantly understands that he has found the immortal apertures and tries to move spiritual energy into his body at once. Then the problem hits him hard. He has no idea how to guide spiritual energy into his body in the first place. Instead of asking for the easy answer, he starts reasoning from the root and wonders how the very first cultivator in history discovered chi refinement at all. That choice makes the road ahead far harder, because Yiping is now trying to figure out chi refinement from first principles instead of relying on a ready-made method. More than half a month slips by, and after 19 full days of trying, he still cannot draw in spiritual energy. The failure leaves him frustrated and even more convinced that his aptitude is terrible, but he keeps forcing himself to continue. During those days, Suluochin comes by several times, and each time Yiping almost asks for help before swallowing the question because he does not want to seem hopelessly ignorant. One late night, still empty-handed, Yiping stands alone on the cliff under bright stars and tries to calm his helpless anger before it makes things worse. To clear his head, he decides to paint instead and hopes the change of mood might spark a useful insight. When Yiping returns with brush, ink, and paper, Suluochin appears again and gently asks what has been troubling him lately. Yiping admits he is bothered by something but calls it a small matter, still refusing to reveal that even basic chi guidance has stopped him cold. Suluochin mistakes the problem for cultivation anxiety, so he comforts Yiping to relax and not force things too hard. After hearing Yiping wants to paint, Suluochin suddenly asks for a portrait of himself, and Yiping agrees at once, mentioning that he already painted one for Su Changyu before. Suluochin insists on a full front-facing portrait with real mood to it, sounding far more excited than a dignified senior brother should. Yiping spreads the paper, grinds the ink, and settles down to paint under the night sky. An hour later, Yiping finishes the work, turning the dark mountain night and the stars overhead into a portrait with a strong atmosphere. Suluochin looks it over and is delighted, praising Yiping's skill even though the painting captures more mood than his actual handsome face. Yiping offers to add a poem, but Suluochin hurriedly refuses because he thinks the portrait is already perfect as it is. Yiping rolls up the painting and hands it over, reading Suluochin as a man who prefers simplicity over fancy decoration. After one more round of comforting words for Yiping, Suluochin leaves the cliff alone, pleased with himself and carrying the portrait like a treasure. On the way back, he cannot resist unrolling it again under the moonlight, and starts fantasizing about how Master and Su Changyu will surely praise his handsome looks. By the time his laughter fades into the night, Suluochin has even decided the painting still needs a poem, and he plans to add one himself when he gets back. In the dangerous cloud mist mountain range, Daoist Taihua and Su Changyu sprint through the jungle in panic with the demonic beast right on their heels. The iron-armored rhinoceros barrels after them like a living battering ram, smashing ancient trees as it closes the distance. Realizing blind escape will only end in death, Daoist Taihua suddenly turns and bets everything on one strike to the beast's eye. The rhinoceros outplays him, blocks the thrust with its armor, snaps his sword, and blasts him away in one brutal hit. Daoist Taihua crashes to the ground coughing blood, badly injured and convinced his regret came too late. Just as the beast locks onto its prey, Su Changyu comes back instead of fleeing and throws himself into the rescue. Su Changyu grabs his master by the collar and drags him away at terrifying speed, his body wrapped in blood chi as he outruns the monster. An hour later they finally collapse beneath a tree on a deserted cliff, both shaken and in rough shape after the escape. Su Changyu suddenly spits blood, exposing the price of that speed burst. Daoist Taihua realizes Su Changyu burned his own lifespan with a health pill to force up his cultivation and save them. Even while suffering, Su Changyu tells his master to stop talking and heal first before the injuries get worse. Ashamed of his own weakness, Daoist Taihua swallows a healing pill and starts treating himself while Su Changyu keeps watch for more beasts. Hours later his condition stabilizes, and only then does Su Changyu begin meditating to stop the health pill's damage from getting even worse. When Su Changyu wakes late at night, Daoist Taihua quietly offers him demonic beast meatloaf to help rebuild his blood. Daoist Taihua blames himself for dragging his disciple into this, but Su Changyu shuts that down because to him his master is family worth dying for. To pull his master out of the gloom, Su Changyu reminds him they still secured spirit essence enough to forge Yiping's flying sword. That thought works, and Daoist Taihua brightens at the idea that their near-death trip still brought back hundreds of spirit stones worth of materials. Then Su Changyu sours the mood again by pointing out that all this deadly effort is still worth less than one of Yiping's paintings. Faced with that bitter truth, they admit pride is useless if it gets them killed, and Su Changyu decides Yiping needs to paint again after they return. Su Changyu already has the money planned out. First build Yiping's flying sword, then use the rest to buy superior healing medicine for Taoist Taihua. Taoist Taihua finally agrees, still awkward about it, and tells Su Changyu not to push Yiping for too many paintings. Su Changyu tries to ease the embarrassment by pointing out that Yiping likes painting anyway and may even have painted on his own. That idea immediately backfires on Taoist Taihua, who realizes Yiping may already have painted one for Su Luochen too. The two of them fall into uneasy silence, both imagining how bad it would be if Su Luochen really already had a portrait too. Elsewhere that same late night, Yiping sits alone at Qingyun's rear cliff staring at the sky and still failing to figure out how to guide qi into his body. The failure weighs on Yiping tonight, because he still cannot manage even the simplest qi guidance after almost a month of trying. With the dark mood pressing in, Yiping stops forcing the problem and starts painting the night instead. His brush pours all that frustration into a bleak landscape painting so full of gloom that the emotion seems to sink into the paper. Then a cold breeze brushes past him, and in that stillness Yiping suddenly catches a new idea. The answer suddenly clicks for Yiping. If the Tao is natural, then qi guidance should follow nature instead of being forced. As soon as Yiping truly lets go, the sky above Qingyun twists into black clouds and thunder like heaven itself is reacting. Inside the sect, Su Luochen hears the sudden gale and immediately panics because he forgot to bring in Su Changyu's clothes. Back at the rear cliff, Yiping follows his insight and simply opens himself to nature, waiting for spiritual energy to come if it chooses. That approach works instantly, and spiritual energy from hundreds of kilometers rushes toward him in a vast invisible tide. When Yiping opens his immortal aperture, the 36 stars inside his inner vision blaze and form the shadow of a terrifying true dragon. The dragon's pressure almost tears his soul apart until the ancient god-fiend vision appears too and crushes that danger back down. Then the visions vanish, the storm falls quiet, and Yiping is left with the inheritance name of his awakened aperture, the Torch Dragon Immortal Aperture. The name shocks him, because if this Torch Dragon is truly the same legendary being from ancient texts, then his aperture is far beyond ordinary. Even with that mystery unresolved, Yiping puts it aside because opening the aperture means he can finally start the ancient god-fiend body tempering path. Before anything else, he returns to the painting and adds a few stars, turning its heavy darkness into a night with hope at last. On Qingyun's rear cliff, Yiping finally opened his first immortal aperture and felt spiritual energy pour into him like a river. Without realizing it, Yiping skipped normal qi refinement entirely and let only suitable heaven and earth spiritual energy enter his body on its own. That strange path made his cultivation speed absurd, with 1 hour of absorption rivaling years of Su Changyu's normal practice. Greedy for even faster progress, Yiping tried to open a second aperture and dreamed of unlocking 10 before really cultivating. Reality hit hard, and even after 3 days and 3 nights of non-stop absorption, he barely managed to open the second immortal aperture. His cultivation was swallowing so much spiritual energy that the whole Qingyun area thinned out, though the weak sect members only thought they were having an off day. After the second aperture opened, Yiping gave up on forcing 10 and turned to the ancient god-fiend body tempering technique instead. He sat down again, nervous but unwilling to retreat, because this technique demanded that heaven hammer his body and earth refine his flesh like a furnace. The moment he began, thunder roared overhead and a terrifying divine hammer force crashed straight into him. The blow split cracks across Yiping's body, but what leaked out was not blood, only foul black impurities oozing from his skin. The pain was so extreme it numbed him, and for a moment Yiping nearly lost all sensation. Then his 2 immortal apertures erupted with spiritual energy, wrapping him in golden light and rapidly healing the damage. As soon as he recovered his senses, Yiping pushed on and entered the earth furnace phase without hesitation. The earth turned into a blazing furnace around him, burning away the black impurities into smoke, while the aperture energy barely kept him from collapsing. 2 brutal hours later, the first round of body tempering was complete. The change was obvious even if Yiping missed it, because his skin, features, and whole bearing had all become sharper and more attractive. What Yiping actually noticed was the surge of strength in his body, enough to make him feel like he could punch down a bull. He even wondered for a second if he should test that strength on Su Luochen, then immediately dropped the idea before it turned into a stupid show-off move. Instead, Yiping chose the harder path again and started a second body tempering session because he was already hooked on getting stronger. Elsewhere in the Cloud Mist mountain range, Taoist Taihua and Su Changyu had already been lost in the forest for 3 miserable days. Taihua was fraying from nerves and pain, but Su Changyu still insisted this was the right route even though he no longer sounded very sure. When a group of strangers suddenly appeared ahead, both men instantly switched from exhausted to guarded. Knowing mountain cultivators could be more dangerous than beasts, Taihua forced himself to look steady while Su Changyu put on his usual cold expert face. The closer the strangers came, the more nervous the two became, because running now would only make them look weak. The strangers finally came into view as 2 domineering elders leading more than 20 disciples in 4th Thunder Swordsmanship sect uniforms. From the other side, Wan Yu and Chenhua had entered the mountain to blood train their sect disciples before the Qinzhou sword down meet. They had been cautious of hidden experts already, so the sight of an injured old man and a cold young swordsman made both elders look much harder. Then Wan Yu suddenly realized Su Changyu looked exactly like the peerless swordsman in Daoist Siji's mysterious portrait. Wan Yu and Chenhua exchanged one stunned look and both landed on the same terrifying answer. This might be Jin Nation's inspection commander. Tai Hua and Su Changyu were shocked for a very different reason, because to them the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect was an untouchable giant. That also brought relief, because people this powerful had no reason to rob two ragged nobodies like them. Su Changyu, meanwhile, only found the elders staring deeply strange and started worrying they were the wrong kind of interested in him. The whole group fell into a painful silence, with neither side daring to make the wrong move first. Desperate to break the tension without exposing what he knew, Wan Yu finally asked the most awkward question possible. What are you doing here? Because Su Changyu kept his icy silence, Wan Yu had to ask again, and the question somehow sounded even stranger the second time. Unable to ignore them, Daoist Tai Hua forced out an embarrassed answer, and claimed they were just out taking a stroll. Everyone knew that answer was nonsense, but Chenhua seized the opening when he noticed Tai Hua's injuries. Trying to be helpful and impressive at once, Chenhua offered Tai Hua a healing pill on the spot. The moment the bottle opened, Tai Hua recognized the white dew spiritual muscle elixir and realized this was a pill worth 50 spirit stones. That kindness left both Tai Hua and Su Changyu stunned, while Tai Hua convinced himself this was just the noble upbringing of a true major sect. Even so, Tai Hua still tried to refuse because the favor felt far too expensive to accept lightly. Wan Yu jumped in at once, introducing himself as Fourth Thunder's deputy sect leader and wrapping the gift in righteous talk about cultivators helping one another. That speech worked perfectly, and Tai Hua and Su Changyu both came away even more impressed by Daoist Siji and the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect. Not wanting Wan Yu to steal the whole moment, Chenhua piled on with even clumsier concern and asked if they needed directions, food, or water. Tai Hua immediately seized the chance and admitted they were trying to leave the mountain but had no idea which way to go. Wan Yu quickly gave them the route out, then urged the injured Tai Hua to stay put and recover under their protection instead of risking the road. After receiving a 50-stone pill and this much help, Tai Hua finally dropped his last suspicions and accepted with heartfelt gratitude. Overjoyed at the opening, Wan Yu hurried over to help Tai Hua heal, eager to keep earning goodwill in front of Su Changyu. Su Changyu stayed quiet and guarded at the edge of the group, still not daring to say much. Then a Fourth Thunder disciple approached Su Changyu with obvious respect, and that only made Su Changyu more nervous behind his icy face. In the Cloud Mist Mountain range, Su Changyu is already baffled that the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect is treating his injured master so warmly, and their stiff, careful attitude toward him only makes him more uneasy. One young intersect disciple gathers his courage, walks up to Su Changyu, and nervously asks a Sword Dao senior for guidance. Wan Yu instantly thinks the disciple is being far too direct, while Chenhua can only envy the chance to speak with this supposed hidden expert first. Even Daoist Tai Hua gets embarrassed, and tells them to stop fumbling around while they treat his injuries. Su Changyu thinks an inner disciple from a major sword sect asking him for pointers feels almost like mockery, so he stays cold and waits to hear the real question. Pressed by the silence, the disciple asks the exact question that once stumped Su Changyu himself: what is the Sword Dao? The whole group turns to Su Changyu, and even Daoist Tai Hua quietly gives up and pretends not to know his own disciple at this critical moment. Su Changyu finally speaks and gives the same strange answer he once learned from Yiping: a blade of grass is the Sword Dao. The disciple admits he still does not understand, and Su Changyu compares him to Yiping for one harsh second before answering properly. Then Su Changyu raises his aura and says a single blade of grass that can cut apart the sun, moon, and stars is the true Sword Dao. His words hit everyone like thunder, because this idea of Sword Dao is far beyond anything they have ever imagined. The disciple suddenly bows and says he has been enlightened, leaving Su Changyu internally stunned that anyone could understand the line he just made up. Before anyone can question it, the disciple's sword momentum erupts, and he breaks through from spring thunder into the summer thunder sword momentum on the spot. The four thunder disciples erupt in envy and amazement, because junior brother Pan had been stuck for months and just crossed a major threshold after one exchange. Seeing the result with his own eyes, Chenhua steps forward and formally thanks Su Changyu on behalf of the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect. Su Changyu does not react at all, and that icy indifference only convinces them more that he really is a peerless expert who cares only about the Sword Dao. By then the superior pill has fully healed Daoist Tai Hua, and he rises in obvious relief to thank them. Wan Yu immediately puts on a righteous face, downplays the favor, and asks for their names while trying to build a better connection. When Tai Hua introduces Su Changyu as his disciple, the Fourth Thunder side quietly decides this master-disciple act must just be another layer of the inspection commander's disguise. Since night is falling, Wan Yu quickly invites Tai Hua and Su Changyu to stay and rest, unwilling to let this rare chance to get closer slip away. Tai Hua tries to keep his happiness hidden, asks for Su Changyu's opinion, and Su Changyu absent-mindedly agrees because he is still stuck on that impossible breakthrough he just witnessed. The others smile in satisfaction, and Su Changyu can only feel that everyone around him suddenly seems far too happy about something. Back at Qingyun Dao Sec's rear cliff, Yiping finishes his second round of ancient god fiend body tempering under the moonlight. The technique changes Yiping's appearance more than his strength at first glance, turning his once youthful scholar look into the calm, almost unreal presence of a Confucian immortal. Yiping does not care about looking better though, because what matters to him is the new power packed into his tempered body. To test himself, he cuts at the back of his hand with his sword and finds that his senior brother's blade cannot even leave a mark. He understands he is building a little god-fiend body, a path with many stages and repeated tempering still ahead of him. His one awkward worry is that if every part of his body becomes too strong, some future consequences might be hard to explain. Even so, the real limit is not durability but resources, because 2 rounds of tempering have already pushed his current spiritual energy to the brink. Yiping realizes he has hit a bottleneck. Without a true chi refinement method, his 2 immortal apertures cannot feed his cultivation fast enough. He reviews the usual ways to gain spiritual energy and dismisses them one by one as too wasteful, too rare, or too risky. Then he remembers Su Luochen's creation pill refinement technique and decides to solve the problem by making pills himself. After reading through the method again, he settles down cross-legged and starts following the technique exactly. He gathers pure spiritual energy into his palm and slowly pulls in more from the air around him. With all his focus locked in place, the spinning energy compresses into a brilliant grain-sized point of light. The first step actually works, and Yiping is delighted, but he forces himself to stay steady and keep refining. Hour after hour passes as Yiping keeps refining on the rear cliff, and the tiny light slowly grows into a soybean-sized spirit pill while the long night turns toward dawn. By morning his spiritual energy finally runs dry, so the pill stops short of full completion and Yiping can only call it half a success. Even unfinished, the pill in Yiping's hand is crystal clear, fragrant, and far more extraordinary than he realizes as he looks at it with simple relief. At that exact moment, Su Luochen walks onto the rear cliff in the warm morning light, and the smile on his face grows even gentler. After seeing Su Changyu and Taoist Tai Hua off at sunrise, the cloud mist mountain range finally quieted down, and the tension they left behind started turning into curiosity. Once the guests were gone, one disciple finally asked the question everyone had been holding back. Was Senior Su really Jin Nation's inspection commander? Wan Yu answered without hesitation and shut the doubt down on the spot, insisting the answer was obviously yes. Before the disciple could stumble through his doubts, Wan Yu bluntly spelled them out. Everyone had noticed Su Changyu only looked like a 3rd or 4th level chi refinement cultivator. Wan Yu mocked them for being shallow and reminded them that a true powerhouse could hide his realm however he pleased. To prove the point, Wan Yu suddenly suppressed his own aura until he felt like a low-level chi refinement cultivator, showing them how misleading appearances could be. From there, Wan Yu built a whole explanation. If Su Changyu really was inspecting Jin Nation in secret, of course he would hide his cultivation and even let Taoist Tai Hua pose as the master. He pushed the theory even further and claimed Qingyun Dao sect itself might be part of the disguise, a fake weak sect built to hide an expert's real identity. Then Wan Yu pointed to the strongest evidence in his eyes. When that sudden thunder-like sword insight erupted earlier, everyone else was shaken, but Su Changyu stayed perfectly calm. Put on the spot, Chen Hua backed Wan Yu completely and scolded the disciples for being too inexperienced to see through it. Wan Yu even explained away the visible injury and healing pill, insisting that was all part of the Act 2 and that sharp-eyed cultivators should not be fooled by such tricks. By the end of the speech, the disciple who questioned Su Changyu was completely cowed and apologized for doubting him. The rest quickly talked themselves into believing it too, using Su Changyu's calm presence, his shocking line about cutting sun, moon, and stars, and the earlier painting as proof he had to be a hidden expert. Meanwhile, outside the mountain range, Su Changyu and Taoist Tai Hua were still baffled about why the 4th Thunder Swordsmanship sect had treated them so warmly. They never found a real answer, so they simply moved on, satisfied that they escaped with spirit essence stones and white dew spirit pills even if Su Changyu had burned 10 years of lifespan. Back at Qingyun Dao sect, the tone flipped completely as Su Luochen headed to the rear cliff in a bright mood, proud that he had memorized pill formulas and even happier that Yiping's cultivation had been stalled for nearly a month. As he walked, Su Luochen secretly grumbled about Su Changyu too, mocking his eldest senior brother for sulking dramatically over Yiping's poor aptitude. Still, Su Luochen had finally come to teach Yiping something real, planning to show him a difficult technique first so the boy would either stay humble or give up and keep training in the sect. He was so sure of himself that he even swore if Yiping could really refine a non-poisonous pill, he would swallow his one and only furnace hole in front of the entire sect. When Su Luochen reached the rear cliff, he found Yiping sitting on the ground, absorbed in studying a pill in his hand. Su Luochen greeted him warmly, and Yiping jumped up at once to return the greeting with his usual respect. When Su Luochen casually asked how the pill refining was going, Yiping awkwardly admitted he had made some progress. That vague answer made Su Luochen pause, so he pressed for details and asked what Yiping meant exactly. Yiping answered in all seriousness that the pill had already been refined, just not completely. Su Luochen immediately suspected a lie and sternly warned Yiping that even if his aptitude was mediocre, he still could not make things up. Yiping did not back down at all and simply insisted that he was telling the truth. Still unconvinced, Suluochin told Yiping to show him the pill. Yiping opened his palm, revealing a soybean-sized crystal-bright pill that looked more like a gemstone than medicine. The moment Suluochin saw it, he blurted out his disbelief, because whatever this was, it did not look like any pill he expected. But once he smelled the faint fragrance and took it into his hand, his expression changed from doubt to real concentration. After checking it, Suluochin recognized it as a spirit-gathering pill, and that answer only made the situation stranger. He knew ordinary spirit-gathering pills were tiny rice grain pills, so this larger crystal-clear one felt like something far above normal, possibly even supreme grade. Still unable to believe it came from Yiping, Suluochin looked up from the pill and demanded to know who had really given it to him. Thinking Suluochin was confused by his half-finished result, Yiping humbly explained that he had not started cultivating yet, so his weak spiritual energy and poor aptitude probably left flaws in the pill. Those humble words hit Suluochin like a slap, because by alchemy standards Yiping's result was already beyond what many proper alchemists could manage. Mild-tempered or not, Suluochin refused to let Yiping keep sounding impressive in front of him, so he calmly demanded a full demonstration of the refining process. Yiping agreed right away but warned him kindly that with so little spiritual energy, the process would take hours. Suluochin took that as an excuse, smiled even more gently, and settled in to catch Yiping in the lie. Then Yiping sat down cross-legged and started refining by hand, drawing spiritual energy into his palm until it sizzled with light, while Suluochin watched from the side. As the glow in Yiping's palm kept building, Suluochin stopped looking smug and watched with growing unease and curiosity. 8 hours crawled by, and Suluochin ended up with watery eyes and numb legs from staring at the process without looking away. At last a burst of dazzling white light flashed from Yiping's hand, forcing Suluochin's vision blank for a moment. When the glare faded, Yiping was drenched in sweat but holding another gemstone-like spirit-gathering pill, and Suluochin finally had nothing left to say. Suluochin stares at Yiping's pill in stiff disbelief, because the absurd fake method he invented somehow worked for real. Yiping mistakes Suluochin's silence for disappointment, and awkwardly promises to work harder, still thinking his incomplete pill means he failed the test. Even while feeling personally crushed, Suluochin forces out praise and admits Yiping's alchemy talent is real. That single compliment lights Yiping up, because after struggling in cultivation and sword practice, he finally thinks he may be good at something. Suluochin tells Yiping to keep practicing until he can make a complete pill, then flees before his composure breaks completely. Left alone on the sect paths, Suluochin finally lets the truth hit him. Yiping learned in less than a month what he still cannot do after 10 years. He spirals harder, thinking about the years he spent studying herbs, risking himself for alchemy, and still losing to Yiping in less than a month. In frustration, Suluochin throws the alchemy book aside, as if giving up on the craft altogether for one bitter moment. When he stumbles into the main hall and sees the alchemy furnace, that last reminder finally crushes him and he starts howling in tears. He keeps crying until late at night, worn out by the idea that Yiping not only caught up to him but did it with a far better pill. Still unable to calm down, Suluochin goes alone to the mountain cliff, his white robe whipping in the cold wind. Thinking of Su Changyu only makes him more miserable, because he cannot even force out the calm smile his eldest senior brother always wears. To vent his grief, Suluochin sits down on the cliff and spreads out the painting Yiping made for him. He writes a bleak first line about snow and north wind, turning his heartbreak into a poem on the painting. After struggling for the next lines, he gives up on refinement, and writes his loneliness more bluntly instead. He changes the ending so the poem says only Su Changyu understands his sorrow, and that small self-dramatic touch actually cheers him up. He signs the painting with the date, and puts it away, already imagining showing it to Su Changyu when he returns. Even after that, the night still presses down on him, and he sits alone on the cliff staring into the sky with fresh melancholy. Down below, Wang Zhuyu and Qin Lingru secretly watch him and wonder why both Su Changyu and Suluochin keep brooding alone on cliffs. Their talk drifts to Yiping, and Wang Zhuyu starts wondering just how terrible Yiping's aptitude must be if even mild-tempered Suluochin is cracking under it. Qin Lingru suggests someone else should teach Yiping next, but Wang Zhuyu refuses because he is busy preparing for his array formation master exam. When Qin Lingru mentions asking their eldest senior sister, Wang Zhuyu warns that she is even stranger than the others and leaves the choice to her. An hour later, Qin Lingru is still waiting when Suluochin finally comes down from the cliff. She awkwardly tries to comfort him by saying cheerful people are blessed, but Suluochin is too numb to believe luck can get any worse. Suluochin returns to his room, blows out the lamp, and drops into sleep after the longest night he has had in a while. By sunrise, Taoist Tai Hua and Su Changyu finally make it back to the foot of Qingyun Mountain after traveling through the night. Su Changyu jokes that if his master ever sneaks off for something dangerous again, he should at least hide it better next time. Once they recover, Taoist Tai Hua plans to go back down the mountain and forge a flying sword for Yiping. Tai Hua also tells Su Changyu to check on Yiping once he has rested, because he does not want Suluochin leading the boy astray. Then Tai Hua awkwardly asks for another one of Yiping's paintings, because selling it could fund an even better flying sword for the boy. As the exhausted pair step back into Qingyun Dao sect, a woman in white emerges from a grass hut nearby. This is Xiaomuxue, the eldest senior sister, finally out of seclusion after barely showing herself for months. Chen Lingru rushes over happily, but Xiaomuxue instantly slips into teasing and jokes about checking whether her junior sister has developed yet. Chen Lingru retreats in embarrassment, which only makes Xiaomuxue tease her harder about future Dao partners. Xiaomuxue casually pulls out a jade gourd and drinks, even though their master has forbidden her from touching wine. Chen Lingru warns that Daoist Taihua will punish her again, but Xiaomuxue brushes it off and mocks the Dao partners her master tried to arrange for her. Once she is satisfied, Xiaomuxue finally asks what happened in the sect while she was shut away, starting with whether Su Changyu improved at all. Chen Lingru says Su Changyu seems stuck as usual, then explains that both he and Su Luochen have been driven into gloomy cliff brooding by their new little junior brother. Chen Lingru bluntly worries that if Yiping's poor apparent talent can break both senior brothers, the sect has no future in their hands. Xiaomuxue tells Chen Lingru to keep practicing her technique and orders her to stay and train, then heads off to see Yiping herself. Before leaving, she catches Chen Lingru's real ambition and teasingly tells her to eat more and stop binding her chest so she can grow properly. Carrying her wine gourd, Xiaomuxue heads for the rear cliff to meet the junior brother everyone has been talking about. From a distance, she spots Yiping meditating seriously by the cliff and is instantly struck by how handsome he is. Her first reaction is shamelessly personal. This new little junior brother is exactly her type, and she does not want anyone else getting to him first. But as she steps closer and examines him properly, flirtation turns into shock when she senses an extraordinary constitution in Yiping. In her eyes, Yiping is no ordinary recruit at all but a peerless genius, maybe even the supreme destiny hidden inside Qingyun Dao sect. She moves closer again and gets an even bigger shock, because Yiping also seems to carry supreme sword talent and supreme alchemy talent at the same time. By the end, Xiaomuxue is outright thrilled and decides that whether as a Dao partner or not, she absolutely has to get close to this outrageous little junior brother. At Qingyun's rear cliff, Yiping opens his eyes to a strange fragrance and finds a woman leaning so close that he freezes in shock. When she teasingly asks if she looks good, Yiping panics and jumps back several dozen meters before realizing this stunning woman is his eldest senior sister, Xiaomuxue. Yiping hurriedly greets her, then awkwardly marvels that even Qingyun Dao sect's senior sister is absurdly extraordinary. Xiaomuxue tells him their family now and not to act distant, but every step she takes closer makes Yiping retreat again. Flustered, Yiping blurts out that men and women should keep some distance, because he has absolutely no improper thoughts toward her. Xiaomuxue sternly asks whether he really is harboring dirty thoughts, and Yiping tries to answer like a proper scholar before panicking all over again when she moves closer. To stop the dodging, Xiaomuxue casually immobilizes him with dermic power and makes him stay put. She sits right in front of him at an unbearable distance, and Yiping is so overwhelmed he can barely think straight. When Yiping begs her to back up a little, Xiaomuxue cuts him off and starts seriously examining his body instead. Golden light shines from Xiaomuxue's eyes as she studies Yiping from head to toe, and he realizes he completely misunderstood her intentions. After a long inspection, Xiaomuxue is quietly thrilled because Yiping really has the rare constitution she suspected, a talent hidden in an ordinary clan. Even while mulling over that secret, Xiaomuxue pulls out her jade wine gourd and finally gets to the real reason she came. It is her turn to teach him. Xiaomuxue says his eldest and second senior brothers already taught sword and alchemy, so now she will teach him the dermic Dao, and she warns that her lessons will be strict. Yiping immediately agrees and asks her to be as strict as necessary, trying hard to look resolute. She says she will teach him 3 paths: qi refinement, lust control, and a third one she abruptly cuts off, leaving Yiping completely confused. Yiping has to ask what lust control even means, because he cannot tell if she is talking about cultivation or something much stranger. Xiaomuxue explains that lust control is exactly what it sounds like, learning to resist temptation before the cultivation world uses beauty to manipulate him. She warns that big sects and even human dynasties send beautiful women to recruit cultivators, and that is only the mild version of the danger. Then her warning turns grim as she describes demon cultivators and fox spirits who seduce people, seize control of them, and drag them into ruin. Xiaomuxue makes it brutally clear that if Yiping ever falls that way and endangers others, she would kill him herself. Her words hit Yiping hard, and he starts thinking seriously about how beauty can topple not just one person but whole nations and countless lives. By the end of that reflection, Yiping sees Xiaomuxue differently and sincerely promises to learn from her no matter how clumsy he is. Xiaomuxue nearly laughs at Yiping calling his own aptitude poor, but she keeps that to herself and simply accepts his resolve. Even so, Xiaomuxue stays inwardly solemn, because she knows the world outside is darker than Yiping can currently imagine and that someone with his talent will face that darkness sooner or later. After weighing it in silence, Xiaomuxue decides to pass on the technique and touches Yiping's brow with one finger. She tells him she is about to teach the supreme qi refinement technique, a method she calls the finest in the world but also one of the hardest to cultivate. When she says mastering it would let him challenge people above his realm, Yiping is instantly willing to learn, though he still worries that his aptitude is too poor. Inside, Xiao Muxue is speechless, because she has already confirmed that Yiping possesses the mythical god fiend body. That only makes Yiping more puzzling to her, because a body like that should have been obvious enough for major sects to fight over. She drops the mystery for now, reassures Yiping that he will get somewhere under her guidance, and her smile nearly makes him lose focus again. Xiao Muxue tells him to close his eyes and listen carefully, because this technique can let him surpass all cultivators if he truly walks it to the end. Then a ray of light enters Yiping's mind, and he drops straight into enlightenment as the method is transmitted. Watching quietly, Xiao Muxue reflects that this method is special because no one simply inherits its path. Each realm has to be created and perfected by the cultivator themselves. That is why she calls it supreme, because instead of walking in another person's footsteps, the cultivator forges an entirely personal road. She cannot cultivate it herself because it only works for someone who has never practiced another technique, so all she can do now is entrust it to Yiping and hope he does not waste it. After a final silent wish for his future, Xiao Muxue leaves the rear cliff and lets Yiping face the method on his own. After Xiao Muxue leaves, spiritual energy begins pouring into Yiping, and in his state of enlightenment, he quickly grasps the Supreme Qi Refinement Technique. To his surprise, the Supreme Qi Refinement Technique feels familiar, because it is almost the same as the Qi Guidance method he accidentally practiced before. Because of that, Yiping wastes no time and starts cultivating in earnest, drawing spiritual energy into his first spirit meridian. 6 hours later, Yiping fills that first spirit meridian completely and steps into the first level of Qi refinement. That speed is already shocking, and it is even more absurd because Yiping's god-fiend body gives him spirit meridians with 10 times a normal cultivator's capacity. But the real shock comes after the breakthrough, when the full meaning of supreme Qi refinement unfolds in Yiping's mind. The method demands recast Qi refinement, reaching the 10th level, folding that power back into the meridians, and rebuilding the realm from the first level again. And it does not stop once, because the technique requires that recasting process to be repeated 36 times before Qi refinement is truly complete. If someone actually finishes that terrifying foundation, a Qi refinement cultivator could even kill a foundation establishment cultivator across the realm gap. Yiping is relieved by one crucial detail though. In this technique, he will not face bottlenecks in Qi refinement as long as he has enough spiritual energy. Just as Yiping opens his eyes after sorting through all of that, he finds a familiar figure waiting in front of him, his eldest senior brother Su Changyu. At the rear cliff, Yiping is startled when Su Changyu shows up instead of Xiao Muxue, and he cannot hide a flicker of disappointment. Su Changyu is thrown off too, because after only half a month, Yiping looks so polished and striking that even his aura seems to outshine him. When Su Changyu asks why Yiping smells faintly fragrant, Yiping honestly says Xiao Muxue just came to guide his Qi refinement. The moment Xiao Muxue's name comes up, Su Changyu nervously asks where she is and visibly relaxes after hearing she already left. Trying to recover his dignity, Su Changyu tells Yiping to learn well from Xiao Muxue because she is the most capable disciple in the sect. Then the conversation stalls, and Su Changyu grows increasingly miserable because he still has to ask his junior brother for a painting. After forcing himself to speak, Su Changyu finally asks whether Yiping made any paintings or poems while he was away. Yiping immediately brings out a night scenery painting and says he made it while struggling to understand Qi refinement, hoping the sect leader might like it. He even worries the sect leader may not enjoy a dark night scene and offers to paint more until he gets it right, showing how badly he wants to stay in Xinyan Dao sect. Su Changyu quickly claims the sect leader loves night walks anyway, because all he really cares about now is whether the painting can sell. When the night painting fully opens, Su Changyu is stunned by its bleak dark sky, scattered stars, and the poem stamped with householder Qing Lian's seal. Inside, Su Changyu nearly explodes with joy because this one looks even better than before, and best of all, it does not contain another person's portrait. He warmly praises Yiping's painting skill and says the improvement shows his state of mind is improving too. Yiping accepts the compliment with gratitude, still believing it all comes from Su Changyu's guidance. Su Changyu says he will bring the painting to the sect leader and put in a good word for Yiping, which makes Yiping hand it over immediately. Greed wins out, so Su Changyu asks about the second painting too, hoping he can take that one as well. But when Yiping says the other painting is with Su Luochen, Su Changyu suddenly gets a bad feeling and decides not to pry any further here. Before leaving, Su Changyu asks why Yiping changed so much in just half a month. Yiping casually says his improved appearance might come from practicing the ancient god-fiend body tempering technique Su Changyu taught him. That answer hits Su Changyu like lightning, because the shabby street stall manual he passed along might actually have beautifying effects. Unable to resist, Su Changyu asks to borrow the manual at once, and Yiping hands it over without hesitation. Su Changyu tells Yiping to keep training hard with Xiao Muxue, then leaves with both the painting and the body tempering manual tucked away like treasure. On the way to Su Luochen's place, Su Changyu mutters to himself and hopes Su Luochen did not make the same portrait mistake he did. He tries to comfort himself by guessing Su Luochen's painting should still be worth a few thousand taels, even if it sells for less than his own. Less than 15 minutes later, Su Changyu reaches Su Luochen's residence and knocks, but no one answers at first. When the door finally opens, Su Changyu is shocked to find Su Luochen looking drained, messy, and utterly miserable. Inside the room, Su Luochen says he finally understands why Su Changyu used to stand alone in a daze on the cliff at night. One look at Su Luochen's expression is enough for Su Changyu to realize this despair has to do with Yi Ping. Su Luochen confirms it and says Yi Ping's talent in alchemy is real, not a misunderstanding. When Su Changyu asks how talented, Su Luochen starts with the basics of alchemy and drags him step by step toward the impossible answer. Then Su Luochen reveals the absurd part. Yi Ping refined pills by gathering spiritual energy directly into a pill, without the normal method. Su Changyu is completely stunned, because that kind of alchemy sounds less like reality and more like wild fiction. Su Luochen says that still is not the worst part, and his voice turns even more broken before the next blow lands. What crushes him is that Yi Ping's pill was non-poisonous, and Su Luochen finally breaks down because decades of effort now feel worthless beside that. To prove he is not exaggerating, Su Luochen places 2 spirit-gathering pills on the table in front of Su Changyu. The room falls quiet again as Su Changyu realizes the impossible is sitting right in front of him. Su Changyu awkwardly tells Su Luochen to stop crying, but even he knows this kind of comparison would crush almost anyone. Then Su Changyu shifts tactics and says Su Luochen should think bigger, because if Yi Ping becomes famous in alchemy, the man who taught him first will share that glory. When Su Luochen weakly says he was just making things up, Su Changyu bulldozes through it and insists that once a method works, it stops being fake. He even spins it into destiny, saying maybe Su Luochen accidentally grasped the supreme Tao of alchemy and passed it on. That argument works disturbingly well, and Su Luochen's grief flips into delight as he starts laughing and claiming Yi Ping as his own student. Su Changyu quickly reins him back in and tells him to actually study alchemy now, because he has to keep teaching what he started. Only after Su Luochen calms down does he ask why Su Changyu came in the first place. Su Changyu lowers his voice and finally asks the question he came for. Did Yi Ping make a painting for Su Luochen too? Su Luochen instantly remembers, perks up, and jumps to fetch the painting for him, while Su Changyu waits with nervous anticipation. In Su Changyu's room, both senior brothers are thrilled because they think Yi Ping's 2 paintings will sell for a fortune and save the sect. Su Luochen pulls out his hidden painting with a smug smile and asks Su Changyu to judge it harshly, making Su Changyu suddenly feel that something is off. Still treating it like a treasure, Su Changyu carefully wipes the tea table clean before letting Su Luochen open the scroll. Su Luochen dramatically flicks the scroll open, proud of himself as if he is about to unveil a masterpiece. At first Su Changyu sees a decent Qingyun mountain scene, then the real disaster appears. Yi Ping painted Su Luochen's huge smiling face right in the middle. Then Su Changyu notices the poem Su Luochen scribbled onto the painting, complete with messy strokes, corrections, and his own signature. Su Changyu goes completely blank, because to him this is not just embarrassing art anymore but a priceless painting that Su Luochen has ruined. Oblivious to the danger, Su Luochen keeps boasting that his poem is excellent, and urges Su Changyu to praise his literary talent. When Su Luochen nudges him for an answer, Su Changyu finally snaps back and glares at him like he wants blood. A second later, Su Changyu explodes and starts beating Su Luochen around the room while Su Luochen screams in total disbelief. Su Changyu curses him nonstop, furious that Su Luochen dared scribble over a painting worth at least thousands of taels of gold. Even after Su Luochen curls up and begs for mercy, Su Changyu only gets angrier when he remembers the line about only senior brother understanding his pain. After venting most of his rage, Su Changyu finally stops, warns that Su Luochen has caused huge trouble, and storms out before he hits him again. Left alone, Su Luochen breaks into miserable tears and still convinces himself that Su Changyu attacked him out of jealousy over his poetry. The more he broods, the more indignant he gets, until he slaps the floor and decides to run to Master and accuse Su Changyu. Su Luochen limps out in a fury, then comes back just to grab the painting because he wants hard proof for his complaint. Clutching the ruined scroll like evidence, Su Luochen limps toward the main hall swearing he will not forgive Su Changyu this time. Elsewhere, Su Changyu is still heartsick over the loss, calculating how much money and even how many new clothes disappeared with that ruined painting. He decides he absolutely cannot let Taoist Taihua hear what happened, because Master would probably beat Su Luochen even worse. Before he can do anything, Qinlingru rushes over in a panic and blurts out that Su Luochen is covered in bruises and heading to make trouble for him. When Qinlingru confirms that Su Luochen has already gone to the sect leader to complain, Su Changyu realizes this has become a real disaster. Knowing Su Luochen might actually get himself killed, Su Changyu tells Qinlingru to prepare incense, and rushes for the main hall. A few minutes earlier in the main hall, Taoist Taihua is quietly waiting for good news about the paintings when Su Luochen's wailing shatters the calm. Taoist Taihua is startled by Su Luochen's swollen face and instinctively asks who dared beat his disciple into this state. Su Luochen kneels and sobs that Su Changyu beat him into a pulp out of jealousy for his literary talent. Taoist Taihua does not buy the story right away and asks what Su Luochen did to provoke that kind of beating. Su Luochen explains that Yi Ping painted for him, and that Su Changyu attacked only after seeing the picture. The moment he hears Yi Ping painted Su Luochen's portrait, Taoist Taihua instantly understands why Su Changyu exploded. Still clueless, Su Luochen protests that it was only a painting and demands to know why everyone is reacting like this. Taoist Taihua sighs that Su Changyu was rash but understandable, which only makes Su Luochen feel more wrong. Then Su Luochen casually admits that he even wrote a poem on the portrait, and Taoist Taihua shouts in shock. Alarmed now, Taoist Taihua demands to see the painting immediately, while Su Luochen still insists it is just a painting. The ruined portrait opens in the main hall, showing the creases, blots, crossed-out lines, and Su Luochen's signature in painful detail. The hall falls silent as Taoist Taihua freezes exactly like Su Changyu did, and for the first time Su Luochen feels a genuinely bad premonition. Outside Qingyun's main hall, Su Changyu hears Taoist Taihua furiously beating Su Luochen over the ruined painting and hesitates at the door. Even while blaming Su Luochen for asking for this disaster himself, Su Changyu still decides he cannot let his junior brother get beaten to death. Inside, Su Luochen is sprawled on the floor in terrible shape, while Taoist Taihua, eyes bloodshot, keeps whipping him with a wooden stick. Su Luochen immediately cries for help, while Su Changyu sees that the beating is savage but still short of killing him. Su Changyu steps in to stop it, warning that one more round of blows might really leave Su Luochen dead in the hall. Taoist Taihua refuses to calm down, because Su Luochen's added portrait request, poem, signature, and scratches wrecked a valuable painting into near-worthless scrap. To save the situation, Su Changyu quickly reveals that Yi Ping painted another copy and unrolls the new night scene in front of his master. The moment Taoist Taihua sees the replacement painting, his rage breaks and all his attention shifts to admiring it. Left bruised on the ground, Su Luochen is miserable and furious that everyone seems to value a painting more than him. Taoist Taihua grows excited, because with this intact painting back in hand, he thinks there is finally hope of buying a superior-grade flying sword. Su Luochen cannot make sense of that at all, so Su Changyu turns to him and coldly asks if he even understands how badly he messed up. Instead of admitting fault, Su Luochen bursts out crying and accuses both master and senior brother of beating him out of jealousy over his literary talent. That nonsense shocks Taoist Taihua back into clarity, and he bluntly tells Su Luochen he destroyed a painting worth 20,000 taels of gold. Su Luochen stops mid-complaint, because he genuinely cannot believe a painting could be worth that much money. Su Changyu finally explains the real secret. Yi Ping is the famed householder Qing Lian, and this painting should be worth at least 50,000 taels of gold. Su Luochen still refuses to believe it, convinced they are treating him like an idiot with an absurd number he cannot even picture. When Su Changyu challenges him, Su Luochen makes a reckless vow that if the painting really sells for 50,000 taels of gold, he will slap his own mouth crooked. Taoist Taihua pushes the bet further, asking if Su Luochen is truly certain, and Su Luochen doubles down without hesitation. Su Luochen even says that if the painting truly fetches that price, he will take another beating from both of them without a sound. Then Su Luochen asks for stakes on the other side, and Taoist Taihua coldly promises that if the painting fails, he will hand over the sect leader position. The promise of becoming sect leader instantly hooks Su Luochen, and he agrees on the spot. Taoist Taihua decides to settle this properly by taking him down the mountain later, and Su Changyu is more than happy to help drag him there. Still stubborn, Su Luochen rejects Su Changyu's medicine, swallows his own healing pills, and makes Taoist Taihua note the wager so no one can back out later. An hour later, the three of them head down the mountain together, all carrying their own anger into the proof of the bet. Later that night on a cliff, Xiaomuxue studies a constitution manual and frowns because Yi Ping's body does not match what the records say about a god-fiend body. The manual says a true god-fiend body should be monstrous, huge, and impossible to cultivate through normal inheritance, which only makes Yi Ping seem even stranger. She remembers how fierce Yi Ping's vitality felt when she examined him, yet he also had spirit meridians, so her suspicion no longer lines up cleanly with the books. In the end, Xiaomuxue gives up on solving it for now, takes a drink, and decides it is enough that Yi Ping's constitution seems to be a good thing. She starts to head off to see Yi Ping, but a letter suddenly appears at her feet out of nowhere. Xiaomuxue casually picks up the message, reads it, and her calm face tightens for the first time. The letter warns that the God-Fiend Palace has resurfaced, and Xiaomuxue grimly realizes her brief peace is over. After the message burns away, Xiaomuxue disappears from the cliff in an instant. At Qingyun's rear cliff, Yi Ping finishes another stretch of cultivation and breaks through to the second level of qi refinement after only 6 hours. Yi Ping quickly realizes the real reason for that speed is not talent at all, but the 2 immortal apertures in his body pulling in spiritual energy like catalysts. That discovery excites him, because if just 2 apertures can triple his cultivation speed, opening more would be terrifying. But the excitement quickly turns into a headache when Yi Ping remembers he still has to split his day between cultivation, sword practice, and alchemy. He carefully starts budgeting his time and gives the biggest share to cultivation, because without realm and spiritual power, everything else will sit on empty foundations. Then he sets aside hours for sword Dao, knowing that his sword foundation will be what keeps him alive in the cultivation world. He also refuses to neglect alchemy, since he believes it will matter once he starts encountering treasures and opportunities outside. When those 3 alone consume the whole day, Yiping is left staring at an impossible problem, because body tempering and opening more apertures still need time too. He ends up blaming his own poor aptitude, bitterly thinking that if he were truly gifted, he would not have to work this hard just to keep up. Still, he notices one comfort: several of his methods all grow through absorbed spiritual energy, so their progress can overlap while he cultivates. That means refining pills would not actually save time for now, so Yiping decides to stop overthinking and look for a better answer tomorrow in the Sutra Pavilion. His best guess is outrageous but simple. Maybe there is some method related to slowing down time. By the time the 3rd spirit meridian fully opens, Yiping has quietly reached the 3rd level of Qi refinement as dawn arrives. Without wasting the morning, Yiping heads straight to the Sutra Pavilion to search for manuals connected to time. He spends hours turning through the pavilion's books, but finds nothing useful at all. Even disappointed, Yiping reasons that anything involving time would be far too extraordinary to be left casually on Qingyun's shelves. So he decides the next best step is to ask his eldest senior brother instead. Just as Yiping is leaving, Qinlingru appears at the Sutra Pavilion entrance, and both of them are caught a little off guard. After greeting her politely, Yiping tells Qinlingru he was here looking up information in the books. Qinlingru cheerfully offers to help, so Yiping explains that he has been searching for any method that could slow down time. The request leaves Qinlingru puzzled for a beat, because slowing time sounds far beyond ordinary techniques. Then she remembers that 3rd senior brother once mentioned an array formation that could affect time, and she immediately offers to take Yiping to him. At Qingyun Dao sect, Qinlingru drags Yiping to Wang Shuiyu's door after hearing he wants answers about slowing time. Yiping keeps his hopes low, because anything involving time and space sounds far beyond an ordinary technique. Wang Shuiyu cracks the door open and peeks out, looking so plain and harmless that Yiping becomes even more convinced he must be hiding real depth. In Yiping's mind, the most ordinary senior brother is exactly the type who would hide the greatest skill without showing a trace. When Wang Shuiyu asks what they want, Qinlingru brightly reminds him that he once mentioned an array formation connected to time. Yiping politely explains that sword comprehension eats up too much time, so he came to ask if there is any way to slow the flow of time itself. The question hits Wang Shuiyu like nonsense, and inside his head he can only scream that if he knew how to do that, he would be using it on himself. Qinlingru innocently presses harder, saying she clearly remembers him talking about a formation that could slow time. That finally jogs Wang Shuiyu's memory. Years ago he read a cheap theory book Taoist Tai Hua bought from a stall, but it only described a brutally difficult time formation in theory. He knows the idea exists on paper, but touching real time is on a different level, and he absolutely does not think he has the right to teach Yiping any of it. Qinlingru keeps pushing, warning that they are all one sect, so Wang Shuiyu should not act selfish now that their junior brother is asking for help. Faced with Yiping's trusting gaze, Wang Shuiyu caves and promises to write down some of his own insights instead of teaching in person right now. Yiping immediately bows in gratitude, convinced he has just been handed a real path to the answer. The moment the door shuts, Wang Shuiyu starts pacing in a panic, muttering that he has been pushed into a disaster because he does not actually have a time formation ready. After a tense stretch of pacing, Wang Shuiyu suddenly decides the safest answer is to fake it properly and write a set of notes on the spot. He rushes to his desk, grabs a blank booklet, and starts pouring out remembered theory and half-formed understanding as fast as he can write. As he writes, Wang Shuiyu comforts himself that nobody should be able to learn this thing, and if Yiping really manages it, he would gladly admit defeat. 2 hours later, Wang Shuiyu steps back out with a thick handwritten booklet while Yiping and Qinlingru are still waiting outside. He puts on a solemn face and calls the booklet his lifelong insight, warning Yiping to burn it after reading because spreading it could bring great trouble. Yiping carefully accepts the book like a treasure and thanks him again and again, completely sold on the weight of the inheritance. Wang Shuiyu quickly tells him not to rush if he gets stuck, promises guidance later, and ends the meeting before anything else can go wrong. With Wang Shuiyu gone, Qinlingru happily tells Yiping he can ask her too in the future, because their senior brothers all know plenty, and she wants to save him extra trouble. Her kindness lands deeply, and when she jokes that she will rely on him if she ever gets bullied, Yiping answers with a completely serious promise to protect her. After parting from Qinlingru, Yiping heads straight to the rear cliff and opens the precious notes, with open excitement. The pages are obviously new, but Yiping only respects them more because that means Wang Shuiyu wrote these insights for him by hand. The title alone stuns him, because the first page boldly declares Supreme Array Formation. As Yiping reads the opening explanation, the notes redefine formations on a grand scale, from using all things as arrays to turning heaven and earth into arrays and finally turning the self into the ultimate array. Those huge ideas make Yiping's blood race, and he becomes more certain than ever that Qingyun's ordinary-looking seniors are all hiding frightening depth. The deeper he reads, the more he realizes this path barely depends on rare array artifacts at all, because the notes aim to make everything in the world serve as the formation. One line hits especially hard: everything is an array formation, and Yiping leans in as if he has just found the real key. After 2 straight hours, Yiping pieces together the first real requirement. To use all things as arrays, he must first awaken array talismans. The notes describe 3,600 array talismans, each tied to a change in heaven and earth, like the basic symbols from which countless formations can be built. That revelation only raises Wang Shuyu higher in Yiping's eyes, because compared with sword and alchemy, this inheritance feels even deeper and harder to grasp. The notes also warn that the 3,600 symbols are extremely hard to obtain, so Yiping stops reading, tucks the book away, and chooses to start comprehending them directly. Following the diagrams, he uses his long sword to carve the formation on the ground and sits down in the center to begin his epiphany. Spiritual energy surges from Yiping's spirit meridians into the pattern, and the torch dragon immortal aperture steadily feeds the array while he sinks deeper into concentration. Elsewhere in his room, Wang Shuyu studies alone by candlelight, and quietly longs for the day he can master even a single true array symbol. He remembers that even one nourishing symbol could elevate a cultivator into a famous formation master of Qinzhou, which is why the path feels so terrifyingly powerful. His fantasy drifts all the way to the top-ranked time symbol, and he blushes at his own greed because dreaming about that now feels absurdly overconfident. In the end, he can only look toward the rear cliff and mutter an apology, promising himself that if he ever passes his assessment, he will teach Yiping for real. Back at the rear cliff, night deepens around Yiping, but after 4 hours of concentration he still has not found even a single clear clue. Even so, Yiping never gets flustered and simply redraws the formation over and over, trusting steady effort more than frustration. 20 hours pass, the diagram has been drawn 36 times, and the array still refuses to appear. But the relentless practice is not wasted, because in the middle of this failed breakthrough Yiping quietly steps into the 4th level of Qi refinement. With the torch dragon immortal aperture feeding him on its own, his cultivation keeps moving even without formal meditation, making his progress feel almost effortless beneath the strain. Then, right after the breakthrough, a gentle breeze brushes across Yiping's face, and the array diagram in his mind suddenly begins to shine. While studying arrays at the rear cliff, Yiping suddenly sees the full diagram and his mind flare to life. 3,600 dull array symbols bloom into view, and Yiping locks onto the one that says time. He reaches for that symbol with his will, and the time symbol breaks open under 2 beams of light. The other symbols fade back, and a flood of knowledge pours into Yiping as the time array reveals itself to him. 4 hours later, Yiping wakes from the epiphany grinning because he has finally understood a usable time array. Testing the new formation, Yiping confirms it slows time inside the circle, giving him extra hours each day for Tao comprehension. He also realizes the array could ripen spirit herbs, but only if he can feed it enough spiritual energy. That practical discovery leads to the same old problem again. Almost every path he trains needs more spiritual energy than he has. After venting to himself, Yiping decides money can wait until he leaves the mountain and keeps his focus on training properly as a beginner. With his schedule solved for now, he sets the array again and throws himself back into comprehending the heavenly river sword momentum before Su Changyu thinks he has been slacking. Several days pass, and on April 20th Su Changyu, Daoist Taihua, and Su Luochen finally return through the Qinyan Mountains. Su Changyu keeps admiring the new flying sword, while Su Luochen is still wrecked by the thought that Yiping's painting sold for 50,000 taels of gold. The real wound is even deeper for Su Luochen because his own scribbles ruined a painting that could have been worth twice as much. A group from the White Spirit sect suddenly appears on the mountain path, forcing the Qinyan group to tense up. As the White Spirit sect closes in, Su Changyu quickly shrinks the superior grade sword and hides it, while Daoist Taihua darkens after recognizing Sect Leader Qin. Sect Leader Qin opens with fake warmth, then immediately brags that his sect is headed to buy Gui City's sword Dao meat. He twists the knife by reminding them Qingyun is not even a third-rank sect yet, so they are not qualified to attend. Then he turns on Su Changyu, sneering that good looks are useless if his sword skills still cannot carry the sect. Su Changyu stays silent, but Daoist Taihua fires back that even a mediocre Su Changyu once reached the top 500 while White Spirit failed completely. Shenhua laughs off the jab, boasts that White Spirit now has a prodigy who mastered Spring Thunder swordsmanship in 3 years, then mocks Qingyun for recruiting Yiping at all. Before anyone can answer, Chen leaves with another round of smug congratulations for the top 100 he is sure his sect will win. Once they are gone, Daoist Taihua explodes in frustration and bitterly blames White Spirit's luck for standing on a spirit meridian. Su Changyu says nothing on the climb back, but the taunt clearly keeps digging at him. At the top of the mountain, Su Changyu suddenly stops and announces that he wants to sign up for the Qinzhou sword Dao meet. Daoist Taihua can only stare and blurt out a stunned, doubtful you. Su Changyu answers with calm pride and asks the real question: does his own master actually think he is weak? Then he doubles down, saying he will train Yiping in swordsmanship and telling his master to prepare registration, firecrackers, and a victory banquet for champion and runner-up. He walks off without looking back, leaving behind a grand pose that is somehow both impressive and deeply suspicious. Su Luochen finally breaks the silence by muttering that the highest level of deception is fooling yourself, and he worries Su Changyu will get his legs broken outside. Daoist Taihua admits he is not upset by the plan itself, but by the fact that Su Changyu had the nerve to put on that act in front of his own master. Back at the sect, Daoist Taihua shifts to bigger concerns because Yiping's painting money has to rebuild Qingyun and help it rise to 3rd rank. Su Luochen, meanwhile, decides to head for the cliff early so he can at least get himself into a tragic enough mood before facing Yiping. Another 7 days slide by as Daoist Taihua handles sect business, and Su Changyu shamelessly enjoys riding Yiping's new sword before handing it over. Su Luochen spends those 7 days living on the cliff like a man nursing a very personal disaster. At the same rear cliff, spiritual energy suddenly surges from every direction toward Yiping. A heavy pull sounds from his body as Yiping completes the first recast after reaching the 10th level of Qi refinement. The result shocks even him, because one recast alone makes his spirit channels stronger, and leaves him feeling tougher than he was at several levels higher before. What excites him most is that outsiders would still read him as 1st level Qi refinement, turning this method into a perfect trap for overconfident enemies. Just as Yiping is marveling at his eldest senior sister's technique, a sword light drops from the sky toward the cliff. Su Changyu lands on the green moon dermic sword like a proper sword immortal, and for once even Yiping is genuinely impressed. After greeting him, Yiping immediately asks about the sword because he has never seen Su Changyu fly one before. Su Changyu smoothly claims no ordinary sword is worthy of him and says this superior grade flying sword is only a temporary gift for Yiping. Yiping is stunned and deeply touched because he never expected a trainee disciple like him to receive such a valuable weapon. Su Changyu keeps talking, turning the gift into a lecture that true sword cultivators rely on themselves, not on flashy weapons. Taking that lesson at face value, Yiping immediately says he should not accept the sword at all. That response nearly corners Su Changyu, who suddenly has to backpedal before his master kills him for losing Yiping's sword. So Su Changyu changes course and says Yiping should keep it because the Qinzhou sword Dao meet is coming, and the sect needs him to fight for a strong result. That single sentence stops Yiping cold, because he has not even heard of the Qinzhou sword Dao meet yet. When Su Changyu brings up the Qinzhou sword Dao meet, Yiping is caught off guard that he is being pushed towards such a big event so soon. Yiping admits the meet sounds tempting, but with less than 2 months of cultivation behind him, he worries he might lose and bring shame to the sect. Su Changyu snaps back that a sword cultivator cannot fear battle, and his stern tone forces Yiping to look at his hesitation head-on. Yiping quickly explains that he is not afraid for himself at all. He is afraid of disgracing Qingyun Dao sect when he has only just grasped the 4th Thunder swordsmanship and still lacks the Heavenly River sword momentum. Inside, Su Changyu nearly chokes on that modesty, because he knows Yiping's current sword level is already absurd for the Qinzhou competition. Remembering past meets, Su Changyu realizes the former top genius had barely touched 1 Thunder form, while Yiping has already surpassed that by a wide margin. Even so, Su Changyu keeps the truth to himself and decides Yiping has to discover that gap through real combat instead of being told outright. So Su Changyu reframes the meet as training for Yiping's Dao heart, warning that theory means little if he never tests his sword against a real enemy. Those words hit Yiping hard, and he suddenly sees that all his study in sword, alchemy, and arrays will stay shallow if he never uses it in the real world. Yiping finally accepts the challenge, saying he will join the sword Dao meet not to chase rank, but to leave himself no regrets. Relieved that the lesson worked, Su Changyu praises that spirit and immediately turns to preparing Yiping for the month left before the meet. He points out that Yiping's cultivation is still low and asks if his junior brother is willing to accept personal guidance from him. Yiping agrees at once, thrilled by the chance to be taught directly by the senior brother he sees as a supreme sword immortal. Su Changyu draws a fresh sword mark into the ground with the green moon sword and tells Yiping it contains a supreme sword technique. He lays down a brutal schedule, 10 hours a day to comprehend the new sword mark, then another 10 hours to practice until that supreme sword technique can truly be used. Su Changyu then bans Yiping from chasing the 4 Thunder or Heavenly River techniques for now and orders him back to playing fundamentals like stab, lift, slash, pull, slide, parry, and touche. Yiping accepts without complaint, staring at the new sword mark with excited concentration as if a new door just opened. As he turns to leave, Su Changyu adds one last practical reminder. The flying sword holds 4 array formations, including one that lets it change size after Yiping reaches the 1st level of Qi refinement, and feeds it dermic power. Behind his calm face, Su Changyu is already planning ahead, because he knows Yiping will likely crush the meat badly enough to notice something strange. His backup plan is shamelessly simple. If Yiping cannot crack the new sword move in time, Su Changyu will just tell him he already understood it, and has not realized it yet. Either way, Su Changyu convinces himself the teaching still works, and he no longer feels as guilty about how much the sect has hidden from Yiping. That private resolve also rests on a choice he and Daoist Taihua already made. Once Qingyun Dao sect rises to 3rd rank, they will finally tell Yiping the truth and let him decide whether to stay. Elsewhere in Qinzhou, a young swordsman named Wang Mingho trains under a waterfall so fiercely that the torrent itself seems to recoil from his blade. An old man in a black cloak appears to inspect him, and Wang Mingho immediately stops and greets him as master. The elder praises Wang Mingho for mastering the 4th Thunder sword technique in only 5 years and reminds him that such talent is real, but still not enough to become complacent. He pushes Wang Mingho to think beyond little Qinzhou, saying the true goal is to enter the 10 Nations Academy through the Gene Nation Academy. Wang Mingho finally asks the question he has been holding back. Why is his own master making him cultivate the fourth Thunder Sword instead of their sect's true sword art? Su Zhe finally reveals their hidden past. Wang Mingho's line comes from the once glorious Great Sun Sword sect, a sword power so formidable that the Xia dynasty split it into 7 branches. Their surviving branch hid itself in Qizhou, and now its revival depends on finding the lost Great Sun Demon Subduing Sword. To reach it, Wang Mingho must enter the academy system, find the demon subduing scripture, and use that clue to locate the ancestral master's tomb. That is also why Wang Mingho must hide behind the fourth Thunder Sword at the upcoming meet, because using the Great Sun Sword sect's real style would expose them to the Great Xia dynasty. Wang Mingho confidently says first place in Qizhou should be easy for him, but his master cuts that confidence down at once. Su Zhe warns that Qizhou has other hidden sects too, and one careless mistake could leave Wang Mingho losing to some unknown new sword cultivator. He tells Wang Mingho top 3 is enough and vanishes, leaving the young swordsman to return to training under the crashing falls. In a hidden mountain meeting right after that, a shadowy ally contacts Su Zhe with a dangerous new order tied to the Great Xia dynasty. The order is blunt. The sect wants Su Zhe to help capture the 10th princess of Great Xia, who has quietly arrived in Qizhou. Su Zhe is alarmed enough to ask if they mean Princess Chang, because touching a truly favored princess would be suicidal. The answer calms him only a little, because it is the unfavored 10th princess, and the sect believes she can still be used as leverage to free imprisoned elders. When Su Zhe worries about provoking Great Xia, the hidden voice insists the dynasty is drowning in bigger troubles and will not have the focus to retaliate properly. Then the bait comes out. If Su Zhe handles the kidnapping well, he will earn 2 places on Heavenly Star Immortal Island. That reward wins him over, and Su Zhe agrees, while being warned once more that the princess must be taken alive and unharmed as a bargaining chip. Before leaving, the hidden contact tosses him a secret report on the 10th princess, and casually confirms that Wang Mingho will also be entering the Sword Down meet. After the contact disappears, Su Zhe opens the report and finds the key clue he needs. The 10th princess likes the paintings and poems of householder Qing Lian. That clue carries the story straight to Baigua City, where 2 veiled women arrive as distinguished guests inside Sincere Gold Pawnshop. Shi Liangjin quickly slips into salesman mode and begins passionately pitching a Dark Knight painting as a masterpiece by householder Qing Lian. He piles on a dramatic backstory about enlightenment, life, and the night sky, shamelessly turning the painting into a legend to push up its value. The woman in green barely listens to his sales pitch, because she is genuinely absorbed in the painting itself and clearly likes it. Her companion cuts through the nonsense and asks for the real price, so Shi Liangjin boldly names 500,000 taels of gold. The attendant is instantly offended and calls the number robbery, dropping a brutal first counteroffer of only 10,000 taels. Shi Liangjin almost explodes, insisting 10,000 cannot even buy a single poem by householder Qing Lian, let alone a sealed authentic painting. Only then does the woman in green finally speak, and her sweet voice comes with a cleaner judgment. The painting is real, but Shi Liangjin is still being greedy. She offers 100,000 taels instead, and Shi Liangjin immediately pushes back for 300,000. Then the woman in green coolly shows she understands the game better than he does, warning that palace-connected buyers could simply pressure him and take the painting for even less. Her warning lands perfectly, and Shi Liangjin realizes she is right that keeping the painting could invite powerful trouble straight to his door. He makes one last desperate attempt at 200,000 taels, hoping to save a little more profit before giving in. The woman in green does not move at all, repeats 100,000 as her final price, and Shi Liangjin finally caves and agrees to the deal. Outside the Sincere Gold Pawnshop, Shi Liangjin watches the 2 women leave with a pleased grin, clearly delighted by the deal that just happened. On the way back to the inn, Xiaomuxue teases her mistress again, saying she is now so obsessed with householder Qing Lian that it would be tragic if the man turned out to be an ugly old fossil. The princess coolly answers that she admires Qing Lian's painting and writing, not his face, but she still threatens to marry Xiaomuxue off to him if she keeps mocking her. That joke lands immediately, and Xiaomuxue drops into a pitiful apology, begging her miss not to pair her with some old man. Once the teasing settles, Xiaomuxue brings up a new plan. Since they only have limited time away from home, they should go watch the upcoming Qingzhou Sword Down meet. The princess agrees at once and decides they will travel slowly on foot instead of flying, so they can enjoy the scenery and local food before returning. Back at Qingyun Dao sect, Yiping sits beneath the rear cliff and stares at a fresh sword mark Su Changyu left for him, trying all day to understand the next sword move. Even after a full day, the meaning still does not open to him, but Yiping forces himself to stay patient instead of rushing a breakthrough. When the comprehension stalls, Yiping switches to the plain sword Su Changyu gave him and returns to the basics, practicing stab, swing, chop, and slash again and again. He understands exactly why Su Changyu made him do this, because every grand sword art still grows from the same basic foundation. So Yiping trains the simplest moves with full concentration, treating each one as the root of everything he will build later. His speed becomes terrifying, pouring out dozens of strikes in one breath until the blade is almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. 10 more days pass like this, and with less than a month left before the meet, Yiping still has not cracked the new move Su Changyu hinted at. Even so, the Torch Dragon Immortal Apertures let him stretch his practice time and keep advancing, and his understanding of the Sword Dao grows sharper through the basics. Su Changyu visits several times during those 10 days, but he only watches Yiping in silence and never explains the answer outright. Late that night, the sect turns still again, and on the front cliff Su Luochen remains alone in the same gloomy spot where he has been brooding for days. When Su Changyu walks toward him in the dark, Su Luochen is moved, thinking his eldest senior brother has finally come to comfort him. Su Luochen gently tells him he understands and only wants to be left alone, but Su Changyu immediately ruins the moment by saying he did not come for him at all. That answer leaves Su Luochen speechless and even more depressed, because now it feels like Su Changyu came all the way up here just to make him look foolish. Then Su Changyu raises both arms toward the sky and starts practicing the ancient God-fiend body tempering technique right there beside him. When Su Luochen asks what he is doing, Su Changyu tells him to mind his own business and go sulk somewhere else so he does not interrupt the training. Unlike Su Luochen, Su Changyu has already moved on from his own shock over Yiping and now only feels proud that he was the one who taught the boy swordsmanship. To Su Luochen, though, that private smile is the final proof that his eldest senior brother has gone completely mad. Unable to take Su Changyu's occasional eerie laughter, Su Luochen quietly retreats farther down the cliff and sinks back into his own gloomy thoughts. From another spot on the cliff, Chen Lingru and Wang Zhuyu secretly watch the two of them and cannot make sense of what their senior brothers have turned into. Chen Lingru whispers that ever since Yiping arrived, the elders above her have all become weird, and she wants Wang Zhuyu to find out what happened. Wang Zhuyu calmly says it is probably because of Yiping, then warns Chen Lingru not to learn from them if she still wants a real future in the sect. He goes even further and tells her that if the others keep spiraling like this, she might end up as the future sect leader herself. That instantly lights Chen Lingru up, and she promises she will train hard and avoid becoming like those two disasters on the cliff. By early morning, Su Changyu's arms are numb from holding that pose all night, but he still believes the suffering will make him more handsome. He proudly calls out to Su Luochen to ask if he looks more handsome now, only making himself seem even stranger. Su Luochen walks off muttering that Su Changyu has truly become a lunatic, and in his own head that only strengthens his claim to inherit the sect. Just then, Taoist Taihua arrives at the foot of the cliff and calls out to Su Changyu with suspiciously good news. With a proud grin, Taoist Taihua reveals 2 registration tokens and announces that he signed up both Su Changyu and Yiping for the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet. Su Changyu is completely blindsided, because the boast he made before was never supposed to become an actual registration. When Chapter 66 picks up, Su Changyu still cannot believe it and blurts out that he never said he wanted to join the meet. Taoist Taihua shuts down the denial on the spot, because the registration is already paid for, so Su Changyu is going whether he likes it or not. Su Changyu tries one last excuse, admitting he only bragged casually and insisting that competing for real would just humiliate him in front of Yiping. That is when Taoist Taihua finally explains the real plan. He is not sending Su Changyu there to prove his sword skill, but to stay close to Yiping. He believes Yiping's sword Dao is strong enough to place in the top 10, and if that happens, many people will try to pull the boy away from Qingyun Dao sect. So Su Changyu's job is simple: keep watch over Yiping and stop anyone else from luring him away. The moment he realizes he is not expected to show off his own swordsmanship, Su Changyu instantly agrees to go. Taoist Taihua tells him to prepare quickly, because in only 3 days he and Yiping will leave together for the sword Dao meet. Su Changyu is startled by how soon that is and asks if Master is really not coming along himself. Taoist Taihua says the sect cannot afford to be late on a chance this important, so leaving early is the safest choice. Once the travel is settled, Su Changyu immediately asks the question he actually cares about most: how much allowance they are getting. Taoist Taihua says of course there is money, then promises a huge sum of 500 taels of gold for the trip. Su Changyu is thunderstruck, because that amount is absurdly large for a sect as poor as Qingyun Dao sect. But Taoist Taihua immediately warns him not to dream too big, because that money is for Yiping's comfort, not for Su Changyu to waste. Even so, Su Changyu is satisfied, because he knows Master will not really let him starve while they travel. Before sending him off, Taoist Taihua stops him with one more problem. Yiping has been in the sect for almost 2 months, and he still does not know how to teach the boy properly. Su Changyu first assumes Master means the divination art, and casually says there is no point forcing that on Yiping right now. Taoist Taihua immediately corrects him and says he is not talking about divination at all, but about teaching Yiping how to deal with people. That topic puts Su Changyu right in his comfort zone, and he says he has already figured Yiping out after spending time with him. According to Su Changyu, the trick is never to take the initiative with Yiping, but to ask him questions and let him answer first. Then comes his real rule: whatever Yiping says, do the opposite and never agree too easily. Taoist Taihua repeats the method back to confirm it, taking this bizarre advice with complete sincerity. Satisfied, Taoist Taihua sends Su Changyu off to prepare, and an hour later he heads alone to the rear cliff to try the method on Yiping himself. At the rear cliff, Yiping is still deep in cultivation, but now that he has reached the second level of chi refinement, he senses someone approaching before he even opens his eyes. Yiping puts away the time array, opens his eyes, and looks up in surprise when he realizes the visitor is Taoist Taihua. At the foot of Qingyun Mountain, Taoist Taihua steadied his nerves before facing Yiping, because teaching a true genius felt far more dangerous than dealing with Su Changyu. Yiping rose respectfully and greeted him, still a little anxious because this was only their second real meeting and his place in the sect still felt uncertain. Taihua told Yiping not to be so formal, and explained that he came to prepare him for the Qinzhou Sword Dao meet and for the much harsher world beyond the mountain. When Taihua said Yiping would leave in 3 days and might be gone for months, Yiping felt unexpectedly moved by how much the sect leader worried about him. Taihua tested him first by asking what a righteous cultivator should do when he sees evil being done. Yiping answered like an ideal disciple, saying he should save the victim, lecture the villain, and uphold justice. Taihua immediately shut that down and told him the first rule was survival. If he lacks the strength to help, rushing in only gets him killed. That harsh logic landed hard, and Yiping quietly realized that dead heroes cannot protect anyone. When Yiping asked what to do if he could win, Taihua's answer turned even colder: strike hard, leave fear behind, and never rely on kindness to make enemies repent. Yiping accepted it without resistance, because this hidden sect's brutal honesty felt more caring than empty righteous slogans. Taihua tested him again, asking what to do in an unavoidable fight, and Yiping instinctively said he would show mercy. Taihua rejected that too and warned him never to underestimate anyone, because real enemies do not hand out second chances. Yiping connected that warning to himself at once, realizing that hidden strength exists on both sides and that carelessness can kill even the stronger fighter. Taihua gave his final rule plainly: either stay out of trouble, or once you step in, commit completely and leave nothing half done. Yiping bowed deeply and promised to remember every word, treating the warning like genuine guidance from a master. Before leaving, Taihua added one last lesson: think carefully, do not regret your choices, and reflect afterward on what you did right and wrong. Taihua walked away with his back to Yiping, and in Yiping's eyes that thin figure suddenly looked noble and immense. After a long pause, Yiping snapped back to himself and returned to sword comprehension, determined to master Su Changyu's new move before going down the mountain in 3 days. The next day, with less than 2 days left before departure, Yiping kept practicing under the cliff while Su Changyu was already off the mountain on unknown business. His basic sword techniques grew faster and sharper, but even by late night he still could not grasp the new sword move he wanted so badly. Sitting alone in the dark, Yiping worried that the coming trip might be dangerous and blamed his own poor aptitude for still falling short after nearly a month. Back in the sect that night, Su Changyu came back hugging a bulging bag in obvious delight, while Taoist Taihua looked sick over the fortune they had just spent on robes. Taihua complained that Su Changyu had dragged him to buy outrageously expensive robes for everyone, but he still handed over Yiping's set and told Su Changyu to take this trip seriously. Su Changyu, secretly thrilled by the white crane cloud-embroidered robe he had wanted for a long time, promised obediently that he would watch over Yiping. Taihua's expectations were modest but sincere. If Su Changyu could help Yiping reach even the top 10, he would already be satisfied. On the way to the rear cliff, Su Changyu ran into Su Luochen, who still looked gloomy and not fully recovered from his recent humiliation and beating. Because he was in such a good mood, Su Changyu actually encouraged Su Luochen to work hard on alchemy, which only made Su Luochen more convinced his eldest senior brother had gone mad. When Su Changyu reached the rear cliff, he found Yiping still sitting there in tireless cultivation, and the sight was impressive enough to make even him feel a little ashamed. He called out, and Yiping woke from his focus just enough to greet him. Su Changyu handed over the new clothes from the sect leader, but Yiping accepted them almost absent-mindedly because his mind was still trapped on sword comprehension. Seeing Yiping's confusion, Su Changyu said nothing at first and instead walked to the cliff edge, standing with his back turned like an aloof sword immortal. Just looking at that back stirred something in Yiping, as if the answer was right in front of him but still blocked by one last thin barrier. When Yiping finally called out in desperation, Su Changyu cut him off with one quiet command and forced his restless mind to settle. Su Changyu told him to let go of obsession, feel the beauty between heaven and earth, and remember that a disturbed heart cannot comprehend the Tao. Those words worked, and Yiping stopped chasing the sword mark in his head and simply drew his sword to practice basic moves with an empty mind. Stab, swing, chop, slash, touch, each basic form flowed exactly as Yiping wished, simple on the surface but suddenly natural in a deeper way. Su Changyu stayed turned away and left him alone with the lesson, certain that Yiping needed space more than explanation. As Yiping's sword rhythm accelerated, leaves all around the rear cliff rose into the air and began to move with his sword momentum instead of the wind. Then, right at the peak of speed, Yiping suddenly slowed down, holding tight to the line that a calm heart is the key to the Tao. Then a gentle breeze passed the cliff. Su Changyu felt the sudden cool air above, and below him Yiping went completely still as the breakthrough finally clicked into place. Inside Yiping's mind, the most basic sword forms began expanding into countless linked variations, all rooted in one ancient diagram. That insight revealed itself as the endless sword diagram, a foundation that could keep deriving more sword moves and even speed up his comprehension of future sword arts. And at the very heart of that endless diagram, Yiping discovered the true sword technique hidden inside it, the sword breaking technique. After grasping the endless sword diagram, Yiping finally understands the core hidden inside it, the sword breaking technique, a sword law meant to counter every move within that endless system. Instead of celebrating, Yiping looks up at Su Changyu with quiet admiration, convinced his senior brother had been guiding him toward this revelation all along. Yiping realizes how terrifying this insight is. With 3,000 merged sword moves in his mind, he can suppress any matching sword style unless the enemy's realm is overwhelmingly higher. After waiting on the cliff for 2 hours, Su Changyu finally drops the line he prepared in advance and calmly tells Yiping that he has gained enlightenment. Yiping is stunned that Su Changyu sensed it so quickly, and his respect for his senior brother rises even more. He bows deeply and thanks Su Changyu in full sincerity, believing this breakthrough came from his senior brother's patient teaching. That answer nearly breaks Su Changyu's composure, because in his head he is screaming that Yiping has somehow comprehended yet another sword secret he never actually taught. To avoid exposing himself, Su Changyu refuses to look directly at Yiping and instead asks where his junior brother went wrong after spending nearly a month on the second sword mark. Yiping immediately admits he does not know and sincerely asks for guidance. Su Changyu tells him the problem is impatience, saying Yiping has chased cultivation too hard from the day he entered the sect and forgotten that sometimes letting go is part of progress. Those words hit Yiping hard, because he suddenly sees how numb he has become, training every day and night like a tool without ever enjoying the path itself. Yiping accepts the criticism and promises to reflect seriously. Su Changyu presses further and asks a simple but unsettling question: what is Yiping actually cultivating for? Yiping thinks for a long time and finally answers with unusual honesty that he seeks a longer life and a carefree, unrestrained existence, not some grand ideal. Su Changyu repeats those words to himself, then quietly ends the lesson and tells Yiping they will set off at dawn the day after tomorrow, so he should rest for 2 days. Left alone at the rear cliff, Yiping stays quiet for a long while, still turning over his senior brother's words. Half an hour later, Yiping steadies himself, smiles, and calls his sword into his hand. With a single command, he unleashes the heavenly river sword momentum, and the leaves across the rear cliff rise like a surging current rushing toward the sea. After proving his new sword momentum to himself, Yiping finally returns to rest, and 2 quiet days pass in a blink. At dawn outside Qingyun Dao sect, Su Changyu appears in a costly new white crane robe and looks every bit like a peerless sword immortal before the journey begins. Yiping arrives in a light green robe, excited for his first trip down the mountain and the wider world of cultivation waiting below. Before they leave, Su Changyu hands Yiping the sect token and the Qingzhou sword Dao Mi token and warns him not to lose them. With that, the 2 disciples start walking down the mountain together. Daoist Taihua quietly appears on a cliff to watch them go, worried like any master sending his disciples out into the world. In the end, Taihua can only call out one simple farewell, telling them to have a safe trip as they pause and look back. Neither disciple says much, but both bow deeply before turning away again. Elsewhere in Qizhou, another young swordsman named Chang Yu kneels before a blind old master on a cliff, revealing that other contenders are also heading toward the coming tournament. The blind master says this disciple has already learned almost all of his sword arts, and calls the Qingzhou sword Dao meet the first battle on a path toward true invincibility. But he withholds the final move, warning that the invincible sword path allows no failure, and says the disciple must return only when he either comprehends it himself, or finally tastes defeat. The old man points his disciple toward the whole world, not just Qingzhou, and hints that his greatest enemy will appear in the great Xia dynasty. The young swordsman swears he will become the best in the world, then kneels and kowtows 3 times before leaving the mountain. In the great sun demon subduing sword sect, Qinli gives Wang Mingho a much more cautious order and says that reaching the top 3 in Qingzhou will already be enough. Wang Mingho cannot understand that caution and asks what kind of hidden expert in tiny Qingzhou could make his master this wary. Qinli finally explains that 300 years ago, when the old great Xia emperor was dying, many sects backed the wrong side in the struggle for the throne and were destroyed or driven into hiding. He says the great sun demon subduing sword sect was one of the losers and retreated to Qingzhou after misjudging an obscure prince who became king. Then he reveals the deeper terror. On the day the great Xia king's chosen 10th son was born under strange heavenly signs, a supreme expert infiltrated the palace and killed the infant. That murder dragged countless people into the fallout, and a peerless sword expert vanished while being hunted, but Chunli believes that man survived and still carries unfinished vengeance. Chunli warns that such a man would surely raise a disciple to seek revenge through the Qingzhou sword Dao meet and beyond, which is why hidden monsters may be entering this event. Even so, Chunli says his own sect carries no such hatred and only wants to restore its former glory, so Wang Mingho should focus on a safe, strong finish. Wang Mingho answers with a competitor's pride, vowing to take first place in the Qingzhou sword Dao meet and prove his sword heart before heading down the mountain. All across Qingzhou, similar farewells and ambitions are unfolding, and the coming sword Dao meet is quietly drawing every kind of player toward the same battlefield. But the most dangerous movement is hidden in a mansion hall, where a scholar with a folding fan stands before hundreds of black-clothed men. The scholar announces a ruthless order from his sect master: use the Qingzhou sword Dao meet as cover to hunt down and kill the geniuses of Jin Nation. He frames the massacre as part of his sect's revival and the coming collapse of Great Xia, turning the room's tension into open fanaticism. The assassins answer in unison, and moments later they vanish, leaving Qingzhou outwardly calm while deadly schemes move underneath. 3 days after Yiping and Su Changyu left, Daoist Taihua stood in Qingyun Dao sect at night with a bad feeling, sure he had forgotten something important but unable to remember what. Out in the mountains under moonlight, Su Changyu checked the map again and realized they should have reached Chanlin City already, yet they were still stuck in the wilderness. Su Changyu suddenly felt a strange chill in the forest and quietly warned Yiping to stay careful, even though Yiping sensed nothing unusual. Because his instincts had saved him before, Su Changyu kept leading with extra caution, while the two of them pressed deeper through the silent woods. After a long time, Yiping stopped and pointed out the real problem. They had already passed this same spot before. Su Changyu hid his surprise and acted like he was testing him, asking Yiping what could cause that kind of looping feeling. Yiping answered at once that it was an array formation, explaining that Wang Zhuyu had taught him some basics, and he had also studied array books in the sect. Still pretending to be the senior giving guidance, Su Changyu asked how to break it. Yiping said the direct way was to destroy the array core, but that was risky because whoever set the trap could be guarding the array artifact nearby. Then Yiping offered the safer plan. Since this was only a weak trapping array, they should sit still and wait for the hidden caster to lose patience and remove it first. Su Changyu liked that plan immediately, especially since he was exhausted, and agreed to wait and see what the hidden enemy wanted. Yiping sat down cross-legged too, choosing caution over trouble because their real goal was the Qingzhou sword Dao meet, not picking fights on the road. Almost 2 hours later, the silence shattered when a thunderous voice roared through the night for a demon to show itself. A red-clad female ghost suddenly flew into view, and a white-robed monk chased after her through the darkness. The female ghost begged for mercy, but Kong Hai called her an evil cultivator who preyed on mortals for yang energy, and refused to spare her. Kong Hai hurled glowing turquoise Buddhist beads that bound the female ghost and burned her with white smoke. As the female ghost writhed and screamed, she cursed Kong Hai and warned that a ghost king would return, but he stepped forward and finished the expiation anyway. With a burst of light, the ghost turned to ashes, and the forest fell quiet again. Yiping watched the whole fight with fresh excitement, seeing his first real clash between cultivators. But Yiping also noticed one extra detail. A faint stream of light slipped from the dead ghost into Kong Hai's body. Su Changyu recognized him as a Buddhist disciple, and Kong Hai turned politely toward the two Taoists with folded hands. When Yiping asked what was happening, Kong Hai explained that he was on his way to deal with matters at the ghost grave by the river and had only destroyed that female ghost along the way. The moment Kong Hai mentioned Linha Ghost Grave, Su Changyu's composure almost cracked because he finally understood where they had wandered into. Linha Ghost Grave was one of Qingzhou's forbidden places, a dead city full of murderous resentment where anyone below Foundation establishment could easily die just by entering. Yiping remembered the sect records too. A ghost cultivator had slaughtered millions there 150 years ago, and even the imperial court, 10 immortal sects, and Buddhist experts had paid a huge price to suppress the ghost king. That history made the truth worse. Millions of vengeful ghosts still gathered here, and for low-level cultivators like them, even the ambient ferocious aura was a deadly threat. Inside, Su Changyu was in full panic, cursing their luck and feeling like they had already stepped into a grave. Seeing they had entered by mistake, Kong Hai kindly offered to guide them out. Su Changyu nearly grabbed the chance on the spot, but in front of Yiping he still acted like a seasoned senior, claiming he had only come here to temper his junior brother, and was leaving because the sword meet was near. Kong Hai sensed their cultivation was low and found Su Changyu's act a little odd, but he still chose not to argue and simply led them onward out of goodwill. As they walked, Kong Hai warned them that a ghost bewitchment array filled this place, so no matter what happened they had to keep their hearts steady and not be deceived. The road settled into cautious conversation, and Yiping learned their rescuer was Kong Hai, a second-generation disciple from the spirit temple of Jin Nation. Yiping also asked about the light from the exorcism, and Kong Hai explained that it was merit, a rare pure power that could be used like cultivation resources and had many uses across Buddhist and Taoist practice. He added that the female ghost had only given a tiny amount of merit, roughly equal to one low-grade spirit stone, but the real advantage was how clean and untainted that power was. That made Yiping even more interested, so he asked how expiation was actually done. Kong Hai said there were two methods: slaying ghosts with Buddhist or Dharmic power for a small reward, or truly converting them with sutras for far greater merit, though only high venerables could usually do that. Kong Hai even offered Yiping some sutras to read, seeing how interested he was. Su Changyu cut in at once and reminded him that Yiping was a Taoist disciple, so Buddhist expiation methods would not suit him well even if they were strong. Kong Hai accepted that immediately and apologized, and Su Changyu let it pass as a simple sect difference rather than a personal offense. Now even more interested, Yiping turned to Su Changyu and asked if the Dao sect had expiation methods too. Su Changyu answered yes without hesitation, because with an outsider present he could not afford to look like he did not know. Yiping immediately pressed further and asked Su Changyu to teach him, leaving his senior brother silently regretting that his junior brother wanted to learn absolutely everything. Before Su Changyu could answer, thick white mist suddenly surged in from all sides. Kong Hai shouted that the array had changed and warned them not to move or let the ghosts shake their minds as the mist swallowed them whole. A huge bank of fog swallows Yiping, Su Changyu, and Kong Hai, but Yiping stays steady because he trusts his senior brother to step in only if things become truly deadly. Inside the mist, Yiping sits down with his sword ready and forces himself to stay alert instead of panicking when beast-like roars and human-like sobs start gnawing at his nerves. He remembers what the sex text taught him: ghosts attack weak minds first, so fear, lust, and drained vitality are exactly what they want. That reminder hardens Yiping's will, and he realizes the ghosts are hiding behind tricks because they do not dare attack him head-on. Elsewhere in the mist, a pack of ghost cultivators huddles around their middle-aged leader and agrees that Kong Hai is too dangerous to provoke because of his Buddhist artifact. The leader greedily claims the other two pray for himself, telling the ghosts to drain their yang energy and leave him a body before the coming ghost tribulation. He picks two subordinates for the trap, sending the blue-dressed woman to tempt Su Changyu and ordering another ghost to copy Su Changyu's appearance and lure Yiping away from Kong Hai. The trap goes into motion as the blue-dressed ghost slips away, while the male ghost reshapes himself into Su Changyu's outward appearance, almost perfectly. Meanwhile, the real Su Changyu sits rigid in the fog, secretly terrified that he might die before even reaching the sword Dao meat in his expensive new robe. His fear twists into stubborn resentment, and he even imagines coming back as a vicious ghost just to slaughter whatever killed him. Then a frightened woman's voice calls for help, snapping Su Changyu out of his wild imagination. A woman in a blue chiffon dress finally emerges from the mist looking frightened and vulnerable, and Su Changyu watches her with immediate caution. The woman throws herself at Su Changyu and begs for help, but he immediately shoves her away and orders her to keep her distance. Thrown off by his reaction, the woman hurriedly wipes her tears and switches to a pitiful story about being separated from her family. When pity does not work, she lowers her voice and openly hints that she will repay him with her body if he takes her away. Su Changyu coldly shoves her back a second time, and now Lana is genuinely baffled that such a direct move still fails. She keeps pressing him with bolder teasing, but Su Changyu only gets angrier and rejects her again before she finally demands to know what exactly he dislikes. Su Changyu finally answers with full arrogance that the disciples of Qingyun Dao sect abstain from lust. In Su Changyu's own head, though, his real annoyance is much pettier. He thinks this strange woman keeps rubbing against clothes she could never afford to replace. Lana swallows her temper and suggests they leave the area together, but Su Changyu flatly refuses because staying near Kong Hai feels far safer than wandering off with her. He still does not realize she is a ghost at all and simply assumes another woman has fallen for his looks, which makes his refusal even more absurdly confident. Elsewhere in the mist, Yiping remains calm and even starts wondering whether the sex expiation method might be stronger than the Buddhist one Kong Hai uses. As the fog thins around him, Yiping spots what looks like Su Changyu sitting ahead and instinctively brightens. The fake senior brother tells Yiping the place is still unsafe and urges him to leave at once, and Yiping still trusts what he sees. To hurry him along, Yanwen even claims the sealed Ghost King may be reviving and says the old story of its death was only a lie spread by Jin Nation. Yiping feels that something about this senior brother is slightly wrong, but the unease is vague enough that he still starts following him. Then Yiping casually asks which expiation sutra Su Changyu mentioned earlier, and the question hits Yanwen like a trap. The question leaves the imposter badly rattled, while Yiping keeps watching him with innocent curiosity. He tries to stall by saying he will teach it after they return to the sect, but Yiping presses right away and asks to see it now. Desperate, Yanwen remembers part of the real sutra used to seal the Ghost King and decides to bluff the rest with his own made-up sermon about suffering and obsession. So Yanwen starts reciting a half-real, half-invented expiation text while quietly leading Yiping farther away through the fog. But as he speaks about resentment, pain, and letting go, Yanwen accidentally pours his own buried grief into the words and nearly moves himself to tears. Yiping listens more and more seriously, because the sutra's talk of death and lingering resentment suddenly makes him think about how much suffering a ghost must have endured. That thought stops Yiping in his tracks, and instead of escaping danger, he sits down right there because he feels an insight dawning. When Yanwen asks what he is doing, Yiping calmly says he seems to have gained an epiphany and wants to think it through on the spot. Yanwen is left reeling that Yiping might actually be comprehending the Tao from a sutra he partly made up, and just as he is about to force the issue, a clear breeze suddenly sweeps over them. As the mist thins for a moment, Yanwen grows uneasy because Yiping suddenly says he has already gained enlightenment from the sutra. Yanwen cannot believe it and starts suspecting Yiping has seen through his disguise and is just stalling him on purpose. While weighing whether to strike first and drain Yiping's yang energy, Yanwen still assumes a mere second-level chi refinement cultivator should never have understood this sutra so fast. Before Yanwen can move, Yiping begins chanting the Supreme Expiation Sutra in a steady, clear voice. Golden light pours around Yiping, lotus flowers bloom from the ground, and the haunted clearing suddenly feels sacred instead of deadly. The sight terrifies Yangwon because he instantly recognizes the golden light of expiation, a power he believes only major experts should wield. But when the golden light reaches him, Yangwon feels no pain at all, only a shocking warmth and relief, as if a huge burden is melting away. Black smoke of obsession and sin burns out of Yangwon's body, and his true ghost cultivator form is restored under Yiping's expiation. Once his resentment is gone, Yangwon turns blank with sudden clarity because he realizes he has truly been freed to reincarnate. Even as he wonders why this expiation feels merciful instead of agonizing like the Ghost King's, the light of reincarnation descends before he can understand it. Yangwon vanishes into reincarnation, and a thread of yellow merit flies from where he stood straight into Yiping's body. After an incense stick's worth of enlightenment, Yiping opens his eyes and happily calls for his eldest senior brother, expecting the person beside him to still be there. When nobody answers, Yiping simply decides Su Changyu must have gone off to deal with the Ghost King himself, and feels even more impressed by him. Yiping reviews the sutra he just learned and realizes the first method uses chanting and golden light of expiation to wash away resentment and send souls to reincarnation. He also learns the effect depends on the target, with lighter sinners redeemed more smoothly while those stained with blood would suffer and resist the expiation. The second method turns that same golden light into a dharma artifact meant to destroy sinful ghost cultivators who harm the living. Then the sutra reveals 4 realms, from golden light to golden wheel, Bodhi, and finally the distant grand supreme realm. What really surprises Yiping is the new merit power left inside him, even though he still does not fully understand where it came from. He tests that merit on the spot, and the energy surges through him like a torrent that forces a breakthrough almost instantly. In just 10 breaths, Yiping jumps from the second to the third level of chi refinement, and is left staring in disbelief. The payoff is so absurd that Yiping immediately fixates on one idea. He needs a lot more merit, as much as he can get. So while imagining Su Changyu handling the Ghost King, Yiping heads deeper into the white mist to expiate every smaller ghost he can find. Elsewhere in the ghost grave, Kong Hai sits under a tree calmly turning his Buddhist beads and counting how much merit he still needs for the golden Buddha body. He even congratulates himself for being so outstanding that he might set a Buddhist record by nurturing the golden light of expiation before 30. Then a real beam of golden light of expiation flashes through the mist nearby, and Kong Hai jolts in pure shock. Kong Hai instantly understands this cannot be ordinary, because even gathering enough merit to begin that path should take years of true expiation. He badly wants to meet that hidden expert, but he forces himself to stay put because he still thinks Yiping and Su Changyu need his protection from ghost cultivators. At the same time, a pack of roughly 30 ghosts gathers in the mist and starts worrying because Yangwon and Lanner have not returned. One ghost wonders if the 2 supposed G refinement cultivators were actually hiding stronger cultivation to lure them in. Their leader shuts that down with confidence, boasting that he has already reached the ghost warrior realm and would not fear a foundation establishment opponent here. The ghosts calm down and reassure themselves that, no matter what trick is going on, those cultivators cannot possibly wield golden light of expiation. A scout suddenly whispers that the target is coming, and the whole group perks up at once. Their leader orders everyone to wait until Yiping gets closer and to frighten him first so his yang energy will be easier to absorb. The ghosts laugh about scaring humans to death, already treating Yiping like a toy before the feast. Meanwhile, Yiping walks through the fog with his flying sword, getting more and more annoyed because he still has not found a single ghost to farm merit from. That frustration gives him a bizarre idea. If the sutra can expiate resentment, maybe he can use it on his own bad mood too. So Yiping tries it, drawing a thread of golden light of expiation into himself through the top of his head. The effect is immediate and strangely wonderful, because all his stress and gloom vanish and he drops into a crystal clear enlightened mood. There is no merit reward this time, but Yiping still decides the ability to clear his own mind is useful enough to keep. Right then, a freezing wind sweeps in and eerie voices begin moaning through the fog about dying terrible deaths. Dozens of grotesque vengeful spirits crawl out at once, with headless, limbless, and blood-smeared bodies arranged to terrify him. The ghosts secretly celebrate when Yiping freezes, convinced their scare tactic has worked perfectly. But when Yiping finally reacts, his eyes light up with surprise and delight instead of fear, leaving the ghosts completely thrown off. One bloodied ghost crawls to Yiping's bare feet and keeps up the act, begging for help in a pitiful voice while still radiating resentment. Instead of recoiling, Yiping squats down kindly and asks the ghost if it really is suffering that much. The ghost plays along and pleads for rescue, but Yiping softly promises that the pain will end very soon. Then golden light blooms in Yiping's palm, and the entire pack of ghosts goes rigid as they recognize the golden light of expiation. At Linha Ghost Grave, the resentful spirits freeze in terror when Yiping brings out the golden light of expiation, a power feared even by ghost kings. One sinful ghost is caught by the golden light, writhes as black smoke burns out of it, and then vanishes into reincarnation. The remaining ghosts panic and scatter, finally realizing Yiping was never weak at all. Yiping rushes after them and tries to reassure them in complete sincerity, insisting he only wants to help them reincarnate. Since they refuse to listen, Yiping starts firing beam after beam of golden light of expiation and happily feels merit pouring into him. The terrified ghosts drop to their knees and betray their own boss, begging Yiping to expiate the ghost warrior hiding in the northwest instead. The mention of a ghost warrior excites Yiping, but before chasing the stronger target, he wipes out the kneeling spirits too and takes all the merit he can get. Hidden in the northwest, Zhang Yi watches his subordinates get sold out and expiated, and he is left stunned that such a young cultivator can use this Buddhist killing art. Once he realizes he has been exposed, Zhang Yi gives up on revenge and turns to flee for his life. Yiping spots that Zhang Yi carries more resentment than all the other ghosts combined and decides he has to save this especially miserable soul. Because his sword flight is poor, Yiping simply powers his legs with dermic force and chases Zhang Yi on foot like a gust of wind. During the chase, Yiping keeps calling himself a good person and begging Zhang Yi to stop so he can cleanse his resentment. Zhang Yi is so desperate that he promises to reform and even offers to lead Yiping to the Ghost King if that will make him stop. Yiping takes the Ghost King bait only in words, telling Zhang Yi to lead the way while privately having no intention of fighting something that strong, and he keeps assuring him they will not hurt him. When Zhang Yi still refuses to trust him, Yiping finally stops being gentle and prepares a full-force Buddhist incantation. Wrapped in blazing gold, Yiping charges and catches Zhang Yi with a direct expiation strike. For 15 painful minutes, Zhang Yi burns through the sins of his past while Yiping watches without pity, knowing this suffering is the price of expiation. When the black smoke finally clears, a strong surge of merit flows from Zhang Yi into Yiping. Now purified, Zhang Yi looks pale and harmless, while Yiping cheerfully asks if the whole thing really was not so bad. When Zhang Yi still looks conflicted, Yiping casually offers to expiate him again, which terrifies him all over again. To stop that from happening, Zhang Yi hurriedly points Yiping toward more lonely ghosts deeper ahead. He also warns that the Ghost King of Linha Ghost Grave is about to revive, so Yiping should not push too far in. Yiping thanks him, and the once evil ghost answers with real gratitude, saying he wants to repay this kindness in his next life. Yiping still suspects a trace of menace remains in him, and that one worried look is enough to make Zhang Yi flee straight into reincarnation. After Zhang Yi vanishes into reincarnation, Yiping feels a brief reluctance to see a good ghost go, then sits down in the graveyard to sort through his new merit. He finds he has gathered 31 units of merit, and decides not to raise his realm first, but to open more Torch Dragon Immortal apertures before the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet. 15 minutes later, Yiping spends only 5 units of merit to force open his third Torch Dragon Immortal aperture. Over the next 4 hours, he converts almost all the remaining merit into spiritual energy, and opens 3 more apertures, making his cultivation speed explode. He saves Zhang Ye's especially strong merit for his actual realm, because in a place this dangerous he wants more immediate fighting power. 2 more hours pass, and Yiping's cultivation surges all the way to the 7th level of Qi refinement in one push. Feeling stronger than before and no longer worried about Su Changyu, Yiping heads deeper into Linha Ghost Grave to hunt more merit instead of leaving. Elsewhere in the graveyard, Su Changyu keeps hold of a woman in blue and refuses to let her wander off, convinced a righteous cultivator cannot leave her in danger here. The woman tries to claim she hears her father calling, but Su Changyu suspects ghosts are luring her away and insists she stay near the powerful senior he trusts. The moment Su Changyu says his friend is here, the fog parts and Kong Hai appears. The woman instantly drops the act, turns into black fog, and tries to escape. Kong Hai's turquoise Buddhist beads flash out, bind her on the spot, and destroy her soul completely because her hands were stained with too much blood. As Kong Hai recalls his beads with a solemn Amitabha, Su Changyu is shaken by how close he came to being fooled by a ghost cultivator. Su Changyu silently vows to control himself outside, then suddenly realizes the bigger problem. Yiping is nowhere to be seen. At Linha Ghost Grave, Su Changyu suddenly realizes Yiping is gone, and his face goes blank with panic. The more Su Changyu thinks about it, the worse it gets, because if anything happened to his junior brother, he knows the whole sect would never forgive him. Kong Hai tries to calm him down, saying Yiping seems blessed and probably has not run into danger. Su Changyu forces himself to settle down and asks Kong Hai to help him search for Yiping properly. The two men head deeper into the haunted region, following traces and footprints while the search drags on. Far away at Qingzhou's ancient city, the coming Sword Dao meet has already packed the streets with cultivators, merchants, and sightseers. At the east gate, someone goes a step further than the usual warm-up duels and sets a sword platform directly across the priority passage. The rules are brutal. Once the platform is up, the challenger must accept every fight, and beating him is the only way to reclaim that passage. Instead of getting knocked off quickly, the unknown teenager crushes challenger after challenger until he reaches 36 straight wins. The crowd erupts when Qingzhou finally sends up Wang Jian of the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect, a famous local young swordsman, to test the mysterious challenger. Wang Jian formally announces himself, but the black-robed teenager answers only by drawing his sword with cold indifference. Wang Jian opens with the Fourth Thunder Sword technique, his blade roaring with thunder as he strikes first. The teenager's answer is even simpler and far deadlier, because one collision sends Wang Jian flying and knocks his sword clean out of his hand. The whole east gate falls silent, because a famous local swordsman just lost in a single exchange. Without any triumph in his voice, the teenager quietly says that this is all the Fourth Thunder Swordsmanship sect has to offer. That line splits the audience immediately, with some calling him arrogant, and others admitting the act really is impressive. The female cultivators are much less conflicted, because most of them are openly captivated by the mysterious swordsman's looks and bearing. 7 days flash by, and the teenager's gate challenge only gets more outrageous as his winning streak climbs to 100 straight victories. Back in Linha Ghost Grave, Su Changyu and Kong Hai have also spent those same 7 days searching without finding Yi Ping, and Su Changyu is wearing down fast. Kong Hai finally points out what has been bothering him. In 7 days inside Linha Ghost Grave, they have not encountered a single resentful spirit. That hits Su Changyu too, because a ghost grave with no ghosts makes no sense at all. Kong Hai gives his guess in a grim voice. A new ghost king may have appeared and devoured the rest. Before they can process that, a terrified cry for help tears through the mountains. A ghost comes fleeing straight at them in panic, screaming that someone is killing ghosts. The person chasing that ghost is Yi Ping, and after 7 anxious days Su Changyu is too stunned to speak. Yi Ping even tries to comfort the ghost as he chases it, telling it to endure a little longer so it can reincarnate. Then Yi Ping releases Golden Expiation Light, and Kong Hai is so shocked he blurts out the name of the technique on sight. The ghost shrieks, turns into a white ray, and vanishes completely under the golden light of expiation. Once the last ghost is gone, Yi Ping finally notices Su Changyu and lights up with genuine happiness. He hurries over and greets his eldest senior brother as if this reunion is the most natural thing in the world. Su Changyu finally snaps out of it, and scolds Yi Ping for disappearing, because he has been worried sick the whole time. Yi Ping lowers his head and apologizes, saying that after Su Changyu taught him an expiation method and vanished, he started purifying ghosts, and completely lost track of time. That leaves Su Changyu inwardly baffled, because he definitely does not remember teaching any expiation method at all. Kong Hai, meanwhile, is hit by a much bigger realization and starts wondering if both of these so-called weak cultivators have been hiding their true abilities all along. His suspicions deepen fast, because no ordinary chi refinement cultivators would casually enter Linha Ghost Grave or stay this calm around ghost cultivators. Unable to hold back, Kong Hai asks Yi Ping directly if that golden light was really the golden light of expiation. As soon as Kong Hai looks properly, he gets another shock, because Yi Ping has jumped from the 3rd to the 10th level of chi refinement in just 7 days. Yi Ping answers honestly that he does not know the proper name for the light, only that it works very well on ghost cultivators. To prove it, Yi Ping lets the golden light bloom on his palm, and Kong Hai can feel that its purity is even stronger than what his own master can produce. That finally pushes Kong Hai past restraint, and he awkwardly asks to see the expiation sutra behind this miracle. Yi Ping immediately defers to Su Changyu, because he believes his senior brother was the one who passed that sutra down to him. Kong Hai even offers Buddhist vows of secrecy just for a chance to glimpse it, which makes the request feel suddenly very serious. Su Changyu has no idea what sutra they are talking about, but he keeps his expert facade intact and grandly tells Yi Ping to write out a copy. Yi Ping obediently writes down the expiation sutra on the spot and hands it to Kong Hai without any reluctance. Kong Hai accepts the sutra like a treasure, deeply grateful and even more convinced that these two are not ordinary at all. After a quick look, Kong Hai can already tell the later half is profound enough that he cannot grasp it on the spot. Since the array formation is already broken and time is running out, Kong Hai urges them to leave now if they still want to make the Qingzhou sword down meet. He even offers to escort them down the mountain, and this time both brothers accept without hesitation. 6 hours later, the three finally emerge onto a safer mountain passage, leaving the worst of Linha Ghost Grave behind them. At the crossroads, Kong Hai points out the route to Qingzhou and explains exactly how to reach the ancient city from here. Before parting, Kong Hai warmly invites them to visit Little Spirit Temple if fate brings them together again. Su Changyu returns the courtesy by inviting Kong Hai to Qingyun Dao sect, and then he takes Yi Ping away in a hurry because they are already behind schedule. Kong Hai watches the two brothers disappear down the mountain and sends them off with one last line, leaving their next meeting to fate. 10 days later, Yi Ping and Su Changyu walk the crowded official passage toward Qingzhou Ancient City, where cultivators from every direction are gathering for the sword Dao meet. Along the road, everyone is buzzing about a swordsman who set up a platform at Qingzhou's gate and has already crushed 170 challengers in a row. Su Changyu hears the talk and stays completely unmoved, because a battle between monsters like that has nothing to do with him. Then a fresh commotion rises from behind as people realize an elite convoy is coming down the passage. The crowd stares as 20 armored warhorses thunder forward, and onlookers loudly brag about how absurdly expensive these ancient beast descendants are. At the center of the escort, a 6-horse golden carriage rolls into view and instantly outclasses everything else on the road. Su Changyu quickly does the math in his head, realizes the convoy alone is worth a fortune the Qingyun Dao sect could never touch, and feels both envy and pain. While Su Changyu dreams bitterly about riding in a carriage like that, Yi Ping is still quietly thinking about the 700 merit he earned after 7 days expiating ghosts in Linha Ghost Grave. Just as the convoy draws level, A handsome young man suddenly jumps out of the carriage and shouts for it to stop because he has spotted his teacher. Yiping looks over, recognizes the familiar face, and is genuinely surprised to find Liu here. Liu bows eagerly and greets Yiping as teacher, making it clear this rich young noble has been one of Yiping's devoted admirers since his old literary fame. When Su Changyu notices Liu's limited brocade gold river robe, he is even more shaken than before and starts wondering just how many secrets Yiping is hiding. Liu asks why Yiping is here, and Yiping answers with quiet confidence instead of treating him differently just because he is wealthy. When they realize they are both headed to Qinzhou, Liu immediately urges Yiping to ride with him for the long remaining journey. Yiping does not decide alone and turns to Su Changyu first, showing that he respects his eldest senior brother's stance. Su Changyu acts calm and magnanimous, but inside he is already desperate to board the free luxury carriage. Liu asks who Su Changyu is, and Yiping formally introduces him as his eldest senior brother while carefully clarifying that Liu has never truly become his disciple. Liu ignores the technicality, happily calls Su Changyu Uncle Master, and personally ushers both men into the carriage with flawless manners. Inside, the carriage opens into a surprisingly spacious chamber with wine, fruit, and 5 already seated guests waiting in quiet elegance. The guests are immediately struck by how handsome and unusual Su Changyu and Yiping look, and the two women stare at them without hiding it. Liu seats Yiping and Su Changyu in the places of honor, making his own reverence completely obvious to everyone inside. With a proud smile, Liu introduces Yiping to the carriage as his master, householder Qing Lian, and nearly fumbles when he realizes he never learned Su Changyu's name. Liu then presents the 3 young men as Changsun Gaozhan, Nie Xian, and Su Qiubai, each tied to one of Jin Nation's top forces. Yiping responds politely, but Su Changyu is rocked inside because he suddenly realizes this carriage is packed with the highest level heirs and connections in all of Jin Nation. The 3 young masters study Yiping and Su Changyu in return, and their calm reaction to those famous names makes them conclude these two are people they should not offend. One of the women finally breaks in, annoyed that Liu forgot them, and forces him to complete the introductions. Liu introduces the 2 women as Shuanger and Ninger from the Heavenly Apparel Pavilion, then reveals that they personally designed Su Changyu and Yiping's robes. Yiping only finds the coincidence mildly interesting, but Su Changyu is hit with another wave of disbelief as the carriage turns into an even more absurd gathering of big shots. Before Su Changyu can recover, Liu happily raises a cup and calls for 3 toasts to celebrate meeting his master again, and the whole carriage joins in. After several rounds of drinking in the carriage, Liu finally asks Yiping why he is heading to Qinzhou Ancient City. Yiping answers honestly that he is going to compete in the Qinzhou Sword Dao meet, and the whole carriage goes quiet for a beat. When Yiping calmly adds that he joined an immortal sect a few months ago and was sent there by his sect leader to train, Su Changyu tenses up, terrified that the lie will fall apart. Liu still tries one more time to recruit Yiping into the court, hoping to pull him into official life. Yiping turns him down without hesitation, saying he wants a free life and cannot stay confined to one place. Seeing Liu's disappointment, Yiping changes the subject and asks what everyone else is going to Qinzhou for. Liu explains that Gaozhan is traveling with him, Nie Xian is there for military recruitment, Su Qiubai wants to watch the Sword Dao meet, and Shuanger and Ninger are gathering inspiration for new sword immortal fashion designs. When Yiping asks if Jin Nation is preparing for war, Nie Xian sidesteps the sensitive issue and only admits the nation has seen strange developments lately and needs to prepare. The talk swings back to the Sword Dao meet, and Su Qiubai warns that this year's field is brutal enough that even the 4th Thunder Swordsmanship sect may not place in the top 10. Liu explains that the top 3 from the Qinzhou Sword Dao meet will enter the Jin Nation Academy, and that academy connects to the next 10 nations academy selection. That means this is the last Sword Dao meet before the bigger academy race, so talented cultivators are all piling into Qinzhou for a chance to break through. Yiping asks how strong the champion will need to be, finally showing a bit of pressure about his own chances. After thinking it through, Su Qiubai judges that winning this year will probably require at least understanding the 4th Thunder Sword momentum, and maybe even more if stronger monsters appear. Then Su Qiubai casually asks Yiping how many sword momentums he has understood since entering his sect. Yiping answers with total sincerity that after several months of his senior brother's teaching, he has only grasped the 4th Thunder Sword momentum and the Heavenly River Sword momentum. Yiping even calls himself slow, which makes everyone else in the carriage fall into stunned, painful silence. Su Qiubai is especially wrecked by it, because as a real sword genius he knows how outrageous Yiping's claim sounds. Liu, still taking Yiping completely seriously, asks Su Qiubai whether his master can win the whole event. Forced to answer politely, Su Qiubai admits it should not be difficult, even though he is now determined to stay and see whether Yiping is for real. With that awkward moment behind them, the carriage keeps rolling for 3 more days as Yiping's strange but convincing talk about the universe leaves the whole group quietly mesmerized. Yiping starts explaining stars, the universe, and civilizations in plain language, and everyone in the carriage ends up listening like he has opened a whole new world for them. 3 days later, the carriage finally reaches Qinzhou Ancient City, just as the Sword Dao meat fever is already boiling over. Just before their arrival, the city outside the gate is already buzzing over one thing: A young swordsman in black has won 245 straight rounds on the public sword platform. Even older sword cultivators challenged him without using dermic powers, but none of them could beat him with pure sword skill and sword momentum. His streak turns him into the hottest figure in Qingzhou, and the sect suffering the worst humiliation is the local powerhouse, the Four Thunder Swordsmanship sect. Outside the city gate, the Four Thunder disciples can only stand there in frustration, realizing their once dominant sect is being beaten into submission before the tournament even starts. One disciple suddenly says beating the man in black is not impossible, and the others immediately crowd around him for an answer. His answer is one name, the inspection commander they once discussed in secret, the mysterious expert they believe could crush the challenger outright. The more they talk, the more absurdly confident they get, bragging that a senior Su were here. A single glance or sword mark would be enough for them to comprehend supreme sword skills. Then a royal carriage pulled by ancient beast warhorses appears at the gate, instantly drawing the eyes of the entire crowd. Liu steps down first, calm under the attention, and the grand arrival makes it obvious this party is connected to the royal family. When Su Changyu gets out next with Yi Ping behind him, the Four Thunder disciples are shocked on the spot. Seeing Su Changyu emerge from a royal carriage convinces them completely that he really is the hidden inspection commander their sect leader suspected. They quickly decide to treat him only as Senior Su on the surface, so they can ask for help without openly exposing that they think they know his true identity. Before Su Changyu can even enjoy a breath of fresh air, the Four Thunder disciples rush over and beg him to save Qingzhou's pride. Their extreme respect stuns the people around them, because the famous Four Thunder Swordsmanship sect is acting like it has just met a hidden master. Su Qiubai is especially thrown off, because he can plainly see Su Changyu only looks like a 5th-level Qi refinement cultivator, yet everyone is treating him like a terrifying expert. Su Changyu himself is even more confused, because he has no idea why these people know him, or why they think he can save anyone. When he finally recognizes them as Four Thunder disciples, Su Changyu gets even more lost, because he still does not understand why Qingzhou losing face has anything to do with him. A senior disciple explains the crisis at last. A man in black has already crushed more than 200 challengers and is humiliating Qingzhou's sword cultivators on purpose. The whole group begs again, asking Senior Su to step in and save the honor of Qingzhou. That desperate plea sets off a fresh wave of gossip, and the crowd starts arguing that Su Changyu must be one of those absurd hidden experts disguising his true realm. Su Changyu can barely keep his face steady, because inside he is screaming that he is just a loser and has no idea who gave them the courage to ask this of him. Before Su Changyu can refuse, the dense crowd suddenly splits apart, opening a straight path from the sword platform. 500 meters away, the undefeated young man in black is already standing there and staring straight at Su Changyu. In Qingzhou Ancient City, the young man in black quietly fixes his gaze on Su Changyu from far away, as if he has finally found someone worth testing. Su Changyu looks back without flinching, and that calm face only makes him seem more like a hidden master to everyone watching. Su Qiubai watches with growing resentment, already annoyed that Yi Ping and Su Changyu stole the attention of Shuanger and Ninger on the journey here. Even Su Qiubai cannot decide whether Su Changyu is all show, because that effortless expert aura feels too natural to be fake. Su Changyu himself is only awkward, because the moment he raises his head and locks eyes with the challenger, he realizes looking away now would make him look weak. The young man in black probes Su Changyu through that stare and finds only weak sword traces, yet Su Changyu still does not break eye contact. That impossible composure confuses him, because by sword Dao logic, someone weaker should have looked away already. Then his attention snaps to Yi Ping, where he suddenly senses a terrifying sword momentum like thunder crossing a river. What shocks him even more is that Yi Ping looks barely older than him, yet his sword momentum already feels only half a step from true sword intent. The young man in black compares Yi Ping to legends like Daoist Siji and realizes this quiet disciple has reached a terrifying level far too young. Instead of feeling discouraged, he finally smiles, because he came to Qingzhou to find a stronger swordsman and sharpen himself against a real rival. But then he looks back at Su Changyu and talks himself into a bigger conclusion. If Yi Ping is this strong, the senior brother beside him must be even deeper and harder to read. Convinced Su Changyu is the real powerhouse, the young man in black respectfully asks for a match and says he only wants guidance. The crowd erupts at once, taking the challenger's respect as proof that Su Changyu must really be a peerless sword Dao expert. Su Changyu is baffled inside, because all he can think is that the wrong person just challenged the wrong target. He wants to refuse before this turns deadly, but he also knows backing down now would destroy the expert image everyone believes in. Seeing the delay, Yi Ping steps in and offers to fight instead, thinking his eldest senior brother finds this challenger unworthy of a personal match. Su Changyu is thrilled by the rescue plan for one brief second and is ready to let Yi Ping handle the danger while he keeps the pose. But when Su Changyu opens his mouth, what comes out is pure swagger. He tells Yi Ping to watch carefully and learn what the real sword Dao is. That line stuns the whole street, and even Su Changyu is left speechless by his own mouth. As the moment drags on, Su Changyu falls into real panic and starts wondering why he keeps saying grand things he never meant to say. He knows this is no harmless bluff anymore, because stepping into a real sword fight could get him killed. Desperate, Su Changyu shoots Yi Ping a look for help, hoping his junior brother will understand and give him a way out. Yi Ping completely misunderstands that glance and takes it as a lesson, thinking his senior brother wants him to quietly observe and comprehend the sword Dao instead. Yi Ping immediately sits down on the spot to enter comprehension, leaving Su Changyu mentally screaming for him to come back. Su Qiubai and the others can only stare, because sitting down to comprehend the sword Dao in the middle of a duel challenge is absurd even by cultivator standards. Liu reacts like a devoted supporter and hurriedly has someone hold up shade for Yi Ping so his comprehension will not be disturbed by the sun. The young man in black draws his long sword and politely invites Su Changyu to make the first move. Su Changyu cannot move at all, because if he steps forward he may expose himself, and if he fights badly he may end up injured for real. He keeps that frozen expert pose for a painfully long time, turning the whole square tense and confused. After waiting even longer, the young man in black asks again for Su Changyu to strike, but still gets only that unreadable silence. For a moment the challenger wonders if Su Changyu is bluffing, but he quickly rejects that idea because no fraud should have accepted this battle so calmly. Then the young man in black comes up with his own explanation. Su Changyu must be holding back because once he attacks, the fight will end before his opponent can respond. Trying to show respect, he says he will embarrass himself first and starts walking closer to invite the opening attack. That only makes Su Changyu more frantic, because now the danger is literally coming toward him. Su Changyu finally blurts out that the challenger is wrong, hoping he can still explain himself before this goes any further. He means to come clean, but the words that leave his mouth are even worse. Su Changyu calmly says he has already attacked. The whole city goes silent, because nobody saw any sword move and the claim sounds outrageously forceful even for an expert. Even Su Qiubai and the others instinctively edge away from Su Changyu, as if refusing to be associated with this level of pretense. Su Changyu is dying of embarrassment inside, because he knows better than anyone that he never attacked at all. But Yi Ping is the one person who believes every word, because in his eyes Su Changyu is a supreme sword immortal far beyond ordinary understanding. With that belief, Yi Ping sinks deeper into comprehension, and the endless sword diagram unfolds in his mind to reflect the sword traces of the countless cultivators around him. Among all those weak scattered traces, Yi Ping senses one terrifying sword intent coming from Su Changyu, vast enough to feel like heaven and earth could split. Back in the square, the young man in black asks the obvious question at last and demands to know where Su Changyu's sword is. Su Changyu wants to say anything else, but his cursed swagger takes over again, and he answers that his sword is everywhere. That answer leaves the Qinzhou cultivators even more speechless, torn between irritation, disbelief, and the nagging fear that he might somehow be serious. The young man in black hesitates for a beat, unable to tell whether he is facing a fraud or a monster, and then decides to test it himself. At last he warns Su Changyu that he is attacking and snaps his black longsword forward, releasing his sword momentum as the real clash finally begins. The young man in black stops testing the waters and finally attacks, deciding that whether Su Changyu is bluffing or not, this fight has to happen now. That sword pressure hits so hard that weaker cultivators nearly buckle, and the whole area feels like night has fallen ahead of time. Su Changyu is completely thrown off because he was still trying to talk, not actually fight, and now the attack is already on top of him. Inside, Su Changyu spirals into pure panic, convinced he is about to die and bitterly regretting ever coming down the mountain to act impressive. With no way out, Su Changyu shuts his eyes and accepts that in his next life, he should just be an honest man. Then a cold breeze brushes past, and behind him Yi Ping quietly says he has finally understood. The young man in black suddenly locks up because his sword will not move another inch. A strange buzzing spreads through the crowd, and everyone realizes the noise is coming from their own swords. Su Changyu opens his eyes to find himself still alive, with the black sword trembling right in front of his heart, and Yi Ping somehow shaking every blade in sight. As Yi Ping speaks the word Sword of Great River, countless swords break free and rush toward him like a tidal wave. The sword river gathers over Yi Ping, and the Qinzhou sword cultivators finally realize he may be condensing true sword intent. Su Qiubai is hit hardest by that possibility because he knows exactly what sword intent means and how absurdly hard it is to reach. After years in the Sword Dao family, Su Qiubai still has not touched sword intent himself, so the idea that Yi Ping reached this in just months feels impossible. The other sword cultivators are just as stunned because the extra they thought Su Changyu hired turns out to be genuinely breaking through in public. That shock flips the whole crowd around, and people start treating Su Changyu like a hidden sword immortal who casually led his junior brother to this point. The young man in black refuses to accept it and forcibly unleashes his own sword momentum to fight back against Yi Ping's rising power. Yi Ping's Great River sword momentum answers instantly, transforming into a killing force that crashes down on the challenger. Before that strike can land, an unnamed grey-robed elder appears out of nowhere, blocks it, declares the match over, and admits his young master has lost. The unnamed elder knocks the young man in black unconscious and carries him away, making it obvious the defeated challenger has a powerful background. With the duel gone, every eye in Qinzhou turns fully to Yi Ping and the river of swords still weaving above his head. Yi Ping has already hit the limit of ordinary sword moves, so he pushes deeper and tries to use this chance to build real sword intent. For half an hour, the endless sword diagram inside Yiping keeps deducing more and more sword moves while the 100,000 swords thunder overhead. The spectacle grows so huge that Qingzhou's strongest experts are drawn in, and the city lord himself arrives on a purple flying sword. When someone asks if Yiping is really condensing sword intent, the city lord gives a simple yes that sends another shock through the crowd. Then the city lord studies Su Changyu instead, because he can clearly see Su Changyu is only at the 5th level of qi refinement, yet somehow carries the composure of someone far above that realm. While everyone waits, the sword river above Yiping suddenly starts thinning out and the pressure weakens. A lot of onlookers immediately assume Yiping failed at the last step and start talking like the miracle is over. Some young talents even turn smug, using Yiping's apparent failure to comfort themselves and mock his ambition. That ugly attitude immediately gets checked by nearby female cultivators, who call them out as weak men sneering at someone they cannot match. The women even joke about putting those men on a bottom feeder list so no one marries them by mistake, which shuts them up fast. The city lord cuts through the noise and bluntly says they are ignorant, because Yiping did not fail at all. He explains that Yiping is establishing sword intent instead of forcing an early breakthrough, deliberately laying a stronger foundation before true condensation. He goes further and warns that sword Dao cultivators with jealous, narrow hearts will never go far no matter how talented they are. Stung by that public scolding, the sarcastic youths can only lower their heads and slip away. At last the swords all fly back to their owners, the strange phenomenon ends, and Yiping opens his eyes. After the storm of flying swords ends, the street goes quiet again, and everyone just stares at Yiping in stunned silence. Yiping opens his eyes, looks at Su Changyu with real shame, and says he failed to comprehend sword intent because his aptitude is too poor. The crowd is left speechless, because after what they just witnessed, Yiping calling himself untalented sounds almost insulting. Su Changyu finally steadies himself, puts on his calm expert face again, and decides this is his moment to act impressive. Instead of explaining anything, Su Changyu simply turns toward the city and says they are going in, which only makes his mysterious aura stronger. Yiping obediently follows his senior brother, and the Yu scrambles after them, calling out for his teacher to wait. Watching the Yu chase after them and call Yiping teacher, the Qingzhou city lord is jolted into suspecting Su Changyu is Jin Nation's inspection commander. Even after that guess, the city lord restrains himself and quietly withdraws instead of rushing in and risking a mistake. As Su Changyu and Yiping enter Qingzhou, the entire street turns to look at them with envy, admiration, and open fascination. Su Changyu acts cool on the outside, but inside he is almost drunk on the attention and secretly loves every second of it. The male cultivators grumble that their ranking as Qingzhou's most handsome men has just been shoved down by 2 newcomers. The women are much louder, openly swooning over Su Changyu's aloof dominance and Yiping's refined scholarly charm. Their shamelessly explicit talk leaves Yiping awkwardly convinced all over again that Xiao Mushua's lust abstinence teaching must have been important. Liu eagerly offers them a private room at Full River House so they can rest quietly before the sword Dao meet. Yiping refuses at once, because his sect taught him not to accept favors outside and end up owing people. Su Changyu actually approves of that restraint, since he has money now and does not need to rely on anyone. Then Liu mentions the room is already booked and costs 100 taels of gold a day, which stops Su Changyu cold. The moment Su Changyu realizes this is Qingzhou's top 5-star inn, his principles change very quickly. He smoothly tells Yiping that Liu is their own disciple, not an outsider, so staying there should be fine after all. With that, Yiping agrees, and the 3 of them head to Full River House together. 6 hours later, Li Changye arrives outside Qingzhou, dressed in an expensive white crane cloud robe and ready to begin what he thinks will be his path to invincibility. Li Changye strides into the city convinced the attention on him is envy from people who already recognize his greatness. In reality, the crowd mocks him as a cheap copycat of eldest senior brother, and the women dismiss him as a pretty fraud. 2 hours after that, Wang Mingho reaches Qingzhou with an even colder attitude and the natural superiority of someone from a truly hidden powerhouse. He also notices the stares on him and calmly accepts them as the attention a genius should receive. Late that night at Full River House, Su Changyu stands alone on the roof under the moon, forcing himself to look like an expert even while the wind nearly ruins the mood. The applause from earlier still lingers in his chest, but the more he thinks about it, the more he hates that all the glory came from Yiping saving him again. He broods over the unfairness of it all, wondering why he got the face but not the talent, while Yiping got the terrifying aptitude instead. Even so, Su Changyu refuses to give up and talks himself into believing he is still a sword Dao genius who just has not found the right path yet. Then a gust from the northwest street sends a thin green book flying straight onto the rooftop in front of him. Su Changyu picks it up and sees the title Sword Nurturing Technique, which is suspicious enough to make him curious. The first page shamelessly asks whether he wants to become a peerless sword immortal and enjoy the attention of the whole world, and that bait hits him exactly where it hurts. He knows it looks fake, but he still turns the page because the promise is just too tempting tonight. The manual keeps flattering him and claims the sword nurturing technique is the strongest sword art in the world. On the next page, the real method appears: defeat stronger sword Dao experts, steal their sword intent into an ordinary sword, and collect 9,999 intents before ever drawing it. The restrictions sound absurd to him, especially the part about beating the world's top sword experts without even drawing the sword first. He almost throws it away for good, but boredom wins and he turns to the last page anyway. That final page says true sword battles can happen in the mind, and that a genius can defeat opponents through spiritual combat and claim their sword intent there. Now the whole thing feels custom-made for him, because a sword technique based on imagination means he never has to risk a real fight at all. After a brief pause, he decides there is no harm in trying, and convinces himself this book falling into his hands must be heaven's will. Delighted with himself, Su Changyu accepts the sword nurturing technique as his new path and feels sure he is finally about to rise. At the same time, in room 2 of Full River House, Yiping sits cross-legged on the bed and finally begins to refine the merit power he has been carrying for days. He spends that merit first on the Torch Dragon Immortal Apertures, opening the 6th and then pushing all the way to the 10th in one intense session. With 10 apertures running together, a huge tide of spiritual energy surges through him and firmly stabilizes his cultivation at the 10th level of chi refinement. He also realizes that once he opens 36 of these immortal apertures, he should gain a real mystical ability, which makes this path even more valuable. Without wasting a breath, Yiping switches to the ancient God-Fiend body tempering technique and starts forging his body instead. 6 hours later, he has tempered himself 3 more times, bringing his total to 5 and hardening his body to an absurd degree. A faint elephant cry echoes from inside him, marking great mastery of his physique as his blood, meridians, and raw power all leap upward together. By now, even a foundation establishment cultivator could barely survive one punch from him, and many would simply be crippled outright. Only then does Yiping use the last of his merit to recast his realm again, pushing through the night until dawn. When he opens his eyes at daybreak, he looks like he has fallen back to the first level of chi refinement, but in truth he has completed 2 more recasts, and is now on the 5th. His mind is now perfected, his body carries elephant strength and dragon-like blood force, and even late-stage foundation establishment cultivators would die to a single punch. Yiping suppresses all of that terrifying power back into a harmless Confucian-looking calm, just as Qingzhou prepares for the arrival of another already famous sword Dao talent. The next day, one name explodes across Qingzhou ancient city: Sikong Jiantian has arrived. Inside Full River House, the entire conversation shifts away from Yiping and the young man in black as everyone starts talking about Sikong Jiantian instead. The crowd explains why the name hits so hard. Sikong Jiantian is Qingzhou's legendary sword prodigy, and one of the brightest talents in all 10 nations. That reputation only makes people more confused, because someone already that famous and strong should have no reason to bully a local sword meet. Then someone reveals the real prize. This year's top 10 get Taishian Sword Tower entry tokens, and that finally gives Sikong Jiantian a believable reason to show up. The room immediately turns into a debate over who can win, with most people calling Sikong Jiantian the obvious favorite. A smaller group argues that yesterday's senior brother and junior brother look strong too, and soon the room is split between fans of Su Changyu and Yiping. Right in the middle of the noise, Li Changye cuts in with a cold sneer and mocks everyone in the room as country bumpkins. For a second the crowd thinks the speaker might be Su Changyu because of the similar robe, then relaxes when they realize it is only Li Changye. Pressed to explain himself, Li Changye says the others are thinking too small and insists someone like Sikong Jiantian would never come all this way for a minor reward. That only earns him sarcasm, because someone fires back that if Qingzhou is so tiny, then he lowered himself by coming here too. Li Changye answers without blinking and declares that Qingzhou is only his first step on a grand path to become number 1 in Qingzhou, Jin Nation, the 10 nations, and eventually all Great Xia. His ambition sounds so outrageous that the whole room breaks into ridicule instead of fear. Li Changye still refuses to bend, throws down a gold ingot, and walks upstairs like a man certain everyone will remember him later. Once he is gone, the crowd dismisses him as another attention-seeking loudmouth and goes back to eating and drinking. In a corner, Wang Mingho drinks alone and quietly scoffs at Li Changye's wild talk, convinced the man is nowhere near worthy of challenging him. Even so, Wang Mingho keeps his thoughts to himself, deciding that a future great figure like him should not waste words on someone beneath him. As the days tick down, Sikong Jiantian's arrival spreads far beyond Qingzhou and turns the local sword Dao meet into a major event for all Jin Nation. With less than a week left, more and more people flood into Qingzhou ancient city just to witness the competition. 4 days later, another shock hits when Sikong Jiantian officially registers for the tournament, and people also spot Yiping and Su Changyu on the contestant list. The same contestant list also confirms that Yiping and Su Changyu will compete, and Su Changyu's name sets off even more speculation. Some people immediately imagine Su Changyu entered for one reason only: to cross swords with Sikong Jiantian. 2 more days pass, registration closes at 1,024 contestants, and the 7-day bracket is set all the way down to the final champion. Back in Full River House, Liu brings a copied duel list to Su Changyu and Yiping so they can finally see their first opponents. The draw is immediate and personal for Yiping, His opening match will be against Li Changye. Su Changyu's first opponent is Wang Lei, a much less dramatic name on paper. Liu says he already looked into both opponents, and reports that Wang Lei is from the 4th Thunder Swordsmanship sect but only has average strength. Liu adds that Li Changye's background is oddly blank, because even Black Cloud's pavilion could not dig up much on him, and that makes him seem like a nobody. Yiping does not underestimate that at all, and instead grows more eager for the first sword fight of his life. Su Changyu stays even calmer, because mastering the sword nurturing technique has boosted his confidence, and he never meant to chase a ranking here. He pulls Yiping back to the right mindset, and warns him not to get arrogant, but to step onto the stage with the disciple's heart and fight with no regrets. Yiping accepts the advice at once and promises he will go all out even if his opponent looks unimportant. Liu then notes that hidden experts are mixed into this tournament, and asks Su Changyu if he wants to face Sikong Jiantian. That question catches Su Changyu off guard, because he genuinely did not know Sikong Jiantian was here at all. Liu realizes his guess was wrong and understands that Su Changyu entered the tournament for his own reasons, not to chase Sikong Jiantian. Su Changyu explains that he joined purely for comprehension, not to target anyone, and then asks why a figure like Sikong Jiantian would bother with this meet. Liu says Sikong Jiantian almost certainly has another purpose, even if he cannot see the full picture yet. Su Changyu agrees something deeper is happening, then drops the topic, tells Yiping to keep focusing on the sword Dao, and leaves the room. After Su Changyu leaves, the room falls still, with incense burning as Yiping keeps thinking about tomorrow's tournament. Then Liu quietly warns Yiping to avoid suspicious people, because the Fiend Celestial cult may strike and real danger could break out around the tournament. Yiping is caught off guard by the sudden warning and waits for Liu to explain what danger he means. Liu admits he should not even be saying this, but because he trusts Yiping, he reveals a court secret about the Fiend Celestial cult returning. Liu says the revived Fiend Celestial cult wants to purge all 33 states of Jin Nation, and even now the court still cannot identify who its hidden followers are. The threat is even worse because the cult has already slipped into the Imperial Court itself, which means their strike could come from anywhere. Yiping immediately asks the practical question, if the danger is real, why not just cancel the Sword Dao meet? Liu explains that canceling the Sword Dao meet would only expose the court's hidden spies, while the Fiend Celestial cult is too skilled at concealment for that to solve anything. Liu reassures Yiping that Qingzhou already has many hidden experts waiting in ambush, and he even suspects Sikong Jiantian came because of this threat. Yiping accepts the warning, but inwardly he wants no part in power struggles and still only cares about cultivating well enough to one day enjoy a peaceful mortal life. Liu makes one last request and begs Yiping not to repeat any of this, especially to Su Changyu, because one careless leak could bring him serious consequences. Yiping agrees, grateful for the trust, and finally lets his mind drift back to tomorrow's Sword Dao meet instead of the hidden danger around it. Inside the Qingzhou City Lord's Hall, Qinjing receives a visitor he dares not treat lightly, Sikong Jiantian, the blindfolded sword prodigy whose name already carries weight across the 10 nations. Sikong Jiantian gets straight to the point and asks whether Qingzhou has seen any movement from the Fiend Celestial cult, which is hunting Jin Nation's young talents. Qinjing acts surprised and claims he knows nothing, but Sikong calmly calls out the performance, and makes it clear the city lord has already been warned from above. When words are not enough, Sikong Jiantian reveals an octagonal heavenly supervisory token, and Qinjing's fake ignorance vanishes on the spot. Now facing a heavenly supervisory envoy, Qinjing immediately bows and addresses Sikong as his superior, because this office stands above even kings and sects. Once the pretense drops, Qinjing admits the court secretly deployed 3,000 elite cavalry around Qingzhou ancient city, but the Sword Dao meet has made the place too crowded to search cleanly. Sikong thinks it through and warns that the Fiend Celestial cult is probably waiting to strike during the Sword Dao meet or right as it ends, when the chaos would be hardest to control. He tells Qinjing to keep the city under control, because if a talented junior dies in a fight inside Qingzhou, the city lord could lose his position. Qinjing hurriedly vows to protect Qingzhou's juniors even at the cost of his life, then tries to flatter Sikong by saying no cultist should dare move while he is here. Sikong cuts through the flattery and says the opposite is true, precisely because he is famous. The Fiend Celestial cult has every reason to target Qingzhou now and turn his death into a statement. That explanation hits Qinjing hard, and he instantly praises Sikong as a man risking himself as bait for the sake of the realm. Qinjing even starts talking about holding a banquet for such noble sacrifice, pushing the bootlicking so far that the room turns awkward. Sikong shuts the praise down at once and bluntly says he is not being noble at all, just following orders. With the warning delivered, Sikong prepares to leave, and Qinjing personally escorts him out with even more caution than before. Before parting, Qinjing asks whether Sikong joined the Sword Dao meet partly as cover, and Sikong says yes in part, but he also wants to test Qingzhou's juniors with a new sword technique. Sikong adds one last instruction: his heavenly supervisory identity must stay secret, or the whole trap will grow messy before the enemy even moves. By the next morning, Qingzhou Ancient City is already packed before sunrise, because the Sword Dao meet has turned the whole arena into a boiling sea of people. The competition layout is brutal and simple. Hundreds of rings run at once, and the meat tests swordplay and sword momentum, but anyone using cultivation above chi refinement is disqualified on the spot. After staying up all night, Yiping arrives alone carrying his green moon flying sword, because Su Changyu's match is later and his senior chose to rest first. In the resting area, the tournament calls out match assignments one after another until Yiping hears his own name paired with Li Changye on ring 78. Hearing that pairing makes Yiping even more nervous, because this is his first real sword match and he has no idea where he truly stands among Qingzhou's hidden experts. He can only steady himself by remembering Su Changyu's teaching, because if he fights like an ordinary swordsman now, it would feel like failing the peerless senior who trained him. At ring 78, Yiping finally sees Li Changye, a cold young swordsman dressed in a style that clearly imitates Su Changyu without matching his natural presence. As dawn light falls across the ring, Li Changye reads Yiping's cultivation and is instantly disappointed that his first opponent is only at the first level of chi refinement. That tiny advantage goes straight to Li Changye's head, and in one breath he starts imagining this match as the glorious first step on his road to invincibility. In his own mind, he is already the lonely future number one in the world, burdened by the tragic problem of being too brilliant for everyone else. He even glances toward the women nearby and convinces himself they are here to witness the future top sword immortal's first legend in the making. The women immediately ruin that fantasy by mocking Li Changye as a cheap copycat and making it clear they are only here because Yiping is his opponent. Then Yiping appears properly in their sight, and the whole section explodes into screaming, cheering, and shameless open admiration for him. The uproar spreads across the arena so hard that other contestants, and even their own supporters stop and stare, leaving plenty of male cultivators bitter on the spot. One male contestant even complains that his junior sister promised to cheer for him, only for her to brush him off and go right back to shouting Yiping's name. Yiping is honestly caught off guard by just how intense the reaction is, because even his old literary fame never made admirers act this crazy. Once on the platform, Yiping puts the chaos aside and gives Li Changye a proper formal greeting as a fellow sword cultivator. Li Changye returns the greeting with basic courtesy, but the moment he notices the crowd belongs to Yiping, his interest shifts from pride to anticipation. He starts imagining how satisfying it would be to crush Yiping in front of all those admirers and watch their excitement collapse. With time still left before the match, Li Changye tells Yiping he is lucky to have met him, acting mysterious instead of explaining himself. Yiping genuinely does not understand what that is supposed to mean, and Li Changye only answers with an even more loaded smile that reminds Yiping of Su Changyu's annoying little habits. Then the arena announces the official start of the sword down meet and orders the outer crowd to keep quiet, ending the chatter and turning every ring serious at once. As silence falls, Li Changye fixes his eyes on Yiping and thrills at one private thought: maybe his path to invincibility is about to begin right here. 3 bells ring out, and the Qingzhou sword Dao meet officially begins with every ring falling under tense silence. At ring number 78, Yiping grips the green moon flying sword and focuses hard, while Li Changye stands relaxed and decides to let him attack 3 times first. Before the clash even starts, Li Changye gets carried away imagining Yiping one day bragging about losing to the future greatest sword immortal. That smug mood cracks when Li Changye suddenly feels sword momentum from Yiping and realizes it is the complete 4 thunder sword momentum. Li Changye is genuinely startled that a first-level chi refinement cultivator could condense all 4 thunder phases, but he still tells himself he can handle a genius like this. Yiping remembers his master's advice to hold nothing back, steadies himself, and finally commits to a full, serious opening strike. He lunges in a burst of thunder, and the roar of the 4 thunder sword momentum shakes not just ring number 78 but the whole tournament ground. The blast from ring number 78 shocks the whole venue, and even the seniors at the referee stand rise when they recognize the complete 4 thunder sword momentum. Then Yiping adds a second sword momentum, turning thunder into a surging river and revealing the far fiercer heavenly thunder sword technique. Li Changye's confidence breaks on the spot, because the second momentum multiplies the pressure so much that he can barely believe this is still a preliminary match. He tries to respond with his own sword, but that only draws out Yiping's final trump card, the sword-breaking technique. A white flash tears through the ring, and Li Changye is blasted off the platform trailing blood through the air. Yiping had deliberately suppressed his dermic power to tournament limits, because if he had truly gone all out, Li Changye would have died. The whole venue goes dead quiet, because everyone watching suddenly realizes Yiping fights like someone who could kill people in a mere trial match. Lying injured off the ring, Li Changye refuses to accept the loss and convinces himself he only fell because he was careless and never seriously attacked first. Yiping looks at the result, realizes his opponent's earlier words were probably a warning that he was weak, and suddenly feels guilty for hitting him so hard. He bows to Li Changye and sincerely thanks him, saying he understands now, which only leaves Li Changye even more stunned. When Li Changye tries to protest and ask for a rematch, the sword force still inside him surges again and makes him spit blood. Yiping jumps down at once, supports him with anxious hands, and starts feeding him dermic power to help stabilize his injuries. In his rush to comfort him, Yiping blurts out that he truly did not know Li Changye's cultivation was this poor, and that he would never have struck so heavily if he had known. Li Changye is nearly driven to tears trying to explain that this is not what happened, but Yiping keeps insisting that he already understands. In the end, Li Changye coughs up one more mouthful of blood, his vision goes black, and he faints while Yiping panics and begs him not to die. Yiping's brutal opening match leaves the whole sword down meet wary of him, and many competitors start silently praying they never draw his name. As Li Changye is carried off for treatment, Yiping anxiously tells the physician again and again that he never meant to hurt him like this. The physician reassures Yiping that accidents happen in sword bouts and promises to pass along his apology once Li Changye wakes up. Only after that does the presiding elder formally declare Yiping the winner of ring number 78. The female cultivators immediately erupt into cheers for Yiping, making his frightening display even more glaring to the jealous men around them. Back in the resting area, Liu rushes over to congratulate Yiping, but Yiping can barely enjoy the win because he still feels bad about how weak his opponent turned out to be. Liu laughs off Li Changye as a nobody and says he had wrongly feared the man might be some hidden successor. Then Liu brings real news: Wang Lei has withdrawn from the tournament altogether. Yiping is surprised that someone can simply quit, but Liu says anyone who saw that fourth thunder opening would be a fool to stay and risk being sent flying too. Liu even tells him he probably does not need to wait around anymore, because from now on most people drawn against him will likely surrender on sight. Yiping still doubts it and says the sect leader warned him that this year's Qingzhou meet has hidden experts, so maybe he was only lucky enough to draw a weak opponent first. Liu swallows the obvious thought that Yiping himself is one of those hidden monsters, says goodbye, and heads to the full river house to report to Su Changyu. 4 hours later, the first round ends, and when the second round begins, Yiping's next opponent withdraws before even showing his face. Word spreads that the missing opponent cursed the tournament as unfair on his way out, convinced being matched with Yiping was just being sent to die. Su Changyu's second opponent withdraws too, so he and Yiping both move into the top 256 without fighting another bout. That night at the full river house, Su Changyu hears the result and is stunned that he somehow made the top 500 again. The shock quickly turns into delight when Su Changyu realizes a top 500 finish means rewards, and he starts dreaming about an even bigger prize if luck carries him into the top 100. Over the next 2 days, Yiping keeps advancing exactly as Liu predicted, because each of his next 4 opponents withdraws before fighting him. Even Su Changyu's opponents flee the same way, because after seeing what Yiping is like, nobody wants to test what his senior brother might be able to do. The fear is simple. Yiping opens with full 4 Thundersword momentum like a man trying to end lives, not just win points in a sword match. Without really understanding how it happened, Yiping and Su Changyu both find themselves standing among the top 16. They are not alone in the spotlight either, because Sikong Jiantian also keeps advancing without fighting as opponents withdraw from him too. Other strong names like Wang Mingho keep winning cleanly, but even their good runs are getting overshadowed by the panic and hype around Yiping. By now the whole meet is fixated on the big future clashes everyone wants to see: Sikong Jiantian against Su Changyu, or Sikong Jiantian against Yiping. The next morning, the top 16 bracket appears, and the crowd immediately checks whether those headline matchups will finally happen. Instead, the bracket keeps Yiping, Su Changyu, and Sikong Jiantian perfectly separated, so none of them meet yet. And just like before, the unlucky disciples matched against them give up immediately, pushing Yiping and Su Changyu straight into the final 8. Because Sikong Jiantian appeared in this year's meet, the event has already drawn attention from cultivators all across Jin Nation. Several major trade unions even opened betting on the tournament, turning the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet into a nationwide spectacle. As the tournament's fame keeps spreading, a new figure finally appears in the Qingyun mountain range, Shi Liangjin. Back at Qingyun Dao sect, Daoist Taihua stays home and worries more about rebuilding the sect than about Yiping and Su Changyu's results at the Sword Dao meet. He keeps his expectations low, figuring Yiping reaching the top 100 would already be enough, so he simply waits for news to come back on its own. Just as Taihua starts his usual dawn cultivation, Shi Liangjin suddenly rushes up the mountain toward the sect. Seeing the merchant appear out of nowhere, Taihua immediately gets suspicious and wonders if this is about money again. Shi Liangjin beams and blurts out that he has good news, while Taihua cuts in first to make one thing clear: he is not lending anyone money. Still panting, Shi Liangjin finally delivers the real news: Yiping has fought his way into the top 8 of the Qingzhou Sword Dao meet. Taihua is genuinely shocked and quickly starts taking credit, pleased that his disciple is bringing honor back to Qingyun Dao sect. Then Shi Liangjin drops the bigger surprise: Su Changyu is in the top 8 too, so Qingyun has 2 rising stars at once. That news leaves Taihua stunned, because if even Su Changyu made the top 8, the whole tournament suddenly feels absurd to him. When Shi Liangjin says the 2 disciples are now famous as Qingzhou's double elites, Taihua's shock turns into a different kind of pain. He suddenly realizes the top 8 prizes include spirit stones, a robe, and a flying sword, and the thought of missing out hits Taihua like a knife. Once Taihua is fully hooked by the prize talk, Shi Liangjin carefully pivots and says he has an even more profitable deal in mind. Shi Liangjin explains that big trade unions have opened betting on the Sword Dao meet, and because both Qingyun disciples are on the board, he wants Taihua to fix a future match between them. Tai Hua instantly throws on a righteous face and blasts the idea as shameless, saying Qingyun may be poor but it still has principles. He keeps scolding Shi Liangjin, angry that anyone would ask his disciples to throw away their hard-earned chance for just a few hundred or a few thousand taels of silver. Shi Liangjin is left embarrassed, because he really thought Tai Hua was the same kind of money-hungry schemer he was. So Shi Liangjin hurriedly apologizes and says greed clouded his judgment, because he had been thinking about profits worth more than 100,000 spirit stones. Tai Hua starts to dismiss it again, but the moment he realizes Shi Liangjin said spirit stones and not silver, his whole attitude jolts. The scale of that number overwhelms him, because to Tai Hua it sounds like the yearly wealth of a first-rank sect dropped into his lap at once. After one cough to regain his dignity, Tai Hua smoothly rewrites his position and says he is only considering this because his kind-hearted eldest disciple may need help handling money properly. Even while pretending to stay principled, Tai Hua presses for the real details, because he still cannot believe the betting market could be worth that many spirit stones. Shi Liangjin reveals why the whole Jin nation is watching this year's meet. Xikong Jiantian is competing too. That finally makes sense to Tai Hua, because a national celebrity like Xikong Jiantian would naturally drag huge public attention and huge betting money into Qingzhou. Shi Liangjin pushes the real advantage next. If they can control a match result involving Tai Hua's disciples, they can let the bankers win big and secretly profit alongside them. Tai Hua drops the act completely and bluntly asks what he needs to do. Shi Liangjin proposes the core plan: wait until Yiping and Su Changyu meet, then make the one with the higher odds lose on purpose and cash in on the swing. Tai Hua hesitates for a moment, not because he dislikes the money, but because he feels a little guilty about the gamblers who would be taking the loss. Shi Liangjin coldly talks him through it, arguing that gamblers ruin themselves anyway and the poor cannot afford to survive on noble words alone. Those blunt words hit home, and Tai Hua's last bit of moral hesitation quietly disappears. Now fully on board, Tai Hua starts bargaining over the capital split instead of the ethics. Shi Liangjin first offers a 4-6 capital split with equal profit, but Tai Hua immediately pushes for better terms and wants to put in less while still splitting the gains evenly. After a tense pause, Shi Liangjin grits his teeth and accepts, as long as Tai Hua can actually persuade his disciples to cooperate. Tai Hua admits he cannot guarantee anything yet, so they agree to wait for a reply before placing the real bets. As they head down the mountain together still talking business, Tai Hua casually asks whose current odds are highest. Shi Liangjin says Xikong Jiantian stands at 1 to 20, Su Changyu at 1 to 10, and Yiping at 1 to 5. The moment Tai Hua hears his eldest disciple is valued at 1 to 10, he forgets about sending any letter and immediately decides to bet on Su Changyu losing. Back at the tournament, the top 8 bracket shifts again when the opponents matched against Yiping, Xikong Jiantian, and Su Changyu all choose to withdraw. By noon, the top 4 match list is officially posted, and the whole city surges with excitement over the new pairings. With Yiping facing Wang Mingho and Su Changyu about to clash with Xikong Jiantian, the uproar races beyond Qingzhou and throws the entire Jin nation into a frenzy. When the final 4 list comes out, all of Qingzhou erupts because the tournament finally has the matchups everyone wanted. People had been frustrated up to now, because Yiping's later opponents kept forfeiting and neither Xikong Jiantian nor Su Changyu had truly fought on stage. So the judges win the crowd back by pairing Yiping against Wang Mingho, and Xikong Jiantian against Su Changyu in the semifinals. The betting houses go into panic mode, because money floods in from across Jin Nation once those 2 fights are set. Yiping and Wang Mingho draw fairly balanced odds, but the real storm is the second fight, where almost everyone piles their money on Xikong Jiantian. The trade unions are only daring to open that bet because they suspect Xikong Jiantian might never actually fight, and that he came to Qingzhou for something else. Back at Full River House, Su Changyu sits under a willow tree with his eyes closed, looking every bit like a profound expert in seclusion. Nearby, Yiping keeps studying the sword Dao and reworking his techniques for tomorrow's fight. Liu suddenly rushes over and quietly calls Yiping teacher, clearly desperate to ask something awkward. After some fidgeting, Liu admits the real issue. Su Changyu's odds have climbed high enough that he wants inside information before placing a bet. Yiping leans in and warns him with total seriousness that whatever he hears next must not be spread around. Then Yiping reveals the secret he fully believes himself. Su Changyu is a peerless sword immortal. To make the point even bigger, Yiping quotes a grand line that in the sky, 3 million sword immortals would still have to bow to Su Changyu. Liu is completely sold and hurries off to bet on Su Changyu, already dreaming of a huge win. Yiping watches Su Changyu's closed-eyed pose and sincerely assumes his senior brother is thinking about the great Dao at every moment. But inside Su Changyu's head, his only urgent concern is whether the top 4 battle robe will clash with his beloved white crane robe. 6 hours later, Qingzhou is in chaos again as rumors spread that Su Changyu is no ordinary contestant but a hidden sword immortal from centuries ago. The rumor snowballs fast, with people convincing each other that the betting houses only dared open this match because they knew Su Changyu's true identity. The story gets even wilder when people start repeating that Xikong Jiantian already lost to Su Changyu outside the city without forcing him to draw his sword. Once people hear the line about 3 million sword immortals bowing to him, They stop doubting and sprint to change their bets before the odds crash. Far outside Qinzhou, hundreds of black-clothed fiend celestial cult members gather in a barren mountain range for a secret briefing. Their leader announces that the cult's traces have been noticed, but the order stands: once the sword Dao meet ends, they must assassinate the young geniuses on the list. When someone nervously asks how they are supposed to handle Sikong Jiantian, the scholar says the cult has already sent stronger elders for him. Then he shocks them by saying the most dangerous person in Qinzhou is not Sikong Jiantian at all, but Su Changyu. He lays out his theory with absolute confidence. Sikong Jiantian's flashy arrival was bait, and the Jin nation was really trying to hide Su Changyu as the true trump card. What convinces him most is seeing Crown Prince Liu following Yiping like a student and openly blurting out that Su Changyu is a peerless sword immortal. He warns his followers that if they ever meet Su Changyu, they should flee immediately and leave him to 3 earthly fiend elders already summoned to kill him. The cultists answer without hesitation that dying for the cult is an honor, sealing the mission with fanatic resolve. That same night, Sikong Jiantian receives a report that the Fiend Celestial cult has sent the 72 earthly fiends into Qinzhou, and the Heavenly Supervisory will blame him for any losses. Sikong Jiantian is annoyed that he gets all the risk and none of the reward, but he immediately shows he already has his own plan. He says his public appearance was deliberate, meant to lure the cult into exposing itself before he wipes out its local underlings and hangs their corpses above the city gate as a warning. By dawn, Qinzhou is jammed wall to wall with spectators, and the city is shamelessly charging outrageous prices for seats to the semifinals. At the edge of that excitement, Li Changye drags his tired body out of the city, bitterly feeling that what should have been his rise to fame became a humiliating end. He still refuses to believe his sword Dao was lacking, telling himself he only lost because he was careless. But the defeat still stings badly enough to send him searching for his master. Before he can leave, the tournament apothecary comes running after him in a panic to relay one last message from Yiping. The apothecary sincerely explains that Yiping never meant to offend him, did not even understand what happened, and wants Li Changye's address so he can visit and apologize someday. To Li Changye, that sounds less like kindness and more like one last humiliation, and his face goes red with rage. The apothecary only makes it worse by pressing healing pills into his hands and kindly telling him not to cry over losing a sword match. Instead of leaving Qinzhou, Li Changye turns right back toward the city and swears to challenge Yiping again after the tournament ends. Meanwhile, dawnlight falls across Yiping as he opens his eyes after another long night spent trying to understand sword intent. He knows he could have forced an early breakthrough before, but he held back because either the Heavenly River swordsmanship nor the 4 Thunder Sword technique feels like his true path. After 7 days of thinking, he still has no answer, so he decides that once the meet ends, he will return to the sect and ask his senior brother for guidance. Even so, Yiping heads to the arena in a good mood, because a strong enough result here should finally let him become an official disciple of his sect. The arena is so packed that even nearby restaurants are overflowing, and the moment Yiping appears, the whole place breaks into cheers. Some of the loudest voices come from his adoring female fans, who immediately start bickering with others while praising how handsome he looks today. An hour later, the semi-final is officially announced, and Yiping steps onto the main ring to face Wang Mingho at last. Yiping stands there looking refined and almost immortal, while Wang Mingho's plain appearance does nothing to hide that he earned this spot by winning 8 straight bouts. At the packed Qinzhou Sword Dao meet, almost the whole crowd is cheering for Yiping before the semi-final even starts. Wang Mingho keeps his pride in check and decides the cleanest way to silence everyone is to beat Yiping in front of them. Yiping frowns because Wang Mingho's expression reminds him too much of Li Changye, and that makes him wary. Before fighting, Yiping bluntly asks if Wang Mingho knows Li Changye because he is genuinely worried about crippling the wrong friend. Wang Mingho answers calmly that he has never heard of Li Changye, and Yiping visibly relaxes. In the stands, several spectators notice a frightening sword intent, and the weak cultivator behind them is already coughing blood from the pressure. That wounded spectator is Li Changye, and hearing Wang Mingho call him a nobody pushes him into furious, murderous hatred toward both men. The elder finally announces the semi-final, and the whole venue goes tense enough that nobody wants to blink. Both men draw their swords, but Yiping still asks one last time if Wang Mingho really does not know Li Changye. Wang Mingho snaps back in irritation, thinking Yiping is stalling and that he can handle the same sword style anyway. Yiping moves first with a thunderous sword strike so fast the audience barely sees it.